Yunho has lost hope in pursuing his longtime crush and friend, thinking he is straight, but the slight hope he still has is shattered when his friend announces that he is gay but likes someone else. While trying to win back his friend, he unexpectedly bumps into a mythical creature that changes his belief in love and everything else he thought he wanted. A young man is running breathlessly as he feels some mysterious creature chasing him, but he can't understand what is following him. The growling frightens him more as he continues to run, but he is surprised when it turns out to be a tiger cub who jumps and ends up biting his buttocks. It turns out that our protagonist, a beautiful angel, is having a dream about the tiger and wakes up abruptly, still in the daze of that weird dream. He gets up from the bed and starts to get ready, still thinking about how the dream has left him feeling all funky. Before the story can proceed, the protagonist introduces himself, narrating that he is the lead vocalist of a band called Re-Evoke. His career path is not very far away from his dream, as he wanted to become a pop singer but ended up in a band. Despite all the odds, he is still happy with his current life, and everything seems to be going his way, which feels like a dream. The only thing that bugs our angel, until we know his real name, let's address our protagonist as Angel, is that he can't have one thing he desires the most, which is to be in a relationship with his long-term friend and crush, who is like some movie hero. It seems like unrequited first love is a universal thing. Currently, he is going to a restaurant where his friend group is reunited at the request of his crush, who wants to make some important announcements. Our angel is content just being friends with the hero and casually greets his friends when he meets them in the restaurant. Like everyone else, he is also eagerly waiting for the big announcement from Kyung-hoon, but he is shattered when his friend announces that he likes guys. Sadness and regret over hiding his feelings engulf our angel instantly. Kyung-hoon mentions how he only found out when he started liking another guy. Torn by his crush's revelation, our angel excuses himself, saying he has something urgent to do, and runs out of the restaurant. His vision is blurry due to the tears streaming down his face as he runs on the road, cursing himself for being an idiot. He bumps into a man and falls down. The man he bumped into is surprised and tries to help Angel, but our angel instantly he gets up and starts running again, without glancing at the Greek god he just bumped into. Only in stories are people lucky enough to bump into a handsome stranger. The man, looking like a model straight out of some fashion magazine, just stands there in shock as he thinks about the strange scent coming from the human. The fact that a human bumped into him has left him confused about what is special about the little human. The tall, dark, and handsome man has me simping over him instantly. Our angel yet again experiences a nightmare, showing him his family getting into a horrifying accident when he was just a child. He wakes up with tears streaming down his face but eventually gets hold of himself, while dejectedly thinking about how he can't stop having dreams of that unfortunate day. Our cute little angel has gone through some dark things in his past. Don't worry, our superstar. Your handsome knight in the shining armor is on his way to chase your worries away. His chain of thoughts breaks when his phone starts ringing. It is an incoming call from Kyung-hoon, who is concerned about his friend leaving so abruptly earlier. Hiding his true feelings, our angel assures his friend that he is fine and just has to leave due to something urgent. Concerned about Angel's reaction to the earlier news, Kyung-hoon starts to explain himself, saying that he is also flustered about the fact that he likes guys, as he just figured that out about himself. Our angel is a little irritated but still tries to calm his friend, saying he has gone through the same thing when he came out. The mood swings Angel is going through in this scene are understandable. He instantly perks up when Kyung-hoon shares that he is still trying to figure things out because the person he has a crush on doesn't know about it. Our angel's happiness about his friend's statement is short-lived when Kyung-hoon starts to explain how that person sparkles in his eyes, which in turn makes him realize how his friend's feelings are deeper than he thought. Our angel's feelings again take an exciting turn when Kyung-hoon mentions that the person is just like him, and he thinks that this is his chance to win Kyung-hoon back. He quickly announces that he will help him get the attention of his love, but his hopes are crushed when Kyung-hoon mentions that he is living with the person. Oblivious to our angel's feelings, Kyung-hoon continues to explain that they had to leave together due to personal reasons, but since he works during the week, the person must feel bored at home. Despite his jealousy, our angel agrees to go to Kyung-hoon's home and asks him to give the person a heads up about Yunho being there. Even though Kyung-hoon is in love, he still seems strangely oblivious to what our angel is feeling when he seems like a pretty decent guy. Kyung-hoon tries to reject his offer, but he insists on going there, secretly planning to get rid of the person. After deciding on our angel's plan to go there, they hang up the phone as he feels much more at ease after talking to his friend, even though he was feeling very uneasy after his nightmare. His love for Kyung-hoon has returned in full force as he happily rolls in bed, hoping that he will be able to win this battle of love. The next day, our angel gets dressed up, looking mouth-watering with his mesmerizing mint green hair. Our angel is on a mission to get his man, and I, as a loyal fan, completely support him. He is deep in thought, planning to battle his faceless rival, and doesn't notice when he again passes the most handsome man from the previous day on the road. Unlike him, the other person is not oblivious to his presence, as he can smell his unique scent, but is confused by whether the other can really see him. The mysterious stranger has been purposely hiding his presence from the humans, not wanting to disclose his secrets. The person momentarily thinks of calling out to Angel but decides against it as he doesn't understand why he cares about that particular human. Don't worry, mysterious stranger, our Angel has this effect on everyone. Our Angel is dejected as he sits with his band members, thinking deeply about something. One of his band members comes to his rescue, finally revealing the name of our Angel to be Yunho, and asks him the reason for his sour mood. The question reminds him the meeting he had with Kyung-hoon's crush earlier that day. When he visited Kyung-hoon's house, his intentions were to drive the person away from Kyung-hoon, but his plan failed when the person instead turned out to be a ball of sunshine. Like Yunho, I was also ready to hate the person, but the cute blonde had taken our hearts with just one smile. Despite what he likes to believe about himself, Yunho is softer than he lets on. So after the introductions, the cutie started talking to him softly, and Yunho can't bring himself to hate cutie with sparkling eyes. Yunho tried to act annoyed, but the cutie seems oblivious to his feelings and keeps talking about how he is happy to get a new friend. Yunho tries to change his course of action as he instead tries to dishearten the cutie by saying how he is being a burden on Kyung-hoon. His words was obviously effective as the cutie starts to look dejected to hear that, but his sad face makes Yunho feel bad for him. In another attempt to drive him away, our Angel points out how he is speaking informally, and if he didn't stop, Yunho would do the same. Once again his plan fails as the cutie takes this as an invitation to be Yunho's friend and hugs him tightly to mark the start of their new friendship. When he tells his band members about it, they also find the gesture very sweet, but they also find it funny that Yunho had to hug his rival on their first meeting. His band members are typical best friends, as they are not worried about his feelings and instead find the situation funny. Yunho tries to argue, saying that it is weird that he was rude to the cutie, but the person wasn't fazed and instead called him a friend, even hugged him. His members try to make him feel better by saying that he must be really nice to the person, but Yunho is still annoyed that his attempts to drive away his rival have failed and thinks that the boy is very cunning. As he again repeats his sad story, he is shocked when his friend guesses his crush is Kyung-hoon, even though he never mentioned the name. The band members talk about how they can understand his feelings as Kyung-hoon is very kind, as he brings them food every now and then. The person who brings you food always has a special place in your heart. They remember the time when Kyung-hoon brought them food during their practices, and Yunho always welcomed him with a big smile. Yunho's team members start to discuss among themselves whether Yunho should pursue Kyung-hoon or not. Yunho is silently listening to their discussion, waiting for what could come out of his friend's discussion about his future. His band members are lovely, as they genuinely want to find a perfect solution to his problem, even though it looks like they are finding it childish. Meanwhile, the Greek god visits Kyung-hoon's house, seeming to be friends with the young boy living there. We will refer to the handsome stranger as Greek god until we find his real name. The mysterious handsome stranger reveals the truth about his life, saying that they are doors connecting life to the afterlife. According to him, the souls that leave their bodies pass through them when going to the afterlife, and any interaction that occurs in that process is just to send souls to the afterlife and nothing more. When they are helping a soul cross the border, the lives of that human flash before his eyes like they were his memories. Having to look through a human's memories all his life made him realize that humans are always complicated and selfish, which made him hate humans. Currently, he just entered Kyung-hoon's home, where the little cutie excitedly welcomed him, saying that if he had come a little earlier, he could have introduced him to someone. We need to wait some more before our main leads can have a proper introduction. The Greek god wants to know what his friend is talking about, but before he can ask, he smells the familiar scent of the human he bumped into on the street. Little cutie informs him that Kyung-hoon's friend Yunho has come by, and from now on, he is going to hang out with him more often as they are friends now. The Greek god is not happy with his friend's excitement and warns him not to get close to the human. Little cutie is offended by his statement and asks him not to speak ill of the humans, as they are good people who helped him when he was on the verge of dying. He finally revealed the truth about his life, saying how he, a nine-tailed fox, appeared at Kyung-hoon's doorstep and said he needed 100 days of human energy in order to extend his life. At that critical time, Kyung-hoon helped him without thinking, and he is not like other humans, as he wasn't even afraid when he introduced himself as a fox. The Greek god instantly scolds him, saying that he is not going to die, and then adds that they are not humans but mythical creatures. He reminds his little friend that nothing good comes out of getting close to humans, while remembering the time when little cutie was severely injured because of the humans. Seeing his friend on the verge of life and death due to humans, Hanwol's hate toward humans is understandable. Cutie dejectedly argues that all the humans were not bad, but since they are a mythical fox and a mythical tiger, there may have been things they didn't understand about them. He continues his argument, saying that after all their 1,000 years of life, they just helped the Grim Reaper by guiding lost souls roaming in this world to the afterlife. But now he is sick of it and wants to find his own life. After seeing his friends wish to live a normal life, Greek god softens and says that he just doesn't want him to get hurt. When he is assured that Cutie is fine, Greek god wants to take his leave, but his friend stops him. Cutie advises him that since Yunho is going to hang out with him often, he can't just appear out of thin air. Foxy thinks hard about some possible places that Greek god can use to transport and ends up deciding that he should use the bathroom because it is the most unlikely place to get caught. The Greek god is grumpy for going through so much effort for a mere human, but Foxy convinces him by saying that he is the one mooching off of King Hoon. Looking at cute little Foxy, I would also agree with whatever he says without even asking a single question. Greek god again loses the argument with his friend and changes the topic, instead saying that he heard about his friend helping King Hoon to stop seeing spirits. Little Cutie says that it was out of gratitude and explains that King Hoon has very strong energy, so he thought spirits would avoid him, but they kept flocking to him. King Hoon was also able to see the spirits with his physical eyes, which resulted in him struggling psychologically, so Foxy used little of his power to make it stop. Greek god sighs deeply at his friend's kindness as Foxy continues that every day when he swallows a fox bead from King Hoon's energy, he wonders if it's okay for him to do this. Earlier, when Yunho said he was being a burden, it made him wonder if he was really being bothersome. So now he wants to do anything he can to repay King Hoon. Greek god finally stops arguing, saying he will be careful as his friend requested. Foxy happily hugs the mythical tiger, who is thinking about how Yunho seems like a selfish human who made his friend Naru doubt himself. This makes his hate for humans increase. I wonder if Greek god will be able to think the same about Yunho after looking at his dazzling beauty. Greek god suddenly remembers yesterday's events and tells Naru that when he was hiding yesterday, a human was running and bumped into him. Naru is surprised to hear that because when they are hiding, people can't see or touch them. Greek god further tells him that he thought the human would run through him like others, but it was the opposite. He asks Naru if he thinks that this particular human stood at the crossroads of life and death before. Foxy replies that it can be right, as if that human met a Grim Reaper before while at the crossroads of life and death. He can see the creature even when it is hiding, and it is also possible that he already met Hanwol. Listening to his friend, Greek god replies that he doesn't remember their meeting earlier, but he remembers that the human has a very sweet scent, a scent he had smelled before somewhere. He was left confused by the scent alone, when the little human's face bumped straight into his chest. The thing that most shocked and bothered him was seeing a grown man crying so sorrowfully. Naru is surprised to hear that as he suspiciously stares at his friend, Hanwol. The Greek god's name is finally revealed, but let's just call him Han for short as a curious friend. He asks about how he was bothered by a human crying. Foxy is not as innocent as we thought him to be. Han says that it can be possible because that person is not an ordinary human. But Naru is fascinated by his friend showing new emotions and suggests that maybe Hanwol has fallen for that person. He asks Han if his heart skipped a beat, but he denies the allegations, saying he hasn't experienced anything like that. Naru still doesn't give up, as he says that he is hoping Han will meet that person again, as he is too curious about that. Like the Foxy, I am also waiting for Hanwol to fall madly in love with someone. Meanwhile, Yunho is in his apartment, coughing as he worriedly thinks about how his throat feels a bit sore. Yunho can't seem to stop thinking about his tragic past, as he remembers that when he was 14 years old, his family was going home from dinner, and he was happy to be with them. His happiness was short-lived, as a car crossed the yellow line from the other side and the drunk driver crashed into their car. His entire family died on the spot, while he suffered severe injuries. After the accident, he couldn't accept reality for a while and looked for his family whenever he woke up, momentarily forgetting that they were gone. The guilt of surviving alone and nightmares of the accident followed him everywhere. He lost his family in a single moment, but the justice system in the country didn't even punish the murderer. At that time, he was in middle school. Yunho was enraged at the murderer. He continued to suffer from the guilt of surviving alone. Yunho was completely broken and spent each day mourning his helplessness about not being able to do anything to avenge his family. No one talked to him in the school, but he wasn't bothered by it and instead preferred it that way. When he joined high school, he thought the same routine would continue there, but to his surprise, King Hoon approached him. Despite his continued rejections, King Hoon managed to get him out of his lonely bubble. Yunho remembers how the mere existence of King Hoon comforted him because in the moments he spent with King Hoon, he could forget about the tragic incidents of his life. All the years of his friendship with King Hoon, he was in a happy frenzy. And when he turned 20, King Hoon first asked him if there was anything he wanted to tell him. He could do it without hesitation. Yunho was surprised to hear that, but when King Hoon tried to change the topic and leave, he stopped him, saying there was something he wanted to share. Sometimes you just need one sincere friend, and I am glad our Yunho had someone he could rely on. This was the first time he shared the tragic incident about his family with someone, and he felt like he was just waiting for someone to pull out the traumatic things he was hiding inside. Kyung-hoon thanked him for trusting him and then said that he also wanted to share something with him. He had told Yunho that he could see spirits as his grandmother was a shaman, and he thinks the spirits think that he could help relieve them of their grudges. While remembering his memories with Kyung-hoon, Yunho thinks to himself that in the past, it was enough for him if he could stay friends with Kyung-hoon, but he can't do it now. In his mission to drive Naru away, he pays him another visit, and when Foxy opens the door with a welcoming smile, Yunho is forced to admit that his rival is pretty, but he still can't understand why Kyung-hoon likes him. He is annoyed when the first thing Naru says is how he looks adorable with the bib he is wearing. Yunho irritatedly replies that it is because he has to take care of his throat as a singer, but the words are stuck in his throat when he notices Hamwol standing there with his sinfully charming looks. The first thing that comes to his mind is how unrealistically good the stranger looks, and even when Naru is introducing them, all he can think about is how super tall Hanwol is. Yunho is so understandable here, as I have also fallen for our super handsome mythical tiger. To his surprise, Hanwol gets closer and backs him up into the wall, making him blush. Yunho's face starts to heat up as Hanwol leans closer to him. The Greek god seems oblivious to his feelings as he stares at him non-stop and continues to lessen the space between them. Yunho's heart starts beating really fast because of their close proximity, and he is unable to move his body under the influence of this Greek god. Yunho is completely still as Hanwol sniffs his neck, leaving him shocked. Han is thinking about how Yunho smells nicer than the last time they met, while the only thing Yunho can think about is how the stranger he just met looks like a dashing celebrity. Hanwol suddenly speaks, asking if he remembers him, but Yunho is still just lost in his dreamy looks. He couldn't stop comparing Han to others, thinking about how he is even taller than his band member Yoondu. Han again says that they have met before, to which Yunho replies that he doesn't remember meeting before, while once again mesmerized by the deep voice of the Greek god. Han reminds him that he ran into him a few days ago, and when Yunho finally indicates that he remembers their meeting, Han directly asks him why he was crying that day. Yunho is annoyed by the question and sharply asks why he should tell him that, while wishing to himself that Han would say his name in that deep voice. Han again asks him if he has ever been at the crossroads of life and death, shocking Yunho with his question. Naru, who has been watching the interaction silently all this time, asks them if they know each other, to which Yunho replies that he doesn't know who this person is. Naru finally introduces them to each other formally, and Yunho raises his hand for the handshake but is left hanging. Hanwol repeats his name, sending Yunho into a happy frenzy as his earlier wish of Han saying his name has come true, and it feels as good as he imagined. He is looking forward to the handshake, wanting to touch Han's hand while feeling like he will fall in love, but to his disappointment, Han doesn't shake his hand and instead leaves from there. He is completely shocked and instantly takes back his earlier statement about falling in love. Our cutie Foxy comes to the rescue as he holds his hand and apologizes for his friend's behavior, saying Han tends to be cold to humans, but he didn't mean anything bad by it. Yunho is still upset about the rude treatment he got from the handsome stranger, and his mood is further ruined when Naru hugs him, saying they can still hang out together. While leaving Kyung-hoon's place, Han wonders if Yunho is really just an ordinary human because the scent has left him confused. He didn't expect the person he bumped into to be this close, and he smirked while thinking about Yunho. The mythical tiger is suspicious. From that onward, Yunho decides to torment his enemy and goes to Kyung-hoon's place every chance he gets, fully dressed up, enhancing his killer looks. For most of his visits, Han is also present there, but he is more focused on getting close to his rival and getting revenge. During these visits, whenever he tried to talk to Hanwol, he received the same cold treatment, which annoyed him to no end. Despite his cold behavior toward Yunho, Hanwol starts to grow curious about him and asks Kyung-hoon if Yunho ever stood at the crossroads of life and death. Kyung-hoon tells him that when Yunho was 14, he lost his family in an accident and went into a coma. He says that Yunho is still traumatized and struggles with it even now, but this is all he can reveal about his matter, and it is better if Han hears the details directly from Yunho. After finding out about Yunho's accident, Han tries to remember if he ever met him before, but he doesn't recall anything about it. He thinks about Kyung-hoon, who mentioned Yunho had a sad past, but he seems fine to him as he remembers him playing happily with Naru. Later, the four of them gather at Kyung-hoon's apartment, where Yunho is irritated by continuously losing the games and is hurt when Kyung-hoon and Hanwol both seem more concerned about Naru. He is not very surprised about Kyung-hoon, as he is always nice to everyone, but seeing Hanwol so concerned, he feels jealous, as Han seems to be the kind of person who is only devoted to the person he loves, just waiting for someone to realize his hidden feelings. The three of them finally turn toward him, noticing his arm has swollen due to Naru flicking his wrists earlier as a punishment. He is annoyed when Foxy hugs him as an apology and tells him to get off of him, as he was the one who hit him the hardest. Han interrupts them as he asks Yunho if he is okay and says that he doesn't seem like he is going to win, so will he continue to play. Yunho is surprised by the sudden concern Han is showing as he always ignores him and sharply replies that Han is the one who is too scared of being hit to play. When Han stares at him, he instantly retreats, worried that he went too far, but unbeknownst to him, both mythical creatures are amused by his behavior. Kyung-hoon suddenly comes forward and holds Yunho's wrist, asking him if he is okay as his arm is all red. Han doesn't seem happy with their closeness as he announces that he will play too, and they all continue the game of flicking each other's wrists. Yunho is the victim of the game as his arm completely goes numb soon. And again, Foxy comes to his rescue, stopping the game quickly, worried that Yunho's arm is going to burst if they continue like that. After the game ends, Yunho is about to leave when Kyung-hoon approaches him, saying that he is happy that Naru and Yunho have become so close. Yunho thinks to himself about how he is just pretending to like Naru, and they are not close at all, but he can't voice this in front of Kyung-hoon. Oblivious to his thoughts, Kyung-hoon is concerned about his arm, which makes Yunho happy as all the torture he has endured seems worth this moment. He is surprised when Kyung-hoon whispers to him that, thanks to Naru, he doesn't see ghosts anymore. Yunho is disappointed to hear that, as he thought Kyung-hoon seeing spirits was their little secret, and the possibility that Naru is that important to Kyung-hoon is breaking his heart. He staggers by the stairs while thinking about all this and loses his balance. But before he can hit the floor, Han comes to his rescue and catches him in his arms. Even though he pretends to hate humans, Han is still quick to help this one. Yunho's heart goes out of control, and the only thing Han can think about is the sweet scent coming from Yunho. They both come out of their trance when Kyung-hoon says that if Han hadn't acted quickly, Yunho would have been seriously hurt. Yunho just says that he is going while thinking about how Han saved him despite standing far away from where he was. They both walk out of the apartment together, and Yunho thanks Han for saving him earlier. Han coldly replies that he just helped him because Naru considers him a friend. And if Yunho gets hurt, Naru will be bored, so Yunho shouldn't get any wrong ideas. Han is starting to seem like a red flag to me as he keeps hurting our angel, Yunho. Yunho calmly replies that he knows while begrudgingly thinking to himself about how lucky Naru is, as everyone seems to care about him. He quickly walks away from there, and Han just stands there, thinking about how he thought it was easy to read Yunho, but it seems like he was wrong in his assumption. A few days later, Yunho joins Naru and Hanwol as they all go skateboarding, but the tiger refuses to ride the board. Yunho is annoyed by his behavior and leaves the board there, saying he can do whatever he wants. He is still hooked on how handsome Han is, and his voice still sounds magical to him, so he decides to let him be, even if he just wants to stand there like a folding screen. He and Naru start skateboarding, and Naru asks him if he comes here often to ride the skateboard. Yunho replies to him that he likes to take walks there when he is done with concerts, and walking while listening to music makes all his stress go away. Naru mentions how this spot is great, and the comment sends Yunho to his past as he reveals that when he was young, he used to come there with his parents and younger brother Yoonjun. They would bike or take walks together, and even though he can't do it anymore, whenever he doesn't have many concerts, he and Kyung-hoon visit the place and talk a lot while enjoying the view. Listening to him, Naru says that this is the place Yunho shared with the people precious to him, and he should come here with Kyung-hoon next time. Yunho is furious to hear that, but he keeps his composure and asks Naru if he wants to try something more fun. Foxy happily agrees but starts to hesitate when Yunho asks him to skate down a slope. Naru is a cutie, but he is way too innocent. He voices his concern, but Yunho assures him that he can handle it while silently wishing for Naru to fall flat. He is disappointed when Naru safely makes it down the slope and begrudgingly praises his skating skills. Hanwol is suspicious and asks Yunho if he pushed Naru, hoping Naru would get hurt. Yunho is surprised to hear that and sheepishly says that he is going to ride down the slope. He starts skateboarding down, grumbling to himself, and fails to notice a cycle coming on the road. When he notices this, Yunho can only close his eyes, waiting for the impact, but to his surprise, he doesn't hit the ground. When he opens his eyes, he finds himself lying face down on Hanwol's chest, who is scolding him for blindly skating down the slope. He sits straight and blushes, noticing their position, but Hanwol seems unfazed as he mentions how dangerous it is for him to skateboard blindly like that. Yunho just sits there, blankly staring at Hanwol, who softly says that Yunho is heavy. He finally comes out of his trance and, while trying to get up, Yunho falls forward once again but quickly gets up, trying to calm his beating heart. As Hanwol approaches him from behind, he thanks him for saving him. But Hanwol is not focused on that and instead asks him if he realizes how dangerous what he did to Naru was. Yunho politely apologizes, saying he didn't mean to do it, but Hanwol says that he should apologize to Naru and tells him to go play with his friend, as he is about to walk away. Hanwol tells him to not get the wrong idea, but Yunho interrupts him, saying he knows he saved him only because Naru considers him as a friend. Just then, Naru comes to where they are, and Yunho joins him as they start to ride the skateboard again. While moving on his board, Yunho can only think about how nice Hanwol's body is, but he quickly scolds himself for his impure thoughts. Meanwhile, Hanwol doesn't understand why he cares about that human getting hurt and tries to remind himself that he shouldn't get involved. But he can't stop thinking about how strange Yunho is. Hanwol is standing at the crossroads of life and death, helping a lost soul go to the afterlife. He thinks that if you do the same thing every day, it is only when there's the occasional variation that you can test your power. When facing something new, instead of getting annoyed, he finds it more interesting. The recent situation he is in also seems interesting to him, as he is helping a Jigui, a fire ghost whose love for another person sets their hearts ablaze and turns into a ball of fire. The Jigui shouts in pain that he wants to meet his lover once more, but Han is unfazed, as he just says to the fire ghost that he can either choose to go to the afterlife voluntarily or he will have to disappear from this world without any trace. The Jigui grows furious and roars that he can't die like this, but Hanwol is unfazed by the outburst and simply defends against the flame. Hanwol takes this as the Jigui's refusal to go to the afterlife and opts to get rid of the Jigui right at that moment. Before he can kill the fire ghost, Naru steps in and stops him from doing so. Hanwol argues that Jigui will just harm the living humans with that fiery body of his, and it is best to get rid of him before things get worse. Just on cue, the ghost starts screaming due to the immense pain and begs Han not to kill him, saying he doesn't want to die. Hanwol coldly replies that he is already dead and should give up, but Naru stops his attack again by cutting Hanwol's bind on the Jigui. The Foxy then turns toward the ghost and says to him that if he disappeared like this, it would be too sad for both him and the person he loves. Naru politely requests that the ghost get his original form back and go to the afterlife through him. Naru explains to the fire ghost that he is a ball of fire right now and it will hurt the person he loves if he touches her. The Jigui finally gives up as he dejectedly confesses that he doesn't want to hurt his love and then passes through Naru to go to the afterlife. He stumbles back due to the impact of the soul passing through him, but Han quickly catches him while scolding him for overexerting himself when he told him not to do so. Naru assures him that he is fine, as Kyung-hoon gives him energy every day, so he is getting stronger little by little. Hanwol argues that he should have just let him do it, but Foxy sharply replies that he was just going to get rid of him. Han still doesn't give up, as he says that the person had become an evil spirit because he caused trouble, and getting rid of one instead of sending it to the afterlife wouldn't have been a problem. Han is left shocked when Naru tells him to give the spirits half the attention he gives to Yunho. With the last remark about going home, Naru disappears before Hanwol can even reply and he is left standing confused. Meanwhile, in the studio, Yoondu Kim asks Yunho to bring Hanwol to the studio. Seeing his surprised face, Yoondu mentions how he has been talking nonstop about that Hanwol guy and that he should just bring him over. Others also join, saying that it is the first time Yunho talked about someone other than Kyung-hoon, so they are all curious. Yunho gives in but is confused about what excuse he can use to bring Hanwol there. One of his friends again comes to his rescue as they remind him that he said Naru wanted to come here, so he should just invite them both. As their practice ended for the day, Yunho received compliments and head pats from his friends. His bond with his band members is so precious. Just as he walks out of the studio, he spots Hanwol walking on the street with some weird floating entities surrounding him. Yunho quickly hides behind a pillar. Hanwol asks the floating orbs if they agree with what Naru said earlier, finding that the goblin flames have the same opinion as Naru. He explains himself, saying that he is just attracted to that human scent, which is strange as he can even feel it now on the tip of his nose. Yunho is still watching him silently and is amazed by the fact that Han is so handsome that even fireflies flock to him. Yunho really thought those were fireflies. He quickly turns around while thinking about how Han looks breathtaking when he smiles, but it is a pity that he always scowls while looking at him. Yunho is about to walk away while thinking that Kyung-hoon is the best when a small floating orb floats to where he is hiding. Still thinking that the goblin flame is a firefly, Yunho talks to it, asking why he is there by himself. He chuckles when the firefly touches his cheek. He happily talks to the little creature, asking if it also saw the handsome guy with a nice voice, and says that he is sure he is just a nuisance to him. He wants to say something else, but the firefly slams into his cheek, and feeling the stinging sensation, he decides to just leave. Some days later, Yunho finally invites Naru and Han to one of his band's rehearsals. Naru enthusiastically greets Yunho while Hanwol is flushed to see Yunho's exposed milky shoulder. Ignoring Han's stare, Yunho introduces his band members to them, telling them about the leader and drummer, Jongho Woo, bass player Yoondu Kim, and guitarist Jin Ha. Jongho asks him to reveal his nickname, and he is forced to reveal his name, Hoppity Cutie, given to him by his teammates. After the introductions, Naru happily moves around to check the musical instruments, while Yunho approaches Hanwol, saying he wants to talk about something. Yunho apologizes to Han for the time he fell while skateboarding. Hanwol tells him to don't do something so dangerous anymore, while thinking to himself about how his heart pounded back then too, as Yunho's scent is extremely sweet. According to him, Yunho's scent got so intense that his mind almost passed out for a moment, and he felt like he might have pulled Yunho toward him unconsciously. The band members are listening to them attentively, and hearing that Yunho touched Han's chest, their imagination immediately races to Yunho being intimate with Han in private. Their conversation is interrupted by Naru's giggling, so instead of talking further to Hanwol, Yunho announces that they should practice. Naru and Hanwol are mesmerized when Yunho starts singing, "He is our precious superstar." Han thinks to himself about how it is hard to believe that this guy and that dopey one are the same person, and it must be the act of singing that brings this unique look to Yunho's face. Once done with the practice, Naru also joins them to try the drums, but Han rejects the invitation from Yunho to do the same. Suddenly, Han notices a goblin flame coming out of Yunho's clothes. Surprised, he rushes to catch the sneaky little thing and almost hits Yunho in the process. The goblin flame sticks itself behind Yunho, but Hanwol scolds it, saying it is against the rules to touch humans. He is annoyed when it sends him a message through the touch, calling him an idiot. The goblin flame continues to hit Hanwol as if to scold the tiger. He almost slips, but Yunho breaks his fall and happily says that this time he saved him. Our superstar is astonished to see a firefly during the day and voices his surprise, which shocks Han as these are not supposed to be visible to humans. Naru looks at the two and finds their interaction cute. After a while, Yunho says to Naru that he has a pretty voice and should be more confident. Naru replies that he wants to be as good as him. They happily talk among themselves as Yunho says that he can't be a superstar overnight. Han is amazed to see this, as he had never seen Naru this happy, and even though Yunho has been mean to him until now, he doesn't seem like a bad human after all. With Naru hugging him from behind, Yunho asks for Hanwol's opinion on their performance and blushes deeply when Han smiles at him, saying their performance was pretty cool. Yunho turns toward Naru again, saying they both should come to the concert next time, as Kyunghoon does it all the time. Surprisingly, Hanwol doesn't seem very happy with Yunho mentioning Kyunghoon's name again, making Jongho curious of this reaction. They are still at the studio, where his group members are showing Naru his old pictures as he tries his best to not let Foxy look at his embarrassing pictures. Hanwol is watching them with a smile when the group leader, Jongho, grabs his attention, saying that he and Yunho seem much closer than he expected. Just like me, everyone from their friends are already shipping them. Han replies that he doesn't think that is the case, but Jongho insists that he is sure since Yunho brought them here. Hanwol argues that Kyunghoon must have asked him to be nice to them. Jongho chuckles after hearing his answer, and since they have always been best friends, Yunho might indeed have done that for Kyunghoon. Jongho changes the topic instantly as he starts talking about how all Yunho knows is music. He mentions how difficult it must have been due to the past incident, yet Yunho persevered. Hearing about the accident, Han wondered if it was the same time when Yunho was at the crossroads of life and death. Oblivious to his thoughts, Jongho continues that Yunho is strong in this sense, but he probably needs someone to rely on. According to him, Yunho's first impression is not very friendly, but once he gets close to someone, he is very clingy and likes skinship. To stir Han's emotions more, Jongho ends his speech by saying that if he notices Yunho's behavior with Kyunghoon, he will understand what he means. Han sharply asks why he is saying this, but Jongho suddenly goes into a playful mode as he laughs and says that he is just talking because Han is actually listening to him. Jongho mentions how he wants Yunho to be happy, making Han think about how humans are weird. Jongho also wanted to say something else, but he didn't get the chance as Yundu dragged him away. Later, when they are walking out of the studio, Naru talks about how Yunho was super cool today and how his band members were also very friendly. He suddenly jumps on Hanwol's back. They are so cute, saying that he likes how his friend is becoming more open with people lately and asking for his honest opinion on whether he is enjoying human company. Hanwol refuses to give in, as he just replies that maybe he is enjoying it a little, but humans are still humans. Naru is not happy with his reply and asks him to stop thinking like a mythical creature that has been alive for more than 1,000 years. Han suddenly stops as he remembers that he forgot to take that goblin flame that got out of the line from Yunho. Back in the studio, Yunho asks his leader what he talked about with Han. But instead of giving a clear answer, Jongho changes the topic, talking about how their youngest has a tough road ahead. A few hours later, Yunho is holding drinks as he is planning to go to Kyunghoon's workplace. Han, who has come back to retrieve the goblin flame, spots it in Yunho's pocket but doesn't know how to get it out. He silently chases Yunho, still thinking about ways to get the goblin flame out, and notices our superstar suddenly stopping. He follows his line of sight and notices Naru standing there with Kyung-hoon as they sweetly talk to each other. While seeing his crush happy with his love, Yunho thinks to himself that he wants to stay by Kyung-hoon's side just like that, but he can't do anything if he gets rejected, even as a friend. He turns around with tears in his eyes and comes face to face with Han, who is standing right behind him. Seeing him sad like that, Han starts to get worried about him, even though he can't understand his own feelings. To his shock, Yunho suddenly starts crying and shouts at him, saying he hates both him and his friend for showing up in his life. Yunho runs away from there, sobbing, while Han is left standing there, thinking about if this is Yunho's real face that he was hiding behind his kindness. He is so quick to jump to conclusions. Despite his negative thoughts about Yunho, his chest starts to feel tight and his breathing gets shallow when he sees Yunho crying like that. Meanwhile, Yunho is lying in bed, regretting how he took all his anger out on Hanwol. A few minutes earlier, he had received a message from Kyung-hoon, who asked for his help in changing his style as he wanted to look good for Naru. Despite his anger and devastation, he can't get rude to his first love and agrees to help style him. The next day, Yunho accompanies Kyung-hoon as they go to the salon to change his look. Yunho sees his friend getting ready while thinking about how he used to walk around with that bummy look because he was being harassed by spirits, and Yunho was the only one who knew about his charming looks. After getting his hair done, Kyung-hoon comes to him, asking for his opinion, and Yunho generously praises his look. I didn't expect Kyung-hoon to be such a treat to the eyes, but the makeover changed him completely. Yunho says how he looks good, and since he doesn't see spirits anymore, he doesn't need glasses now. Kyung-hoon replies that the glasses are like his safety blanket, but it's good because he doesn't need them anymore, and then asks Yunho's help to pick out new clothes for him. Yunho is surprised to hear that since he thinks Kyung-hoon's current clothes are also good, but he still joins him in buying new clothes. Yunho helps Kyung-hoon pick suitable clothes for him while all the time trying to control his rapid heartbeat due to Kyung-hoon's bright smile. When they are walking back after the shopping, Yunho's mood gets ruined when Kyung-hoon says that he wishes Naru would like his new look. Kyung-hoon keeps talking about how he never changed his look in his 10 years of knowing Yunho. Listening to him, the superstar replies that he is also wondering if he really is the same Kyung-hoon who has a patchy beard and long, unkempt hair. Yunho flushes when Kyung-hoon playfully asks him if he has become too handsome, but he quickly controls himself and wittily replies that it is just because he was the one who styled him. Kyung-hoon suddenly gets serious as he thanks Yunho for being there for him and always helping him whenever he asks for him. Yunho is surprised by the sudden cringy talk but replies that he is the one who should be thankful, as Kyung-hoon befriended him despite being a loner and helped him whenever he had panic attacks due to his trauma. Yunho is again startled when Kyung-hoon says it was because Yunho had intrigued him to the point that he wants to keep being by Yunho's side. Yunho got overwhelmed with the comments and suggests they sit at the bench near them. Kyung-hoon continues to spill his emotions, saying that Yunho was the only friend he could really open up to as everyone left him when he revealed that he could see spirits. He says that he started to keep it secret after that, but he felt like Yunho would believe him, so he didn't hesitate and revealed it to him. Yunho warmly replies that it must be because they are so much alike in the way they think and feel. Kyung-hoon agrees that it must be the reason and then invites Yunho for dinner with him. Yunho is happy to spend time with his friend, but his happiness is ruined when Foxy and Han also joined them. During dinner, other people in the restaurant kept praising their looks. Yunho may be pouting, but looking at Kyung-hoon's happy face lifts his mood. Yunho shares some glances with Han while feeling uncomfortable for snapping at him like that earlier. Yunho's bright smile in the presence of Kyung-hoon reminds him of Jongho's words from earlier, and how he said Yunho liked skinship. When they finish eating, Kyung-hoon hugs him as a thank you for helping him in the transformation. They are both in their world, and Han is observing their skinship keenly, unable to hold back from glaring at the two. Han has started to feel jealous, and I am living to see how he will control his emotions. Hanwol is surprised by Yunho's change of mood, as he looked so broken just a day before, but he is smiling like that today. Seeing him stare at them like that, Yunho figures that Han must be upset because he got mad at him for what happened before. He comes out of his thoughts when Kyung-hoon asks Naru how he looks, to which Foxy replies that he looks more handsome than before. Kyung-hoon says that it is because Yunho had put his outfit together. Han glares at them with more intensity, which makes Yunho feel uncomfortable in his skin. Yunho tries to defuse the situation by saying to Han that he should also try to change his style. He always wears a black shirt, and he can at least change the color of his clothes to white. When Han keeps glaring at him, he quickly says that he can forget about it if he doesn't want to, while thinking to himself about how he is starting to panic due to Han's continuous glaring. Just then, he notices a family sitting at a table across from them, and it instantly reminds him of his happy memories with his family. Kyung-hoon and Han both notice a sudden change in his mood, and Kyung-hoon is the one who takes action first as he asks Yunho to try more food. He instantly forgets about the family as Kyung-hoon starts to talk about how his new, extremely good looks are just because of Yunho. seeing them being friendly with each other like that. Hanwol wonders if the sweet smell of Yunho that made him dizzy was his feelings for Kyung-hoon. When they are all leaving after eating, Yunho stops Han and asks if he had to scowl all the time when everyone else was trying to enjoy themselves. Han stays silent in reply, which makes Yunho think that he is still mad because of yesterday, and he tries to apologize for his behavior. To his surprise, Han still doesn't reply and tries to leave, but Yunho stops him, pointing out how he shouldn't be rude when someone is apologizing to him. Han suddenly says to him that his smell is making him dizzy, but Yunho can't understand what he is talking about. Hanwol finally decides to speak, as he sharply says that the way Yunho is acting toward him and Naru is fake, just to keep his good image in front of Kyung-hoon. Yunho angrily says that he shouldn't interpret things as he wishes, but to his shock, Han rudely asks him if he wants to be Kyung-hoon's boyfriend or something. He is giving possessive boyfriend vibes, without giving him a chance to reply. Han continues his rant, saying that humans always act like they are good on the outside and always wear fake smiles. He accuses Yunho of wearing a mask whenever he is with them so he can look good in front of Kyung-hoon. Yunho shouts at him, saying he is not someone who should talk to him like that. Yunho is thinking to himself that the accusation of him being double-faced in front of them was true at first, but now he is not sure about his own intentions. Yunho starts to tear up, surprisingly feeling more hurt by Han's words than he expected. Seeing him cry like that, Han wants to comfort him, but he controls himself and walks away from there. Later, Hanwol is standing alone by a tree, thinking about how his hand almost automatically touched Yunho when he was crying. He remembers Jongho's words while thinking that Yunho cries at little things. It made him wonder what was so strong about that little human. The next day, Naru scolds Hanwol for his behavior with Yunho and asks him to apologize, saying he was too harsh with him. Hanwol refuses to accept his mistake, saying he just questioned Yunho about being fake to them. Naru argues that it is different from being fake, but Hanwol gets angry at his statement and asks how he can still be accepting of humans after being betrayed by them. Naru sharply replies that he wasn't betrayed by anyone and asks Han why he is so angry with Yunho when he is a good person. Hanwol doesn't back down as he reminds Naru about the time when he was treated badly after the person he sacrificed himself to save died. Naru is heartbroken to hear that as he remembers the horrific incidents of his past. A few centuries back, a group had captured him in his fox form and was planning to sell him for a huge amount of money. That time, a young man had asked the group to let him go, but when they refused, he paid them a lot of money and bought the fox. Hanwol, in his tiger form, was observing the situation as he watched Naru fearfully approach the person who saved him and bite him on the hand. The young man pulls Foxy into his lap, softly saying that he is not trying to hurt him, and helps untie the rope from his leg. He says to Naru that animals that have unique looks like him shouldn't come down the mountain, as there are groups always looking to capture them. As soon as Naru is free, he runs away from there while the young man looks at the bite mark on his hand, hoping that the fox's leg is okay. That night, Naru had sneaked into the young man's house in his human form and was healing the wound on his hand when the man woke up. He is shocked to see a young boy in his room, but Naru quickly explains that he is the fox that he saved this morning. He explained that he had bitten the man earlier, thinking he was trying to harm him. Now, he wanted to heal the wound. The young man is speechless to see his hand free of any marks, but he soon comes to terms with it and starts to get close to Naru. This was how Naru first met the young man, Hyun, and it was love at first sight for them. Naru had broken the rules and had his life pay for Hyun's health as he shared his yin energy in the fox bead with Hyun and unnaturally delayed his death. Eventually, Hyun gave him a bead, saying that even if he died, he would always be with him in there. They parted ways, crying, as Hyun promised to protect him in his next life. Soon after that, Hyun's father found out about their relationship and couldn't accept the fact that his son was in love with a mythical creature whose gender is unclear instead of some high-class human. In an effort to protect Naru from any harm, Hyun died while his father spread the rumor that Naru had bewitched his son. He had announced a generous reward for whoever brought Naru dead in front of him, and the humans started to attack Naru for the reward. Amidst all this chaos, Naru had to send Hyun's spirit to the afterlife by himself, so he was too traumatized and devastated due to the shock. At that time, Hanwol had come to his rescue and protected him from the humans who went after him like crazy for the reward. If it weren't for Han, Naru would have died, as all he could think of was following Hyun. As a mythical creature, he wasn't even allowed to harm humans, so he couldn't understand why they were so against him when all he did was protect the person he loved the most. While remembering all this, Naru relives the pain, as he thinks it all happened because he is not a human. Hanwol is angry to hear that, as he says that Naru had no fault in it and all this happened because humans are selfish. Han then softly holds his shoulder, saying that he won't want to see him suffer again. If Naru hadn't tried to save Hyun back then, he wouldn't be dying right now and wouldn't have to rely on the young energy of a mere human. Naru smiles brightly, saying that he doesn't regret anything and is happy to meet Kyung-hoon because things won't be the same as back then. On the other side, Kyung-hoon calls Yunho, asking him if he is okay, as he heard from Naru that Han was being mean to him. Kyung-hoon is such a green flag. Yunho casually replies that it was nothing and asks if this is the reason Kyung-hoon called him. His friend replies that he called because 2 days from now they are visiting Yunho's family and asks what time he is going. Yunho says that he is going to go by himself this time, and he is grateful for Kyung-hoon joining him all these years, but this time he has some private stuff to talk about without him being there. Kyung-hoon asks him what he shouldn't know, but Yunho dismisses him, saying he can't tell him. Kyung-hoon asks him to call him if he needs someone to talk to and asks him to bring the flowers he got for his family. Yunho thanked him for being there for him, and they hung up the phone. The next day, Yunho dresses up neatly, looking very charming as he gets ready to go to Kyung-hoon's place, but the possibility of seeing Han-wol again worries him. He plops down on his sofa while thinking about whether he really seems like a mean human being to Han-wol and can't understand why he is so upset about Han's opinion of him. All this ordeal makes him wish that Han was always mean to him instead of helping him, as he couldn't help but fall for him more. Before visiting his family, Yunho goes to Kyung-hoon's apartment, where Naru gives him the flowers Kyung-hoon bought for his family. After receiving the flowers, he turns around to leave, and as Naru hurriedly tries to stop him, he hurts his feet with a pair of scissors. Yunho rushes to help him, asking him if he is okay, but Naru assures him he is okay. He apologizes to Yunho for Han-wol's rude behavior, saying it is his fault that Han's being cold to him as he is just worried about him being hurt. Yunho replies that it is okay and says that they should treat his wound first, before they can get up. Han-wol comes there, and seeing Naru's condition, he thinks that Yunho has hurt him. He rushes inside and harshly pushes Yunho to the side while shouting that he always wanted to hurt Naru and finally got his wish. Yunho sits there, shocked, as Naru tries to calm Han, telling him that he hurt himself. When his anger subsides a little, he notices Yunho sitting there, shocked and surprised by the fact that Yunho might be afraid of him. Suddenly Yunho stands up, shouting with tears in his eyes that this is all Han takes him for, and storms away from there. After he leaves, Naru reminds Han that he has agreed to apologize to Yunho, making him regret his actions more. Meanwhile, Yunho visits his family in a memorial house and tells them about how Kyung-hoon wanted to come, but he stopped him this time for he wants to get some alone time with them. He places the flower there as he tells his family that Kyung-hoon doesn't see him as someone more than a friend and reveals how Kyung-hoon isn't interested in girls. He tells his family that he came to meet some new people recently, and even though they are good people, he keeps clashing with one of them. He says that he doesn't know why that person's words hurt him, even though his face and voice are totally his type. He concludes that the other guy's personality doesn't match with his. He suddenly breaks out in tears, complaining to his family for leaving him all alone as he really wants to talk to them about his life and misses them a lot. After calming himself a little, he says that he is feeling better than before as he has fewer nightmares, and asks his family to wish him luck for his upcoming big performance. He bids them farewell and tells them how much he loves them. As he leaves, Han, who has been hiding there all this time, approaches his family's stand while regrettably thinking about how Yunho keeps crying because of him. Just then, he looks at Yunho's family pictures and is surprised when they look oddly familiar to him, and a distant memory flashes through his mind. Seems like he has already met his in-laws. Later that night, Yunho is lying in his bed with tears leaking from his eyes when a goblin flame comes there and softly taps his cheek. Han-wol is in Kyung-hoon's apartment when he finds out that Yunho is leaving the country for an international tour that will last 2 weeks. Han seems calm enough to hear it, but the goblin flames around his head keep tapping his head fiercely. Naru is surprised to see this and asks him if he did something to upset them, but Han stays silent in reply. Kyung-hoon suddenly addresses him, saying that even though he is Naru's friend, he will not tolerate what he did to his friend, and he should apologize to Yunho. Han agrees to apologize as he remembers Yunho's shocked face when he accused him of hurting Naru. For the next 2 weeks, Yunho is on his international tour, leaving the audience speechless with their jaw-breaking performance and dazzling looks. Yunho is breathtakingly beautiful. I would die to attend his concert. After their last concert, he lies on his bed while thinking about how he always feels sad after the concert ends but feels the happiest when he is on the stage. After his mind relaxes a little, he remembers the events that happened at Kyung-hoon's apartment, which makes him wonder if Han-wol really hates him that much. He comes out of his thoughts when Jong-ho comes to his room with drinks. As they sit there, sipping on their drinks, Jong-ho talks about how it feels like yesterday when he asked Yunho to join their band, even though 10 years had passed. He asks Yunho if he resents him because he could have been a famous idol if Jong-ho hadn't asked him to be their vocalist. Yunho chuckles after hearing that, as he says that he gave up his dream of becoming an idol when he was in middle school, and if he wasn't their vocalist, he would not be singing right now. He mentions how he wouldn't be doing something else as he doesn't have any other talent, which reminds them both of the time when he kept breaking things in the past. When they are done laughing at his clumsiness, Jongho softly asks him if something is bothering him, as he looks like something is weighing him down. Yunho replies that things are kind of difficult. His leader instantly asks if this is related to Hanwol. Yunho is embarrassed about getting caught like this, as Jongho adds that he knows that Han would be hard for him to please. Yunho dejectedly says that Han doesn't like him much, but Jongho just smiles upon hearing that, saying that they are both very naive. Hanwol is sitting on his favorite tree, and he can't understand why he can't stop thinking about Yunho. 2 weeks later, Yunho lands back in Korea with his team and instantly receives a message from Kyung-hoon. His friend praised him for his amazing performance and then said that he yelled a lot at Hanwol for being rude to him. He said that Han also felt bad for his behavior and asked for Yunho's address so he could apologize. But before giving the address, Kyung-hoon wanted to get his permission. He texts Kyung-hoon that he can give Hanwol his address and goes back home, where Hanwol is already waiting for him, wearing a white shirt. Do you remember who had advised him to wear the white shirt? Our Han has an amazing memory when it comes to a certain someone. Hanwol quickly approaches Yunho upon seeing him. Yunho tries his best not to look at Hanwol, secretly scolding himself for being happy to see Hanwol. Han leans down to look into his eyes and apologizes for his previous rude behavior. Seeing Han so close, the only thing Yunho can think about is the unrealistic, handsome looks of Hanwol. Before he can stop himself, Yunho says that if Han's face and voice weren't his type, he wouldn't have forgiven him. He blushes when he realizes what he said, but Hanwol seems amazed as he just smirks as he tells him to rest up. He quickly turns around and leaves. Yunho is surprised by the abrupt visit. Then Han suddenly turns and admits that he has been waiting for Yunho to come back. Yunho flushes to hear the confession and stands there speechless. Han rushes to get away from there, hiding his own flushed face and desperately trying to control his rapidly beating heart. Later, Yunho is sitting in his apartment, a little disappointed that Hanwol only wants to say a few words to him, but he is still happy to see Hanwol and can't stop gushing about his looks. He suddenly remembers that Hanwol was dressed differently and turned crimson due to the fact that he might have done it because Yunho had mentioned it during their dinner. After resting for a while, Yunho visits Kyung-hoon's place and gives Naru and Hanwol the chocolates that he brought for them from the tour. Foxy happily hugs him, expressing how much he misses him. As he gives Hanwol his chocolates, their hands brush a little, but they both quickly pull away. Yunho notices Han is looking at the big box he brought for Kyung-hoon, and even though he thinks that they should be happy that he even brought something for them, he can't help but explain himself. He talks about how Kyung-hoon is his old friend, so it is natural to give him something special, but he handpicked the best choices for each one of them. Hanwol smirked to see him explaining himself, such a tease, and even though it annoyed Yunho, he couldn't stop the way his heart fluttered at the dazzling smile. Naru happily chews on the chocolates and offers them to Yunho, but he refuses, saying he has them at home. Yunho is surprised when Hanwol suddenly comes near him and puts chocolate in his mouth. Since the chocolate got to his lips, Yunho takes the chocolate from Hanwol. He starts eating, grumbling about how he said he had it at home, but he again blushes hard when Han just stares at him intimately and says he didn't hear what Yunho said. Han keeps staring at Yunho as he licks his fingers and tells Yunho he still has some chocolate on his lips. Feels like we are barging in on some private moment as Han seems to be eating Yunho with his gaze. Hanwol is dazed by the sweet scent wafting from Yunho and softly holds his hand. He comes out of his trance when Yunho looks away, blushing, and shyly asks him why he is being like this. Hanwol also blushed after realizing what he did. And as they both quickly moved away from each other, Naru couldn't help but gush about their cuteness. Kyung-hoon is sitting in his apartment with Naru, wearing a cast on his arm. Foxy is worried about what they are going to tell Yunho about the injury, but Kyung-hoon is calm as he says that since Yunho already knows about him seeing the spirits, it is not a big deal. Just then, Yunho barges into the apartment and worriedly approaches Kyung-hoon, asking him if he is okay. Kyung-hoon smiles softly as he says that since it has been a while, he has stopped seeing the spirits, so when one of them suddenly sprung in front of him, he stumbled back. At that moment, a store sign fell from its position. Kyung-hoon got his arm injured while trying to save himself from the fragment flying toward him. But they didn't have to worry as it was just a minor fracture. Yunho is still worried as he searches Kyung-hoon for more injuries, just as Hanwol walks into the apartment. Yunho asks Kyung-hoon to tell him if he needs anything, and Kyung-hoon says that he doesn't have to worry as Naru is going to help him. Yunho is not happy with the statement, so he announces that he is going to help, but Naru quickly dissolves the situation by saying that they can both do it together. Foxy is our little peacemaker. Hanwol silently watches Yunho and Naru running around and trying their best to help Kyung-hoon, annoyed to smell the sweet scent coming from Yunho due to his feelings for Kyung-hoon. After they finish eating dinner, Yunho helps Kyung-hoon change his shirt and can't stop his heart from going crazy after seeing Kyung-hoon's amazing body. He compliments Kyung-hoon on how he is still working out and says that he will go to the store when Kyung-hoon mentions that he ran out of water. Hanwol is silently watching this display of affection, annoyed with how close Yunho is to his friend. Yunho's scent has changed due to his feelings for Kyunghoon, which increases Hanwol's irritation. Watching them interact like that, Naru comments on how they are such good friends and giggles when he notices Hanwol huffing with jealousy. Kyunghoon suddenly mentions that he wants to take a shower, and Yunho is eager to help him, but before he can follow him, Hanwol drapes an arm around his shoulder. Yunho is flustered by the action and looks at Hanwol, who says that he should leave Kyunghoon to Naru and instead go to the mart for groceries with him. Yunho is still worried about his friend, but he agrees to go to the market, and they both bid goodbye to Foxy and Kyunghoon. Yunho is once again flushed as Hanwol suddenly grabs his waist, while the mythical tiger is happy when he notices that Yunho's sweet scent has come back. After buying groceries, they were both walking back home when Yunho couldn't stop talking about Kyunghoon being injured. Hanwol is extremely annoyed when Yunho says he wished he was injured instead of Kyunghoon. He finally snaps at Yunho, rudely asking him to stop talking about it. Yunho is surprised by the sudden change in his mood. Suddenly, they hear a loud sound of a car crash, and a plastic of groceries falls to the ground just behind Hanwol. People were surprised and comments on how the car crash sounded like thunder. Hanwol turns around and notices Yunho kneeling on the ground, trembling badly. He rushes to help Yunho and softly holds his cheek, helping him calm down his breathing. The tears fall like a stream from Yunho's eyes as he looks at Hanwol with his shallow breathing. After his episode, they are both sitting on a bench in a park when Yunho sadly asks Hanwol, saying that he must be surprised by his reaction. Hanwol quickly says he is fine and instead asks Yunho if he is feeling better now. Yunho smiles softly, replying that, thanks to Han, he is a lot calmer now. Han hesitantly asks Yunho what made him react like that earlier. Yunho tells him that when he was younger, he was in a horrible accident that caused him to have panic attacks. He says that it was hard for him to deal with all this, but he was able to hang on because he had Kyunghoon and his band members with him. He reveals how he reminds himself that there are still people who care about him, as he has given up his dream of becoming an idol in his life. He says that Kyunghoon and all the other guys, including Juho, who trained him to become an idol, held on to him. Even though he didn't become an idol like he dreamed of, he is still happy with how his life turned out. He says he is still not completely healed, and his reaction to the car crash earlier was his PTSD from the accident in which he lost his family. He looks at his slightly trembling hands while talking about how, whenever he hears a loud crash like that, his body acts like that on its own. Yunho reveals that after the accident, when he found out it was a drunk driver who crashed into their car, he would always throw up at the slight smell of alcohol and couldn't even get into a car for a while. And even now he can only ride the car if he pushed himself to sleep. Hanwol suddenly holds his hand, saying that he doesn't have to try and that he can avoid the things that hurt him. Hearing the words of comfort from Han, Yunho starts sobbing as he asks Hanwol if it is okay for him to do that. To his surprise, Han softly hugs him in the hope of comforting him. After his initial shock, Yunho leaned his head on Han's shoulder, who couldn't help but think about how he never held a human like this before. Yunho thanks him for his help, saying that he is always surrounded by good people. The superstar softly closes his eyes, feeling at peace for the first time after hearing someone say that he doesn't have to try. Yunho hesitantly tries to hold Hanwol's sleeve and almost backs out, but he finally gathers his courage at the last moment and tightly grabs onto Han's clothes. Hanwol tightens his arms around Yunho, thinking about how nice it is to be among those good people, and he is happy to be on that list if it makes Yunho happy. Yunho has lost hope in pursuing his longtime crush and friend, thinking he is straight, but the slight hope he still has is shattered when his friend announces that he is gay but likes someone else. While trying to win back his friend, he unexpectedly bumps into a mythical creature that changes his belief in love and everything else he thought he wanted. Yunho decides to tell Han about his family as he reminisces about some happy moments he spent with them. In his memory, he remembers his mother telling him and his brother Yoonjun to never suffer in silence and to share their worries with their parents or each other. His father also told them not to hold it in if they wanted to cry, which led to a fun banter between their parents as his mother commented about how their father was a crybaby. In the present, while sitting with Han, Yunho says that he can never forgive the drunk driver who killed his family. The little human's emotions confuse Han as he has never felt empathy toward any human before, but he couldn't ignore Yunho's emotions. Our tiger is falling in love with the little human. He asks Yunho if he resents God, to which Yunho replies that he does, even though he doesn't believe in one. He explained that he resented them not because they made his life miserable, but because they took his family as a young child. Han is surprised by his strange thinking of Yunho, as he always thought that humans rely more on God when they face hardships in life. As they sat on the bench talking, Yunho leaned his head back, saying it was because the people around him saved him. Han silently looks at him with a slight smile while thinking to himself that since Yunho is always crying, he couldn't understand why Juho said he was strong, but now he understands the statement. Even though Yunho doesn't want to take credit for overcoming a trauma like that and moving on with his life, he is such a strong person. Later that night, Yunho is lying in his bed comfortably thinking about how it is strange that he felt at peace once he shared his story with Hun. Aside from this, the situation made Yunho think that Hun must not dislike him since he listened to his story. He falls asleep still thinking about how warm Hun's hug was and dreams of the mythical tiger. In his dream, Hun seductively talks to him saying he is wearing the shirt Yunho wants him to wear. He suggestively asks Yunho if they should do what he wants to do and starts to take off his clothes. The scene is interrupted as Yunho sees Hun wearing a tiger onesie and growling at him. Yunho immediately wakes up after that and is utterly disappointed that his imagination couldn't handle seeing his crush alluringly. Meanwhile, Hun also dreams of Yunho and he confesses to the latter that he wore the white shirt for him. He realizes that Yunho is wearing his clothes and has cat ears and a tail that are similar to his own. As Yunho purrs and clings to him, Hun convinces himself that the person in front of him is not Yunho. However, listening to his words, Yunho starts to tear up. He quickly hugs Yunho and apologizes, not able to bear seeing him cry. His dream continues as his tiger ears slowly appear as Yunho and he both lean forward to kiss. Unlike Yunho, Hun's dream is not interrupted in the middle and he wakes up flushed after his erotic dream. Hun seems to have more wilder and stronger imagination than Yunho. The next day, Yunho visits Kyung-hoon's place and is greeted by Na-ru at the door. He inquires about his friend's health from Na-ru. Na-ru tells him that Kyung-hoon's cast has been removed and since he is feeling much better, he goes back to work. Just then, Na-ru notices the bag in Yunho's hand and asks him what it is. Yunho tells him that it is a spicy octopus and asks if Hun has arrived. As he is struggling to open the food box that he brought for dinner, Na-ru tells him that Hun is not here yet. Yunho says that they will start eating then and uses force to open the box, but the lid comes off with a strong pull, splashing Yunho with the hot sauce. Na-ru starts to panic seeing this and tells Yunho to instantly take off his clothes and take a shower. Yunho takes his advice and goes into the bathroom to wash up. While scrubbing himself, he regrets buying the spiciest soup as he did it to tease Na-ru but now has to bear this stinging. Suddenly, Hun appears there using the bathroom for his magical entrance as instructed by Na-ru. He instantly smells Yunho's scent and looks around only to find a naked Yunho standing there looking shocked. When Yunho realizes what is happening, he shouts at Hun to get out while hurriedly trying to cover his body. All of a sudden, Yunho's foot slips and he loses his balance, but before he can hit the ground, Hun rushes to help him. Such a sweet accident. Hun wraps his arms around Yunho to save him as they both stumble back, hit the wall, and get drenched by the running shower. Hearing the commotion, Na-ru asks Yunho what happened, but Hun replies instead saying it was him. Yunho speechlessly stares at Hun while thinking about why he always sacrifices himself to save him and wonders if it is because he is interested in him. Hun instantly asks him if he is alright and leans back to take a look at Yunho, who still hasn't managed to utter a single word. As Hun takes a look at Yunho's amazing body, he leans forward, sniffing Yunho, whose smell has surrounded him and is taking over his mind. Yunho finally comes out of his trance and starts to push Hun away. Hun warns him to stop moving as it is dangerous, but Yunho just hastily tries to cover his eyes while telling him to get out as he is getting embarrassed. Hun stares at a flushed Yunho for a moment from between his fingers and closes his eyes, agreeing to whatever Yunho is saying. Hun is completely whipped for Yunho at this moment. Later, the three of them are sitting in the living room where they tell Yunho about being the mythical creatures. Na-ru apologizes for not telling him earlier, but Yunho is deep in thought about them not being humans. Before they could talk further, Na-ru brought a hairdryer and started to dry Yunho's hair. They are all deep in thought as Na-ru dries his hair. Yunho is happy about wearing Kyung-hoon's shirt while Hun can't seem to stop thinking about Yunho's scent. Yunho breaks the silence as he thanks Hun for helping him earlier. Without looking at him, Hun simply replies that he doesn't need to thank him. He sneaked a glance at the little human who now was giggling as he felt ticklish from the way Na-ru was drying his hair. Hun remembers the earlier scene from the bathroom and can't understand how he can feel physically attracted to a human. When he felt those feelings, he was also surprised as he did it unintentionally, but Yunho must have been more shocked and even disheartened with the fact that it was him, not Kyung-hoon. Hun is annoyed by his own thoughts as he stares at Yunho without blinking, sulking even to think that Yunho likes Kyung-hoon more than him. Yunho notices Hun's unwavering stares and is confused by why the tiger doesn't look away from him. He thinks to himself that if Hun can't look away from him, it must be because he is interested in him. He gets shy about his thoughts and looks away, which makes Hun think that Yunho is uncomfortable in his presence. Why do the leads have to assume the worst scenario? Despite the possibility of Yunho being uncomfortable in his presence, Hun couldn't stop staring at him. He looks at Yunho's neck and his tattoos and is startled by his own vivid thoughts. He quickly turns around thinking that he has completely gone insane after his vivid dream last night and abruptly stands up. Na-ru turns the hairdryer toward him, asking what the matter is. Honestly, I almost forgot he was here. Their chemistry is insane. Hun replies that they should stop here for now and can continue their conversation some other time. He starts to walk away without waiting for a reply. Yunho shouts at him that he is thankful but Hun should apologize to him first. Hun just says sorry and disappears without saying a word. Yunho is shocked by seeing Hun disappear like that, amusing Naru with his reaction. Yunho then turns toward Naru saying he will leave too as he needs to digest all of the things he has learned today, and asks if Kyung-hoon knows about them being mythical creatures. After Naru gives a positive reply to his question, Yunho asks him to tell Kyung-hoon he is borrowing his clothes. Naru says that he will do it and asks him if he will come again tomorrow, but when Yunho asks what he means, he quickly changes the topic saying it is nothing. A confused Yunho leaves the apartment, but his thoughts are quickly diverted toward Hun. He is solemn about the fact that Hun just said a simple sorry after hiding such a big secret about himself. He still hasn't calmed down after learning about the mythical creatures, and Hun's dangerously handsome look in the bathroom also has a strong effect on him. Now that he knows Hun is a mythical creature, his insanely attractive features all make sense to him. He tries to tell his heart to calm down, saying they shouldn't act this crazy just because Hun got a little wet while helping him. His irritation grows as he says out loud why he acts so stupid in front of Hun. He doesn't seem to notice the dragonfly that has been continuously following him. After a few days, Yunho again meets with Hun and they discuss Hun being a mythical tiger and Naru being a mythical fox. Yunho repeats what Hun told him, asking him if he is indebted to Kyung-hoon because he is helping with extending Naru's life, so they helped him stop seeing spirits out of gratitude. Hun confirms what he is saying and Yunho just silently sits there for a moment. Slowly his hands started to tremble and he asked Hun why didn't he take some action when Yunho's family was involved in that awful crash, if he could meddle with human lives. He suddenly yells at Hun, accusing him of not helping Yunho when he is in desperate need to find a god. Yunho looks down as he sadly says that he wishes Hun was just a powerless human. Seeing his condition, Hun, who is also feeling heartbroken, slowly kneels in front of him and lowers his head to look at Yunho's face. He softly says that they can't interfere when it comes to the life and death of humans. The way Hun treats Yunho so softly makes me wish to have a mythical tiger of my own. Yunho is still angry as he sharply says to Hun that they don't even know what it feels like to lose something very close to their hearts. Hun still stays calm as he tells Yunho that Naru has also experienced a devastating situation in his life. According to Hun, Naru went against the rule and saved a human by sacrificing his own life, but in the end he had to send that human to the afterlife himself. Yunho is shocked to hear all this, but Hun continues his story. He goes on to say that after death people's souls pass through him and Naru, who serve as portals linking this life and the afterlife. Hun explains that they are mere fixtures who send souls to the afterlife with best wishes. They are not some supreme beings, but rather God's instruments who must dutifully carry out their tasks in their designated areas. Yunho is devastated to hear that, as he always thought that Naru was loved by everyone all his life. He comes out of his thoughts when Hun softly holds his hand, saying he wants to show him something. Before Yunho can even grasp the situation, they are teleported to some other place where a soul of a deceased human is floating in the air. Hun talks to the spirit, saying that he is the path to the afterlife, and if the soul wants to stay in this world it can do so for 49 days, but once the time is over it will be unable to go anywhere else and will perish. Yunho silently watches as the spirit decides to go to the afterlife and passes through Hun's body, who hugs the soul, telling the spirit that it did good. Yunho suddenly starts crying, which worries Hun as he rushes to find out what is wrong. Yunho tells him that he feels relieved after seeing that Hun hugs the spirit when they go to the afterlife. The relief of finding that your loved ones are safe somewhere in heavens is so understandable. He still doesn't understand why he has this sense of deja vu while seeing this situation. Hun asks him if he really feels like that, to which Yunho replies that seeing Hun treat the spirit like that made him think that his family was also sent warmly, and he is relieved to know that. He thanks Hun for making him understand this when he suddenly hears someone calling him Yun and saying he will find him in his next life. Yunho is confused by that as the voice sounded like Hun's voice. This magical world seems to have more secrets than we had thought earlier. Hun softly rubs his cheek with the back of his hand as he hears yet another dialogue, this time with the voice promising to find and love him first in the next life. They both stare into each other's eyes as Hun thinks to himself how he wants to share everything with Yunho. Soon they leave the place as Hun teleports them to Kyung-hoon's place. During the teleportation, Yunho quickly closes his eyes while Hun's arm is wrapped around his shoulders. They move to Kyung-hoon's room where they catch their friends being intimate with each other, and Hun announces loudly they are here. Naru is the first one to move as he comes toward them, asking where they went without informing them. To his surprise, Yunho suddenly hugs him and softly says that he has to become happy. After a moment of shock, Naru leans into the hug as he replies that he will be happy and starts crying. He complains, saying he is happy but doesn't understand why he is crying. Yunho also gets emotional as his eyes fill with tears, and he asks Naru why he is crying when he just said he was happy. "Aw, they are so cute." Naru tells him that when Yunho finds out who they are, he is worried about his reaction. He quickly explains, saying he is not an evil mythical fox and is not manipulative like people say about him. Tears stream down his face uncontrollably as he continues to say that his kind is not cunning and requests Yunho to not be scared of him. While crying, Na-ru asks him if they are still friends. Yunho quickly hugs him again, saying they are still friends and that his being afraid of Na-ru is a joke. Kyung-hoon also joins the hug while Hun just stares at them with a smirk. This interaction makes him think about how Yunho is a warm human that he likes more and more every day. Suddenly, he gets a blurry memory of a spirit asking him to take care of Yunho, but he can't understand what that is. Later that night, Yunho is sleeping in his room when he receives a message from his friend Juho, who wants to catch up with him after a long time. Hun is with Na-ru, who keeps teasing him about Yunho and confronts him about being touchy with Yunho these days. Hun starts blushing but eventually accepts the allegations of his friend. Na-ru is excited to hear this and asks Hun if it means he must know the truth about Yunho's scent. Hun doesn't seem to know anything strange about the scent, which shocks Na-ru. Suddenly, one of the goblin flames starts to bounce on his head angrily. Seeing this, Na-ru scolds him, saying that how can he not figure it out when the goblin flames also know and he should be the first one to know. Hun is still clueless, so Na-ru says that it is the scent of 100 flowers mixed with Hun's scent. He says that this is the last hint he is giving Hun, but Hun still doesn't recall anything. Hun seems to have short-term memory loss just like me. Meanwhile, Yunho is sitting in a restaurant with his friend Juho, who asks him if he likes Hun. Yunho is surprised by the sudden question, but Juho just says that he is amazed because it is new that Yunho is talking about someone other than Kyung-hoon. Yunho is startled but decides to share his feelings, telling Juho that at first he was just attracted to Hun's physical appearance and deep voice, but when he came to know how nice Hun is to his friends, he started to like him more. He says that at first Hun's behavior was cold toward him, which makes him think that Hun is rude. This changed when he saw how Hun looked after his friend. Even though Hun was not in a relationship with his friend Na-ru, seeing him fully focused on him made Yunho wish that Hun would treat him the same way. The good thing is that recently it seems like Hun has also taken an interest in him. After hearing his explanation, Juho says that he could also do the same, so why did Yunho dump him? Oh, he is the ex-boyfriend. Yunho chuckles to hear that and asks him if he is still holding that grudge against him. Juho replies that he was the one who got dumped, so he can't get over it like that. Yunho gets serious as he apologizes to Juho, who softly ruffles his hair and tells him not to get sad as he was just teasing him. Yunho passes him a soft smile after hearing his comment. Juho gets serious as he says to Yunho that he has to find someone who can love him with his whole heart. Yunho asks him why he is talking like that, to which Juho replies that since they have been in a relationship for a year, he is speaking from what he experienced. Juho suddenly sighs, talking about how they were so young when they dated. Yunho also adds that it has been a long time since they have known each other. Juho is so proud of the fact that he has known Yunho longer than anyone else, as they first met when Yunho was 12 and they spent 2 years together as trainees. His statement gives Yunho a flashback to when they first met and how hard they had worked together. They continue to reminisce about their past as Juho tells him how he always wanted to be an idol with Yunho. After listening to Juho, Yunho replies that things were tough back when they were trainees, but he was content because Juho was with him. Juho teased Yunho, saying that he was one of the best trainees in their agency. He suddenly gets sad, saying that they would have fulfilled their dreams if his parents hadn't forced him to go abroad to study, and how he always regretted that he left Yunho alone. Yunho comforts him, saying that he got a good job now due to his parents' decision, and he had also left the company soon after that. Juho quickly says that it was the company that fired Yunho, and if he hadn't moved away he wouldn't have left Yunho alone in those hard times. Yunho is still calm as he continues that it was not the company's fault because they couldn't train someone who was a potential disaster due to his trauma. Juho sharply replies that their company was at fault because Yunho never lacked when he was performing with his band. After realizing that what Juho said made sense, Yunho lets out a broken sob and thanks Juho for always being there for him throughout the years. Juho wanted to say something, but he changed his mind and instead jokingly asked Yunho how he would have survived without him. It is a relief that Yunho had such amazing friends at the most difficult times of his life. He then adds that since he is the person who has been with Yunho since a long time ago, he thinks that Yunho deserves to be with someone who loves him. He says that someone should be able to compete with Kyung-hoon, whom Yunho liked very much. The situation makes him wonder what Hun is like. Yunho quickly says that he hasn't moved on from Kyung-hoon and started liking Hun, but Juho doesn't believe him. Juho then says that if they both don't treat Yunho well, he could come back to him. Yunho chuckles in reply and thanks him, promising he will do that, which greatly pleases Juho. After finishing their food, they stood outside the restaurant. Juho bade Yunho goodbye by patting him on the shoulders. Their attention is suddenly diverted as Hun, who is standing a few feet away, calls Yunho. They turn toward him, but he is just standing there angrily looking at Juho's hand on Yunho's shoulder. Someone is jealous. He doesn't recognize Juho, but in his mind he is shouting at him to get his hands off of Yunho. Earlier, when Hun was hanging out with Na-ru, he revealed his feelings toward Yunho. He tells his friend that he feels emotions he has never experienced before and dreams of strange things over and over again. Hun further admits that seeing Yunho makes him feel insecure. Naru tells him that he has feelings for Yunho, but Hun doubtedly asks how can he be so sure about that. Naru suggests he try giving Yunho a light hug, but Hun argues that he has hugged Yunho several times unintentionally. Naru says that he has to do it officially if he wants to confirm his feelings. Hun leans against the wall as he asks Naru what kind of reaction he must have to know that he likes Yunho. Naru is annoyed by the question and says that Hun will know once it happens, but he has to get Yunho's permission first. In the present, Hun glares at Juho and then strides toward Yunho. Yunho, who is immediately drawn to him as if he is so glad to see Hun, asks him if he is here to meet him. With a soft smile, Hun replies that he is just here to check something. The personality change when he looks at Yunho is giving me butterflies. Before they could talk further, Juho came in between them, pushing Yunho behind him, and asked Hun who he was. Hun is furious with the way Juho has put himself between them. Unfazed, Juho is astounded by Hun's handsome looks and finds it amusing because Hun's personality is so dissimilar from Kyung-hoon's. Sensing the tension between the two, Yunho tells Juho that he is the one he was talking about earlier and tries to introduce him to Hun. However, Juho just grabbed his hand and told Yunho that he would introduce himself. He then turns toward Hun, telling him that he is Juho, a close friend of Yunho. To their surprise, Hun just rudely says that he should leave if he is done. Juho says goodbye to Yunho, softly touching him, and promises to meet him again soon. He then leaves, carefully looking at Hun's sour mood. While walking away from them, he thinks to himself how Hun doesn't seem to have a small crush on Yunho. After Juho leaves, Hun is still standing there with an upset face when Yunho comes into his line of vision, grabbing his attention. Hun finally speaks, saying he needs to talk to him, so Yunho offers that they go to his place. Soon they both reach Yunho's place, and he offers to give Hun a tour since this is his first visit here. Instead of replying to his offer, Hun just stares at him and suddenly asks him if he can hug him. Yunho is taken aback by the question, but when Hun asks him if he is saying no, he replies that there is no reason for him to refuse. He wanted to add something, but Hun didn't give him time as he scooped Yunho into his arms, hugging him tightly. Yunho is shocked by that as he just thought Hun would give him a pat on the back or a light hug. Hun is also surprised by the hug, as before his head was about to explode with the desire to ask Yunho about Juho. At first he didn't understand when Naru said he would know once he hugged Yunho, but now when he does that his mind just goes blank. Yunho's scent is pleasant and soothing like always, but the hint of Juho's smell bothers Hun and he wants to get rid of it. He slowly raised his hand to touch Yunho on the neck, as it was where Juho had touched him. Startled, Yunho slaps his hand away, bringing Hun back to his senses. Yunho shoves him back, but Hun, who cannot control his desire to touch Yunho, quickly wraps his arms around his waist as if not to let him go. This makes Hun angry at himself, as he always can't control himself when it comes to his desire to touch Yunho. Silence breaks when Yunho asks him why he always puts Yunho first and doesn't hesitate to sacrifice his own comfort whenever Yunho is in danger. Yunho reminds him how he wouldn't even look at him when they first met and asks him if he is interested in him. Hun is shocked to hear that and is completely flabbergasted when Yunho says that he is interested. For a moment he couldn't understand what Yunho was saying, so Yunho pulled him closer and confessed his feelings for Hun. Suddenly Hun gets another distant memory of someone declaring their love for him. He stares at Yunho's blushing face when the scent of several flowers and his own reminds him of someone named Yun. A few centuries ago, Hun was resting under his favorite tree when a butterfly came there. It keeps flying around Hun while talking about how the latter is so handsome and how someone can be this attractive. The butterfly tries to sit on Hun's arm, but it starts to burn, as unlike Hun, other humans are just a little hot. Hun wakes up when he feels a sensation on his fingers, and looking around he finds the butterfly near him. He asks the creature if it bit him, but the butterfly quickly defends itself, saying it did not bite him. The little creature then asks Hun why he is hotter than other humans, to which Hun replies that he is not a human but a mythical tiger. He says that if the butterfly doesn't know about that, it means he hasn't been alive for long. The butterfly is just amazed to get a chance to meet a mythical creature and figure out why Hun is so handsome. Hun is not happy with the creature as he finds it noisy, but the creature is not bothered by his mood and starts following him. The butterfly is whipped by Hun's looks at first sight, just like all of us. Hun says that he hasn't permitted him to follow him, but the butterfly requests that Hun let him stay with him as he has only 1 month left to live. Hun finally agrees to his request, and the butterfly happily starts following him everywhere. After that day, the butterfly always stays by his side except for the time when he goes back to the flowers to spend the night and gets along well with Naru. Even though the butterfly was loud, Hun was not bothered by it much and started to get used to the silliness and scent of different flowers which he lacked. One day, as they are sitting under the tree, Naru suggests that they should give the butterfly a name. The butterfly happily agrees with the suggestion, so Naru asks Hun if he has something in mind. Hun replies that he wants to call him Yun, which means fate. Yun liked his new name very much, more so because Hun was the one who gave him that name. Since touching Hun directly burned Yun, he still hugged him through his clothes and sincerely thanked him. They had spent a lot of time together after that, so when one night Yun doesn't return as usual, Hun starts to get worried. He remembers Yun saying he has only 1 month left to live and starts to panic. He rushes to find his friend following his scent and finds Yun resting on a flower. Hun is relieved to see Yun alive and tells him that he was looking all over for him. Yun apologizes for making him worry about him, but Hun is just happy to find that his friend is still alive. Hun then tells Yun to get on his shoulder, saying he has to show him something. Later they are sitting on a tree and Hun explains that this tree is his old friend Jong-won. He says to Yun that he wants to show him the night sky, which can only be seen if you are sitting next to Jong-won. Yun looks at the sky and is mesmerized by the sight in front of him. He thanks Hun for showing him this amazing sight and tells him how he looks beautiful even at night. Hun chuckles to hear this as he says that Yun is the first one who calls him beautiful, when in reality Yun is the beautiful one. In reply to his compliments, Yun says that he is ugly as the other butterflies always laugh at his wings. Hun is furious to hear this and asks him why they target his wings, to which Yun replies that it is because his wings are asymmetrical. Hun looks at his wings again and says that they are very pretty and warm, so Yun shouldn't listen to what others have to say about him. Yun touches his arm softly in reply, which makes Hun feel like he is falling more for the butterfly. They sit silently there for a moment as Hun dejectedly thinks to himself about how his body feels extremely hot to Yun, and due to that it is impossible for them to touch. He breaks out of his reverie when Yun tells him that today feels surreal, as Hun searched for him first and even showed him the night sky. Hun looks at Yun with a soft expression and asks him to sleep next to him from now on instead of going to his usual spot. Yun is ecstatic to hear that but doubts whether Hun really meant it, but Hun assures him that he does. For the first time in his long life, Hun muses that it felt good to receive love from someone and to have that someone become valuable to him. As they slowly drift to sleep, Yun softly says that he is hoping Hun is not hurt badly by the fact that he burns Yun, as that is just how warm he is to him. Before completely falling asleep, Yun declares his love for Hun. Nauru is sitting near a stream with Yun, who asks him if he will always stay by Hun's side. Nauru is surprised by the strange question, so Yun explains that he is just a lowly creature with a shorter lifespan than those of humans and doesn't have much time left. Nauru stops him from saying things like that, but he continues saying he hadn't done much to help them, but he still wanted to thank them for being his friends and giving him the most amazing memories of his life. Nauru starts crying after hearing that, while Yun thanks him again for taking care of him. Nauru is still crying as he replies that Yun will always be his friend. Yun is surprised to see that Nauru is crying for him and says to Nauru that he is a good person, so if he gets another life he would like to meet him again. Nauru quickly says that they will be friends in the future too, and they promise to take care of each other. Nauru is such an amazing friend to everyone around him. In the evening, Yun is flying toward Jongwon because Hun had told him to come there before sunset. He is hurrying toward the tree as he was delayed after staying back for the nectar of thistle honey, a very sweet flower, and Hun must be waiting for him by now. He suddenly notices Nauru being surrounded by some villagers who are planning to kidnap him. They are about to hit Nauru, but Yun rushes to help him, trying to stop the villagers from hurting Nauru. While trying to rescue Nauru, his wings catch fire with villagers' sticks. His first thought is to help Nauru escape, but when he goes there, Nauru is not able to move and there are also no goblin flames there. Yun figures that he needs to tell Hun that Nauru is in danger and starts flying with his burning wings. Sitting under the tree, Hun is happy to finally see Yun arrive, but is left shocked when he sees Yun's burnt wings. He rushes to help the butterfly and asks him what happened for him to get hurt so badly. Yun replies that he is fine, but Hun must hurry to save Nauru as the humans are beating him at the gate of the town. Hun is worried for him, but Yun assures him that he is fine and tells him to hurry and help Nauru. Hun tells one of the goblin flames to protect Yun and orders the rest to go to the entrance of town to protect and heal Nauru, assuring them that he will be right behind them. Before leaving, Hun gives his ornament to Yun and tells him to stay here until he is back. Yun asks him not to worry about him and again urges him to run and help Nauru. Now we know that Yun's selfless act has saved our Nauru's life. After Hun leaves, Yun asks the goblin flame for his name. The goblin flame suddenly turns into a human and tells him that his name is Hei-ro. Why is everyone so handsome in this story? Yun thanks Hei-ro for staying with him as he takes his last breath, saying that he couldn't tell this to Hun, but he thinks his time is now over. He asks Hei-ro if he could deliver his message to Hun and Nauru, in reply to which Hei-ro nods with tears streaming down his face. Hei-ro tried to heal Yun, but since it was humans who hurt Yun, his healing power was not working. He attentively listens as Yun asks him to tell Nauru that he is happy he could use the little time he had left to save his friend, and Nauru shouldn't be sad as he is happy to be friends with him. He then asks Hei-ro to tell Hun that he is thankful to him for letting a lowly creature like him stay by his side and giving him a chance to see amazing things in his life. Yun says that he is glad he liked Hun so much and is content with the life he had. He muses in his thoughts that he knows why Hun put his ornament near him, and he had received so much love in his life that he would always wait for Hun in his next lives. Just then Hun appears there calling Yun and saying that he left Na-ru with an official so he is okay now. He is surprised when he sees Hei-ro in his human form holding Yun's unmoving body. He rushes to take the butterfly from him and almost shouts at him saying he promised to wait for his return. He falls to the ground as his tears fall on Yun and he cries for him to not just lay there and instead complain about his Huns being too hot. The rain starts to pour as Hun sits on his knees crying for his friend. Hun then promises to find Yun first in their next lives and love him with all his heart. He hopes that one day he will be able to touch Yun as he desires so much and hopes to give the butterfly a warm hug. In the present, Hun looks at Yunho in his arms thinking about how he is holding him instead of Yun. Due to the silence, Yunho looks up at him and is surprised when a tear falls into his eye from Hun's eyes. He stares at the mythical tiger confused as the tears roll down his cheek. Hun quickly turns around from Yunho, who is confused by his tears, but more so by the fact that he is also feeling sad without knowing any reason. Hun thinks that he has betrayed Yun and assumes that the reason he is attracted to Yunho is because of his similarity with Yun. His thoughts are interrupted as Yunho softly holds his Hun, wrapping another hang around his arm, and asks him what is wrong. Silently staring at him, Hun Wol muses that it doesn't matter if he feels something for a human now because it was humans who put Na-ru in danger and stole Yun from him. Yunho has just fallen in love completely and Hun just decides to back away. Worst timings ever. He turns away from Yunho saying that they should forget about what happened today. This shocks Yunho, who shouts that he reached out because Hun came closer to him. He says that now that he gathered the courage to confess his feelings, Hun is backing away from him. He doesn't give Hun a chance to say something and instead asks him if he only pitied him because he was always crying due to his trauma. Hun tries to explain himself, but Yun instead shouts at him to get out, saying he doesn't want to see his face again. Later that night, Yunho is lying in his bed feeling strange as he feels hurt even though it was Hun who was crying. Meanwhile, Hun is sitting under the tree with Na-ru and says that when he held Yunho he was reminded of Yun and started to feel guilty. Na-ru queries what he would do if there was no guilt involved or if he doesn't need to feel bad about what had transpired in the past. Hun simply says that there is no way for him to stop feeling guilty. Na-ru tears up to hear this as he says that he is the one who feels most guilty about what happened with Yun, but there is a possibility that Yunho is his reincarnation. Hun interrupts him and stands up to walk away, but Na-ru completes his sentence asking him what he would do if Yunho was actually Yun. Hun is still not convinced as he says it is impossible, but Na-ru reminds him that if someone sacrifices themselves they can be reincarnated as humans. Hun is still doubtful, but Na-ru says that every time they smelled Yunho's scent Hei-ro and he remembered their butterfly friend Yun. He says that just like the name Hun gave him, it was destiny that Yun had returned to him. After Na-ru's convincing, Hun confessed that it would be nice, but he can't bring himself to think like that. Sometime later, Hun meets with Yunho again. Yunho tells him that he doesn't regret confessing his feelings to Hun the other day. Meanwhile, Hun is deep in his thoughts because even after pushing Yunho away, when he sees him again he just wants to hold him. He just said okay in reply to Yunho's confession, which irritates him even more as he sharply asks him if he is even paying attention to what he said. Feeling dizzy with his thoughts, Hun is confused if he is interested in Yunho as a human or because of his scent that resembles Yun's. Yunho again breaks the silence as he says that he wants Hun to be open with him. Hun concludes that he just doesn't understand his feelings. He decides that shouldn't get closer to Yunho as he will only end up hurting him. Hun hesitates a little but then says to Yunho that he doesn't have any feelings for him. Yunho is heartbroken to hear that and starts to cry. He manages to tell Hun that he won't bother him anymore and goes to leave. Hun's heart starts to throb seeing Yunho crying like that. He tries to stop Yunho, saying he wants to explain something, but Yunho pushes him away, saying he can't even bear to hear his voice anymore. Hun stops after hearing Yunho's harsh words. Yunho again tells him that he doesn't want Hun to pity him and asks him to stop playing with other people's feelings. Yunho goes to his room and slams the door, then slides down by it while sobbing. He is confused by his strange feelings as instead of feeling angry or hating Hun he just feels sad. Outside the room, Hun leans his head against the door talking to Yun in his mind and asking him what he should do, as right now he wants to go to Yunho. He wants to comfort Yunho and hold him. He concludes that he fell for the person who has Yun's scent. Thankfully, he doesn't take long to realize his true feelings, or else this slow burn would have burned us. Yunho is sitting on his couch complaining to his parents about how they said the person who catches feelings first loses, so he loses for liking Hun first. He slams his fists on the cushion he is holding while crying desperately and talking about how he couldn't help but fall for Hun as he is so handsome, kind, and totally his type. He slowly lies down, saying it is different with Kyung-hoon as he could wait for him forever, but with Hun he wants to make sure that Hun just wants him. He keeps crying and mumbling that he must have lost his mind. At his place, Kyung-hoon receives a call from a concerned Jong-ho. Before ending the call, he assures Jong-ho that he will go to Yunho's place. As soon as he cuts the call, Na-ru asks him how Yunho is doing. Kyung-hoon replies that Yunho is sick and hasn't shown up at the studio for a week. According to Jong-ho, Yunho must have locked himself in his house as it is rare for him to skip practices like this. Kyung-hoon says that Jong-ho is worried since it has been a few days since they last reached Yunho and now wants Kyung-hoon to check on him. Han, who is silently listening to all this, starts to get worried but doesn't say anything. Kyung-hoon turns to him and says that he will give him the code to Yunho's door so Han can go there. He warns Han to properly go through the door and not just teleport there. Han is hesitant, but when Kyung-hoon asks if he should go instead, he quickly refuses. He thinks that even though he has no right to feel jealous, he still can't bear the chance that Yunho will be swayed if Kyung-hoon goes there. Kyung-hoon then says that Yunho only gave the code to him for emergencies, and he is not giving it just for Han to hurt Yunho again. Han replies that he understands and leaves to go to Yunho's place. At Yunho's place, a mythical dog is hovering around Yunho as he sleeps on the couch. Han, who just arrived, quickly chases the dog away and turns toward Yunho, who is whimpering in his sleep. He softly raises Yunho's head a little, checking if Yunho has been released from his sleep paralysis inflicted by the dog. Han pulls Yunho toward his chest, gently hugging him as he apologizes for his rude behavior and feels heartbroken over the fact that Yunho has been suffering all alone. With loving eyes, he then picks Yunho up in bridal style, intending to take him to bed so he can sleep peacefully. Yunho opens his eyes and is surprised to look at Han, but in his dazed mind he just thinks that Han is his imagination. He starts crying, blaming Han for always showing up in his dreams when he doesn't want him to. Han apologizes to him, which confuses Yunho more as he thinks this is a weird dream because Han is actually apologizing. Yunho starts punching Han's chest, saying that since it is a dream he is going to be mean to Han. "Sweetie, your cotton fists aren't going to do anything to the big bad tiger." Han gently puts him on the bed and cups his cheek, saying that it isn't a dream and he is sorry. Yunho leans into his touch, saying that it doesn't matter as Han will disappear when he wakes up. Han lies down beside him and slowly hugs him while promising that he will not go anywhere. Yunho returns the hug while still adamant that it is a dream and that he is not excited by anything Han is saying. Han again promises that he will not leave and wishes him a good sleep as they both slowly drift to the dreamland. Han wakes up after some moments as he feels Yunho's hand touching his chest and grabbing his collar. Yunho keeps moving closer to him, which makes Han wonder if he is actually sleeping. "Don't worry, Tiger, it seems like our Yunho is just having a naughty dream." He softly touches Yunho's cheek but figures that he is actually sleeping. Still, he couldn't pull his hand back as he traced Yunho's lips but didn't do anything else as Yunho hadn't permitted him to do so. Han is still in a daze over Yunho's beauty softly touching his lips, but he is startled when Yunho suddenly moves, almost putting all his body weight on Han. Even though Yunho's arm is almost choking Han, he is still happy with their close proximity, but it also makes him realize that he is touching someone who is sleeping. He carefully moves Yunho fully onto the bed and then softly hugs him while thinking to himself that he only ever hugged anyone if he was sending them to the afterlife, but it is different with Yunho. He wraps an arm around Yunho, thinking that when their warm bodies are touching he feels complete. Now that he is sure that they both have feelings for each other, he can't handle his urges anymore, so if Yun really came back as Yunho, he can touch him without any hesitation. He remembers that now it is his turn to chase him and make Yunho fall in love with him. It is hard for Yunho to sleep peacefully as whenever he sleeps he goes back to the time of the accident in his dream. Like always, he sees himself crying and calling for help in his dream. Suddenly he hears a meow and looks up to find a tiger cub staring at him. The tiger seems distressed due to his tears and suddenly jumps to hug him. The tiger cub licks his cheek and Yunho snuggles into him, forgetting about his earlier cry. In the morning when Yunho wakes up, he comes face to face with Hun's sleeping figure. His first thought is about how handsome Hun is, but when he fully wakes up he is shocked to see Hun lying in his bed. The memories of last night come back as he remembers how he punched and cursed Hun. Embarrassed, he tries to sneak out of bed, but suddenly an arm wraps around his waist as Hun pulls him back and hugs him from behind. Before Yunho could say something, Hun requested that he hear what he had to say. Yunho lets out a broken sob as he shouts at Hun to let him go, saying he doesn't need him. Hun tries to apologize again, but Yun keeps shouting and struggling to free himself, saying that his feelings are hurt and that his apology means nothing. He reminds Hun that he said he doesn't have any feelings for him, so now he doesn't want to look at Hun, so he should get out. Hun quickly says that he lied about his feelings, which makes Yunho calm down. Hun is slowly getting the hang of handling the situation. Hun keeps his head buried in Yunho's shoulder as he continues that just like Yunho said, he keeps protecting him because he has feelings for him. He tells Yunho that he was waiting for someone he loved in the past, so he couldn't reciprocate Yunho's feelings that quickly. Yunho scoffs to hear that, saying that Hun is so dense. Hun simply agrees and Yunho asks him why he stopped waiting for that person. Hun tells him that it is because he thinks Yunho is that person even though he was not human before, and he can't bear it anymore if he doesn't see Yunho. His words don't impress Yunho very much as he says that Hun wasn't even lovesick. However, Hun replied that he thought about him every day and dreamt of him every night. Yunho then asked Hun if he only saw him in his dreams or if they did something more there, to which Hun replied quite seductively in his ears that he gave lots of love to Yunho. Yunho is shocked to hear those bold words and complains, saying that he thought Hun was conservative. Hun laughs seeing his reaction, saying that he is a tiger first and a mythical creature second. He admits that he was just joking and says that in his dreams they hug warmly, and even though they don't need sleep as mythical creatures, he requests sleep every night so he can dream about Yunho. Hearing those words, Yunho starts to blush. But when Hun asks him if he also saw him in his dreams, Yunho refuses. Hun gently holds his hand, saying that he is not good at talking about his feelings or talking with humans. However, he doesn't want to be the source of Yunho's pain anymore and is sorry for his earlier behavior. Yunho's heart goes out of control as Hun cups his cheek and says that he never felt like this for anyone in his life. He further admits that Yunho is the only one he feels attracted to, which makes him nervous in front of him. Yunho leans into his hand, happy that there was no one else in the past either. Yunho then asks Hun if he wants to do what they did in his dreams, and even though flustered, the tiger eagerly nods. Yunho wraps his arms around Hun's shoulder, tightly pulling him closer, and asks how he feels. Hun hugs him back, wrapping his arms around his waist as he replies that it feels good and the dreams he had don't compare to the real feelings. Hun squeezed him tightly, saying that he didn't want to stop hugging him. He doesn't have to worry as Yunho is also enjoying the hug, feeling comfortable from Hun's warmth. Yunho pulls back and looks at him as they both stare into each other's eyes. Slowly they start to lean in to kiss, and Hun closes his eyes, but instead of kissing him, Yunho suddenly squishes both of his cheeks. Yunho pushes him onto the bed and straddles him, saying that Hun can't touch him anymore as he is going to get revenge on Hun for hurting him so much. Hun is just happy with their position and strokes Yunho's cheek, saying they will do as he wishes. Flustered, Yunho runs outside, slamming the door and leaning against it as he tries to control his wildly beating heart. He is sure that he is going crazy as he likes Hun so much. Inside the bedroom, Hun lies back down, hugging and sniffling Yunho's blanket, thinking about how he is acting cool. Yunho goes to meet Kyung-hoon at their usual spot and is surprised that, unlike what he thought, his feelings didn't fade away after being with Hun. He thanked Kyung-hoon for sending Hun to his place, as it was the reason they were able to clear things up and confess their feelings to each other. Kyung-hoon replies that he is happy with the progress they made, and then adds that they are both so dense as they have been friends for a long time but didn't know that they both like guys. Kyung-hoon then asks Yunho when did he found out about liking guys, as he himself found out pretty late. Yunho replies that he kind of figured it out in high school but couldn't muster the courage to tell Kyung-hoon that it was because of him. Yunho confesses that he suffered all alone, to which Kyung-hoon says that he should have told him instead of suffering alone. Yunho nonchalantly says that it was difficult, while thinking to himself how he could share his feelings with the person he loved. Kyung-hoon wraps an arm around his shoulders, telling Yunho to share with him if he has anything on his mind. Yunho softly looked at him, thinking this was the reason he liked him, but now it is different. Suddenly, Kyung-hoon's hand is swatted away from Yunho's shoulder as Hun comes there and sits behind Yunho, hugging him. Yunho is surprised to see him, but Hun just hugs him tightly while sharply telling Kyung-hoon that it would be better if he didn't touch Yunho like that anymore. Kyung-hoon nervously laughs, saying he was just hugging Yunho as a friend. Hun looks at Yunho at this statement and is surprised to find him laughing at the situation. Yunho's laughter comes to a stop as Hun squeezes him tightly in his arms while side-eyeing Kyung-hoon, who is sitting on the other side. The criminal offensive side-eye. Kyung-hoon stands up, saying he will leave them alone. Before leaving, he asks Yunho if he wants to join him when he is going to meet his grandma on Saturday. Yunho agrees to go with him, saying how he hadn't seen her since high school, and reminiscing about how she used to take care of him just like Kyung-hoon's mother. Kyung-hoon leaves after that, while Yunho turns to Hun, asking him how he found them. Hun replies that he asked Naru about their location since he hadn't seen Yunho all day long. Yunho cheekily asks him if what he is saying is true or if he is just anxious after hearing Yunho was with Kyung-hoon. Hun admits that it is true that he was filled with certain emotions that he couldn't determine whether it was anger or jealousy. Hun muses about how he always thought these human emotions were stupid, but now he is feeling the same thing. Yunho happily claps to hear that Hun's jealous, and the latter asks Yunho if it is so satisfying to watch him suffer like that. He confesses that he is also jealous given the fact that Kyung-hoon knew his past, which Hun has no idea about that. While staring at Yunho, Hun is suddenly reminded of the time they almost kissed and that he couldn't stop staring at Yunho's lips from that day onward. We need to bet on how long will he be able to control himself. Yunho also softly stares at him while thinking about how Hun looks just like the tiger cub he saw in his dreams. He gently cups Hun's cheek, addressing him as Tiger, and says that he will share everything about his past, so they should go home together. Hun just hums, giving his consent as they continue to stare at each other fondly and suddenly burst out in laughter. They go back to Yunho's place and sit together on his couch with one of Han's arms wrapped around his waist. Yunho shows him his family album while telling him that when he was 7 or 8 he was playing in the playground and got separated from his family. Later his parents told him that a handsome young man brought him to them. He points to another picture saying it is from the time when his family went on a trip to a valley. Hun stares at the pictures thinking about how when he saw Yunho's family picture at Columbarium the other day he felt like he had seen them before. Yunho again tells him about the time when he was lost, saying he was crying alone after separating from his family. A butterfly suddenly came there and kept flying around him. Yunho eventually stopped crying because the butterfly was so beautiful. To his surprise, Hun finishes his story by saying that the butterfly led him back to his family. Yunho asks him how he knows about that, but Hun is just speechless after realizing something. He remembers that the scene Yunho is telling him about is the same one he saw in a soul's memory, which means that the day Yunho's family was involved in the crash he was there. He finally remembers the time when he helped the Yunho family go to the afterlife and how his mother's soul asked him to be there for Yunho and give him a lot of love. Hun had promised to take care of Yunho, and he is surprised to remember that it was the only time he had granted a soul's wish. He slowly holds Yunho's face in his hands, talking about how Yunho is the person he promised to protect and love. Hun tells Yunho that he was the person who woke him up in the playground when he was little and brought him back to his parents. He also reveals that he was the one who guided Yunho's family to the afterlife. Yunho starts to tear up at the strange coincidence, and Hun hugs him, saying that they are destined to be together. I love how Yunho fits perfectly in Hun's arms. Hun tries to kiss Yunho but doesn't succeed in his mission as Yunho stops him at the last moment, reminding him that he can't touch him because he still has to get his revenge. Hun sits sadly there feeling rejected, but Yunho is unfazed and asks him to tell him more about his family. Hun embraced him again, telling him that the day he led Yunho's family to the afterlife he found it bizarre that 3 souls made the same wish to take care of their last family member. He unknowingly complied with the request when the last soul passed through him and asked him to look after Yunho and give him a lot of love. Hun tells him that the soul whom he had made the promise to was the soul of the mother of the child who survived the accident. Yunho starts to get emotional again, hearing about how much his mother cared for him even after death. Hun softly rubs his head, saying that the name of the child had slipped his mind, but he is sure it was Yunho because he had similar memories. He explains that because a soul is a spirit and when it departs from the body it resembles a whiff of smoke. When the soul of the deceased passes through his body, key memories of that persona play back in his head like videos, allowing him to see both their memories and their appearance as humans. Yunho's memories are the same as those of the soul. Hun reveals that he had found the boy from their memories where the crash happened, and now he knows that the child who was calling desperately for his already dead family was Yunho. It seems like they have crossed paths multiple times in the past. He tightly hugs a sobbing Yunho and presses a soft kiss on his temple while continuing his story. He says that at the time of the accident, Hei-ro tried to heal Yunho, but Hun had stopped him, thinking it would not work. Yunho is surprised to hear the name Hei-ro for the first time, and just on the clue the goblin flame appears there. Yunho thinks it is a firefly, but Hun tells him that it is a goblin flame, the same one that was with him when he died in his past life. Hei-ro smacks Hun's head at that, but he ignores him and instead turns toward Yunho. Hun says that even though he hasn't confirmed if he is Yun's reincarnation, he will tell him everything. On set, Yunho is eating food at a restaurant, but he can't stop thinking about the things Hun has told him. He couldn't wrap his head around the fact that Hun was there when his family died and he is the reincarnation of a butterfly. Even though Hun has told him everything, it is still hard for him to believe. He also figures that the voice he heard earlier must be Hun talking to him about his past life. He comes out of his deep thoughts when Kyung-hoon pats on his shoulder, asking him to start eating. They are together with Kyung-hoon's family for lunch, and Yunho finally decides to pay attention to his food. Kyung-hoon's grandmother, who is also eating with them, keeps looking at Yunho with a guarded expression. After they finish eating, Kyung-hoon and Yunho start to argue over who is going to pay for the food. They playfully shove each other, giggling and trying to stop the other from paying. Hun, who has come to pick Yunho up, is watching all this secretly and is not happy with their closeness. After grumbling to himself for a while, Hun finally loses his patience and decides to come out of hiding. Before he could reach Yunho, he was startled by Kyung-hoon's grandmother suddenly shouting, but couldn't understand who she was referring to. Suddenly, Kyung-hoon's grandmother took Yunho away for a private talk after telling Kyung-hoon to pay for the food. Hun is left standing there a little confused as he thought the grandmother was calling out to him. Meanwhile, Grandma asks Yunho if he remembers what she told her when Yunho and Kyung-hoon graduated from school. Hun, still spying on them, and realizes that she has high spiritual energy and is connected with the gods. Yunho remembers that Grandma had told him to be careful of tigers, but he doesn't know if Hun also falls in that category. Grandma silently looks at where Hun is hiding while telling Yunho that even if he encounters a tiger, he must escape. Hun is upset to hear that, not knowing why she is saying that. Yunho asks the question on his behalf, wanting to know the reason behind her statement. Grandma replies that her vision is weak since she hasn't looked into someone's future for a while, but she saw the connection between Yunho and that tiger so clearly. What she saw worried her, so she decided to give Yunho a warning. She says that Yunho is like a butterfly that should be able to fly freely, and since the tiger is too hot it will be hard for him to handle it. She caresses his cheek, saying why is he passing all the flowers around him and choosing a tiger instead. Yunho figures that she is talking about Hun and tries to say something, but she interrupts him, saying she will be direct with him. She tells him that if he stands with that tiger it will burn his wings. Hun and Yunho are both shocked and confused to hear what Grandma told him. Hun's thoughts are all jumbled, as he always thought that humans were creatures who find it hard to let go of their lives when they die. When the humans are about to go to the afterlife, they always ask him for favors. This is the reason why it is a rule to not answer their request and just wish them a calm transition into the afterlife. Only once in his life had he responded to a request and eventually forgot about it, but the thing that shocked him most was that he was fulfilling his promise without knowing that he was doing so. He was glad that the soul trusted him to take care of Yunho, but what Grandma said left him heartbroken. He couldn't stop thinking that Yun died because he was with him. He comes out of his thoughts when he hears Yunho telling Grandma that he is not concerned about that. Yunho declares he will gladly put up with this if it means he can be with the tiger. If he feels that his fate is unfair, he will change his destiny. He continues by saying that since it is his life and his choice, the tiger also belongs to him. Hun becomes flustered upon hearing sweet words from Yunho. Grandma seems happy to see his determination, as she says that if he is this determined, there is nothing he can't do. She says that everything is a blur now and she is not sure if God will hear her prayers, but she will pray for him every day. Yunho hugs her, grateful to her for taking care of him so well. As Yunho and Grandma shared a warm hug, Hun was still in the corner, frustrated by what he had heard. Clenching his fist, Hun is still not sure if he can stay with Yunho even though the latter has shown his determination. He requests that Hei-ro protect Yunho even when he is not here. Later, Hun meets Yunho at the cafe and is surprised when Yunho asks if he listened to everything that Grandma said. Hun is surprised as to how he knows that, so Yunho tells him that he knows just like Hun can smell his scent. Recently, he noticed that the air becomes warm whenever Hun is close to him. This surprised Hun more, but Yunho is unfazed as he says this is cool. Yunho puts his cup down, saying that just like what he said earlier, he is not going to give up on Hun. Hun tries to argue, but Yunho quickly asks him if they are going to end their relationship because of something that hasn't even happened yet. Hun replies that he doesn't want to break up, and hearing his answer, Yunho holds his hand, saying they are fine then. Hun softly holds back Yunho's hand while thinking about how strong he is and how delicate and comfy his hand is. When they are touching each other, Hun feels like the warmth is seeping from where their hands touch. Yunho then asks if he really likes him, to which Hun quickly says he liked him when he was young and he also likes him now. Mentioning Yun upsets Yunho a little, but when Hun asks him what's wrong, he replies that he is just thinking about his concert. Hun seems oblivious, but Yunho's concerns about his feelings can put strain on their relationship in the future. A few days later, Yunho is walking back home happily singing as he is excited to see Hun after being busy rehearsing for a few days. When he reaches his place, Naru greets him excitedly, but Hun just gives a cold hello. Yunho is confused by Hun's reaction, wondering if he was the only one who was excited to meet him. Naru quickly hugs him, asking where he has been lately. Yunho replies that he was training until late in the night. He suddenly lies down on the ground, saying there is no rehearsal tonight, but he is exhausted. They are both shocked when Hun suddenly picks up Yunho, throwing him on his shoulder as he starts walking to the bedroom. Yunho tries to protest, flailing his arms, but Hun ignores all that and carefully lies him down on the bed. Yunho stares at him silently as Hun pulls a cover on him. Softly stroking his cheek, Hun tells Yunho to rest. Naru catches them being sweet with each other, oblivious to what is happening between them. He then happily jumps on top of Yunho and Hun, squeezing them both in a hug. Under Naru's non-existent weight, Yunho and Hun's eyes meet, surprising them both, but they couldn't look away from each other. They stare at each other from under Naru as Hun squeezes his hand and softly says that he has missed him. Hun closes his eyes after that, while Yunho is left wondering if Hun missed him or Yun. Hun and Naru are hanging out together at Kyung-hoon's place, but Hun keeps sighing loudly. Naru asks him what is wrong, to which Hun tells him that what that lady who is connected to the gods said keeps bothering him. Naru asks him to tell him what else is wrong, and Hun almost bursts out, saying he wants to kiss Yunho on the lips. Naru scolds him to not just sit here looking glum, but instead go and tell Yunho that, but Hun sadly says that Yunho won't allow him to kiss. Naru laughs at his misery while he continues that Yunho seems to like when they touch, but he doesn't know why they can't kiss. Naru says that lately whenever he sees Yunho he is way too excited, so he should try to stay calm and just observe Yunho from afar so he can know why Yunho is acting like this. Hun decides to take his advice, and when he goes to meet Yunho next, he just keeps staring at him from the other end of the couch without saying anything. Yunho is confused by his behavior, while Hun finds it very hard not to touch Yunho. When Yunho asks him if something is wrong, he quickly denies it. This makes Yunho wonder if Hun has stopped liking him, as he is acting just like he did towards him when they first met. Oblivious to Yunho's thoughts, Hun is just trying to control himself, nervous because it was always him who initiated the touch. Stop hesitating, Hun, and just do what you want to do. We are cheering for you. Yunho finally considers the possibility that Hun is acting strange because he is not allowing him to kiss. He reasoned out that he wanted to kiss Hun when he could completely say for sure that he was over Kyung-hoon. Yunho also wants Hun to see only him before they share a kiss, but for now he thinks that Hun suddenly started to like him because he is that butterfly Yun. He wants Hun to see him as Yunho Seo instead of that butterfly Yun. On the other hand, Hun keeps thinking about just touching Yunho. He thinks that he might have pursued only his desires and set aside Yunho's, even going as far as citing their differences as a human and a tiger. With the old lady's words weighing on his mind, he is worried about hurting Yunho. He slowly raises his hand to touch Yunho, but before he can do that, Yunho stands up from the couch. Yunho is frustrated by the situation as he starts to feel like they went back to acting formally toward each other just like before, and asks Hun to go back home. Hun accepts what he is saying without any resistance and is getting ready to teleport, but Yunho stops him. Yunho shouts at him, saying he is not going to ask why he is mad at him. Hun is confused by the situation, but this irritates Yunho more as he shouts that that butterfly must have never gotten mad like that. He continues that unlike Yun, he is going to get angry and say some hurtful things, so Hun must not like him now. Hun still couldn't fully grasp the situation, but quickly assures Yunho that it is not like that and gently asks him what is wrong. He tries to hold Yunho's hand, but Yunho slaps it away, instantly regretting his own actions. Yunho is sad and goes to say something, but Hun stops him as he receives a message from Naru. Naru is asking him for help as he and Kyung-hoon got attacked by something. Hun quickly tells Yunho that Naru and Kyung-hoon are hurt, so he needs to go there right now. Yunho says that he wants to go too, but Hun refuses, saying that he doesn't know the situation and doesn't want him to get hurt. He knows that if Yunho gets hurt, he will have to give up on him, so he ignores Yunho and leaves from there. Yunho is standing there confused when Hei-ro taps on his shoulder, getting his attention. Before Hun reaches the scene, he is wondering if the attacker is finally him. After reaching there, the first thing he finds is that Kyung-hoon and Naru are badly hurt. Instead of the one he was looking for, Hun confronts an evil tiger and tells the goblin flames to treat his friends while he deals with the enemy. He was expecting someone else and is upset that his guess is not true. The evil tiger starts to provoke him, asking if he is God's servant just like Naru is. Hun doesn't answer him and just attacks the tiger. The evil tiger kept talking, saying that Hun would also not be able to stop once he had tasted a human soul. Hun just silently continues to attack him as the tiger says that he can act like a human by making his appearance like them, but as a tiger his instincts will make him thirst for a human soul. Hun shouts at him to stop talking, saying that he is not some monster controlled by his hunger but a mythical creature. He manages to defeat the tiger, but it triggers his emotions again, making him worried that he is going to hurt Yunho. He then turns back and grabs Kyung-hoon by the collar and blames his energy for attracting beings like that, injuring Naru in the process. He just has to act impulsively every time something happens. Naru tries to stop him while Kyung-hoon just dejectedly says that he is right. Crying, Naru argues that it is because he is weak that this happened, but it didn't stop Hun from blaming Kyung-hoon. Suddenly Yunho comes there, forcing Hun to let go of Kyung-hoon and slightly pushes him away. Yunho sits on the ground with Naru and Kyung-hoon glaring at Hun for his impulsive decision. Hun is confused by his sudden appearance, so Yunho tells him that he asked Hei-ro to bring him here and turns toward his friends, asking them if they are okay. Hun is heartbroken when Yunho doesn't look at him, as he wants Yunho to get mad at him instead of talking to Kyung-hoon. He can't stand to watch the scene anymore, knowing that Yunho still has feelings for Kyung-hoon, and he leaves without saying anything. Yunho tries to stop him, but he has already left, which makes Yunho wonder if Hun forgot that he was mad at him. He mumbles to himself that he has a lot to say. Naru hears him and says that Hei-ro must know where Hun went as they are connected. He urges Yunho to go after Hun, saying they will take care of Kyung-hoon. Hun is sitting on his favorite tree, rethinking his jealous act when Naru is hurt. He leans his head against the tree, thinking that he gets nervous seeing Yunho so close to Kyung-hoon, as he just wants Yunho to look at him. Hun is startled when he hears Yunho calling him and jumps off the tree, coming face to face with the object of his dilemmas. He is confused as to why Yunho is here, to which Yunho replies that he wants to be where Hun is and has searched for him everywhere. Hun is ecstatic with the answer as he quickly hugs Yunho, who complains about being sweaty, but he is not fazed, as Yunho's scent is more prominent this way. Yunho says that after what happened he was able to find him thanks to Hei-ro. He then asks Hun if he is okay, worried about him getting hurt. Hun is surprised but elated that Yunho is worried about him getting hurt. He assures Yunho that he is okay and then hugs him again, happy with the progress they have made. Yunho has lost hope in pursuing his longtime crush and friend, thinking he is straight, but the slight hope he still has is shattered when his friend announces that he is gay but likes someone else. While trying to win back his friend, he unexpectedly bumps into a mythical creature that changes his belief in love and everything else he thought he wanted. Hun smiles mischievously as he again asks Yunho if he is searching for him. Yunho is embarrassed, but he confirms what Hun asks him. Hun's playful side is really cute, just like an adorable tiger cub. Yunho's statement invokes the emotions that Hun desperately sought, but it doesn't change the fact that he is still insecure, so he asks Yunho what happened to Ki Young-hoon. A little irritated, Yunho replies that Naru is there to take care of Ki Young-hoon. He then asks Hun if he is okay and tells him not to complain later about being hurt. Hun assures him that he is fine while thinking about how it feels good to have someone worried about his well-being. While holding Yunho's hands, he leans forward a little, once again inquiring about Ki Young-hoon. This time, Yunho frustratedly tells Hun to worry about his own injuries instead of Ki Young-hoon's, whom he hates. Hun then pulls him forward, hugging him tightly as he assures Yunho that he will focus on himself. Smiling contently, he thinks to himself that this is exactly what he wanted all along. Later that night, they are sitting on the top of the tree Jongwon when Hun pulls Yunho into his lap due to his fear of heights. Once they are settled, Yunho tells him that he had no fear of it when he was young, but after what happened with his family, he starts to be afraid of everything, including heights and water. He dejectedly tells Hun that he thought he had overcome his fear as he always jumped and ran freely on the stage, but it wasn't like that at all. Hun tightens his arms around Yunho and assures him that he can lean on him whenever he feels scared, as he will always be on his side. Listening to his sweet words, Yunho leans his head on Hun's shoulder and confesses how his heart is racing because of what Hun said. They continue to talk as Hun softly holds his hand and says to Yunho that he doesn't need to keep forcing himself to fight his fears. Folks, find yourself who tells you to fight your fears instead of keeping them hidden. He continues to say that they will always be together, and if Yunho has to face any situation that he is afraid of, he will be there. Yunho looks at Hun with stars in his eyes and blushing tells Hun to stop seducing him. He then reminisces about how it feels like it was only recently when he liked Hun for his godly physical appearance. This catches Hun off guard as he asks Yunho if he only likes him because of his looks. Seems like Hun doesn't have a true idea about his own crazy handsome looks. Yunho quickly explains himself, saying that he soon started to like other things about Hun as well. He wraps both of his hands around one of Hunwol's hands and tells him that the other thing he likes about Hun is how kind he is toward Naru, which he saw regularly at Ki Young-hoon's place. It had made him wish that Hun would care for him in the same way he does for Naru. After listening to his explanation, Hun teases him for being possessive, which Yunho confirms while puffing his cheeks. Hun found him so adorable that he squeezed Yunho's cheeks, asking if he got what he wished for. Yunho acts embarrassed for a moment, but then remembering something, he sharply reminds Hun that he needs to apologize to Ki Young-hoon. Hun looks like a sad puppy after Yunho scolds him and agrees to apologize to Ki Young-hoon for his rude behavior. Yunho coos at how cute Hun looks and softly rubs his hair. Hun breaks the momentary silence as he asks Yunho the reason for his anger earlier. Yunho looks sad as he replies to Hun that he is angry because of the cold treatment he is getting from Hun lately. He complains about how Hun doesn't talk to him much and doesn't even initiate any physical connection. Hun is embarrassed by the accusations, while Yunho continues to say that he feels like Hun went back to his old self, where the only person he cares about is Naru. Avoiding Yunho's sharp glares, Hun quickly defends himself, saying it is not like that. He reveals the reason behind his behavior. He wanted to touch Yunho but didn't know what to do when the other kept avoiding him, so he asked Naru for advice, who told him to take a step back instead of rushing things between them. Yunho is confused by Hun's statement but doesn't get a chance to say anything as Hun hugs him tightly again. The mythical tiger confesses that he badly wants to kiss Yunho, but he will not force anything just because of his wish, so he is waiting for the right time. He adds that when Ki Young-hoon's grandmother said those things about him, he couldn't bring himself to be closer to Yunho, but he was determined to not give up on their relationship. Yunho leans back a little to look at Hun's face, who continues that he won't know if it is right for him to stay with Yunho, as he is worried that Yunho might face the same fate as the butterfly Yun. His statement catches Yunho off guard as the feeling that Hun only sees Yun in him comes back with full force. Yunho tells him not to worry about anything, to which Hun agrees while softly kissing his palm. To Hun's surprise, Yunho pulls his hand back and suddenly says that he is not the butterfly Yun. Hun was taken aback. Yunho then explains the real reason why he was avoiding Hun's touch, which was that he wanted Hun to feel the same pain as he did and that he was lying. Yunho finally opens his heart to Hun, telling him how he tried to move on from Ki Young-hoon several times, but it was very hard. His feelings have never changed for the past 10 years, so he imagined that they would stay the same. When Hun came into his life, his feelings started to change. He was happy to think that he had finally met someone who would free him from that predicament. But his hopes were crushed when he heard that he was the reincarnation of the butterfly Yun, thinking his feelings toward Hun were actually Yun's feelings and not his. Yunho confesses that when he came to know about Hun being a mythical tiger, he heard Hun's voice promising to find him in his next life. At that time, he didn't know what that statement meant or who was it for, but then he found out about Yun and it confirmed that he was really Yun's reincarnation. Hun is shocked to hear his confession and asks him if what he said was really true, but immediately stops as Yunho is sobbing at this point, saying that he feels like he is vanishing. Yunho is really a crybaby, but it is alright since he looks extremely adorable even when crying. He brokenly requests Hun to not only look for Yun in him, as it makes him feel like Hun doesn't see him as him but only as the reincarnation of the butterfly, and this breaks his heart. Hun is stunned by hearing all this from Yunho and realizes that he didn't consider how Yunho is feeling. He softly hugs Yunho and presses a kiss on his hair, quickly apologizing for his behavior. Hun assures Yunho that he is the only one he has eyes for. Yunho just hums softly and asks him to keep talking. Han obliges with his request as he keeps reassuring Yunho that he likes him a lot and is sorry for making him feel like he sees Yun in him. Despite what he is saying to Yunho, he also starts to doubt if Yunho actually likes him or if it is just the butterfly's feeling. The thing that worries him most is if Yunho is still crushing on Ki Young-hoon in his heart. He cups Yunho's cheek, saying that he also wants Yunho to only like him. Yunho suddenly starts to bawl his eyes out as he punches Hun with his cotton, first saying that he is crying like this because of Hun, but the latter has still the audacity to doubt his feelings. Seeing Yunho's intense reaction, Hun smirks a little and says that he is happy to know that Yunho is crying for him. Yunho wipes his tears as he confesses that he also wanted to kiss Hun, but since he wasn't sure if Hun actually liked him, he kept avoiding it. The honest confession impresses Hun as he presses a soft kiss on Yunho's forehead and says that there is no reason for them to avoid kissing now. He then softly rubs his thumb under Yunho's eyes and slides it over his lips, confessing that Yunho is the first ever to make him want any type of physical connection. Hun tells him that from when he first saw Yunho naked in Ki Young-hoon's bathroom to when they were lying together in bed after Naru hugged them, he was shocked at the strong reaction of his body. He leans closer to Yunho and rubs his lips, saying that wanted to touch Yunho like this so bad. Hun continued to say the fear of being hated by Yunho always stopped him and proceeded to kiss Yunho on the neck. Putting a hand over his chest, Yunho tells Hun that he doesn't have to hold back anymore and moves to kiss him back. Just then Hei-ro flies in between them, stopping their kiss. We are finally having a main lead kiss, but the goblin flame seems to have other ideas. Hun frustratedly shouts that he doesn't want Hei-ro to protect Yunho like that. His rants stop when Yunho cups his cheek, forcing him to look at him again, and gives him a soft peck. Yes, proud of our little human taking the initiative. With red cheeks, Yunho confesses to him that he wants Hun too. Hun's heart starts to beat faster as he dives in again, kissing Yunho with full passion. They continue to make out on the top of the tree, lost in each other. This makes Yunho oversensitive to the sounds around him, and he feels himself getting excited as his ears and lips start to quiver. When they pull back after a while, he gives Hun a tight hug and they stare at each other lovingly. Yunho presses a gentle kiss on Hun's nose while his thoughts wander toward how Hun's hands are so big. Even though he is embarrassed, he still can't stop himself from wondering if everything on Hun's body is big since he is a mythical tiger. Naughty Yunho. Hun continues to touch Yunho all over and presses kisses on his shoulder and neck, which makes Yunho want to run away and never move at the same time. Just then there is a sudden loud sound from the tree which makes Hun pull back instantly. He face palms himself, talking about how he has unintentionally lost control again. Yunho is confused by his sudden reaction, so Hun tells him that Jongwon just asked him if they were going to keep grinding on top of him. This makes Yunho feel embarrassed too, and he offers that they go to his place and continue what they were doing. Despite the tempting offer, Hun hesitates as he doesn't want to lose control when he is alone with Yunho. To his surprise, Yunho doesn't seem scared and instead intrigues him more, saying that he is not sure about who will really be in danger. He then playfully asks the mythical tiger if he wants to take a bite out of him, which makes Hun laugh and finally agree to the invitation. This sweet exchange is like the most awaited conclusion of the story between a butterfly and a tiger, which were forcibly torn apart by fate thousands of years ago. At Yunho's place, the two sat face to face on the bed with both of their faces red. Without shying away, Yunho asks Hun why he is not making any move to touch him like he did moments ago. He wondered why Hun was uncharacteristically shy, to which Hun tries to explain that it feels different when they are in bed, but trails off. Knowing that Yunho is still on board with them being intimate, Hun then takes off Yunho's hoodie and throws it away while pushing Yunho to lie down. Fellas, consent is very important, learn from our tiger. After making sure that Yunho is fine with what he is doing, Hun hovers over him and starts unzipping Yunho's sweater. He then began kissing his neck and touching Yunho all over, who was flushed by all the attention he was getting. Hun pulls back after a minute, and seeing the hickey on Yunho's neck, he starts to regret his impulsiveness again. His first instinct is to apologize, but Yunho just jokes about the situation and pulls Hun down for a hug. He asks Hun if he is trying to mark his territory, and seeing Hun's embarrassed face, he is blown away by the tiger's cuteness. Hun confesses that it is hard for him to control himself when he is with Yunho. He looks into Yunho's eyes and admits that since he is a tiger, he is always worried about hurting Yunho when they are intimate. Listening to his insecurities, Yunho reminds him that he said that even though he finds it hard to interact with humans, he will try to do so. He continues that he knows Hun cares about his well-being and he is thankful for everything he does. Yunho then assures Hun that it is alright if he goes a little extra, and that as of now he is being way too careful. His words give Hun a boost as he leans down, pressing another kiss to Yunho's lips. When he pulls back again, Hun asks Yunho to be his mate. This confuses Yunho a little, but he figures out that Hun is trying to ask him out. Seeing his confusion, Hun hugs him and clarifies his proposal means that he doesn't want Yunho to look at anyone else except him, and he will do the same in return. Yunho agrees to Hun's request, even calling him his mate. Hun is ecstatic with his reply and shows his excitement by kissing Yunho on his chest and stomach. Yunho suddenly sits up a little as he musters up the courage and asks Hun to live with him. The sudden request left Hun speechless, but Yunho told him again, admitting that it was taking him everything to ask this to Hun. However, before Hun could reply, the doorbell rang. Why does everyone keep interrupting them? With their messy appearances, they both go to open the door and find Yunho's friend Juho standing there. Yunho looks at his friend with a sheepish smile while Hun stands there glaring at Juho. Pretending that he didn't interrupt something, Juho gives Yunho honeyed pears and reminds him to be careful not to catch a cold while touching Yunho's cheek. Yunho replies that he is alright, but is still thankful to Juho for bringing him that. His friend nonchalantly replies that he doesn't mind as he always makes extra anyway. Just then Juho notices the hickey on Yunho's neck, which irks him a lot. He turns around Hun and asks him why he is still here at this hour. Hun is already not happy with Juho's presence, so he quickly hugs Yunho, pressing a kiss on his temple, and announces that he is going to live there from today on. After hearing that Juho doesn't want to stay there for much longer and leaves after saying goodbye to Yunho. As Juho left, Hun hugged Yunho, who asked if he was really going to stay there. Hun presses a kiss on his cheek, saying he is looking forward to living together with Yunho. Meanwhile, Juho, who is on his way home, feels a little disappointed with what he saw at Yunho's place. Still, he is happy that Yunho found someone special and wants him to keep smiling like that. Just then he receives a message from someone named Sungwoo, who is asking him out for dinner. As soon as he reads the message, a smile returns to his face. I am glad that Juho has someone he likes, even though he is oblivious, but his smile shows it all. Back at his place, Yunho is lying on the bed and asks Hun to sleep with him. Hun, who is ready to sleep on the sofa, replies that he is comfortable there and that he may have to go for a job in the middle of the night, so he doesn't want to disturb Yunho. In contrast to what he said to Yunho, the real reason behind Hun sleeping on the sofa is that he is afraid of losing control like before and hurting Yunho in the process. Slowly they both fall asleep, but after a while Yunho wakes up again and sneaks out of bed, not wanting to give up that easily. He tiptoes toward the sofa and stands there for a moment, praising and thinking about how handsome Hun looks even when he is asleep. He then pulls the cover off Hun and climbs on top of him to lie on his chest, not caring what he will think about that. Hun is shocked at first, but his admiration for Yunho grows. He softly presses a kiss on Yunho's hair, completely in awe of how adorable he is. Yunho is way too cute for my weak heart to handle. Sometime later, Juho is sitting in a cafe asking the one who invited him what is so important to talk about that he even waits for him after work. He then sharply asks if this person, who turns out to be Hun, wants to show off that he managed to be with Yunho. Hun replies that since they both don't want to be here, he will not waste their time on useless talk. He says that he wants to know more about Yunho as he doesn't want to make any mistakes in their relationship, and for that he needs Yunho's friends to help. Surprisingly, Juho is relieved to hear this and confesses that he found Hun very intimidating at first, and when he saw that hickey on Yunho's neck a few days ago, it worried him more. He thought Hun was pushing his friend, but now he knows it is not like that. Hun is amused to hear that as he murmurs that he is the one who is being pushed around. He suddenly notices something and asks Juho if he knows the man staring intently at them through the window. Juho turns around and finds his friend Sungwoo standing there. He quickly signs Sungwoo to go home, who turns around while glaring at Hun. Juho apologizes to Hun for the disturbance, saying that it was his colleague. These side ships always have the potential of their own book, and we would love to read it. They continue their conversation as Hun requests that Juho tell him everything about Yunho. Juho starts by telling him how he and Yunho trained together at the same entertainment agency for 2 years, but had lost contact when Juho moved abroad because of his parents. When he came back for university, he asked Yunho out and they ended up dating. Their relationship went on for a year, during which they lived together. Soon they broke up, but luckily stayed friends. Juho says that Hun might have known this story already and that he is sure it is difficult for him to understand their dynamic. Why he was still hanging around Yunho when they were long over. He then reminisces when he and Yunho talk about how their relationship was not a romantic one, which Yunho greatly apologizes for. He is sure that his old self will be surprised at him now. At the time of the breakup, he had assured Yunho that they would still be friends, softly caressing Yunho's tearful face. Despite being teary himself, Juho hugged Yunho, promising to always be there for Yunho and to welcome him with open arms when he got tired of chasing Ki Young-hoon. Hearing this, Yunho profusely thanked him for being there for him. Juho then realizes only after dating Yunho that the only thing he wants for Yunho is to be happy. While sitting there, he assures Hun that the only thing they did when they were together was hug and kiss, so he doesn't have to worry about that. Even after Juho attempts to make him feel better, Hun is still jealous after learning that Yunho shared kisses with Juho. His worries are alleviated when Juho says that he is just close friends with Yunho now. Juho's only wish is to see his friends happy, and he is satisfied to see Yunho smile while being with Hun. He tells Hun that his desires are not as important to him as Yunho's happiness. The selfless statement of Juho surprised Hun as he realized that humans were not like he had thought them to be all along. This makes him wonder if he will be able to be as understanding as Juho when Yunho breaks up with him in the future. Hun suddenly remembers the time when Ki Young-hoon gave him the keys to Yunho's apartment. The realization hits him that all humans around Yunho are opposite to what he had expected them to be. He finally considers the possibility that he was quick to judge humans, which makes him think that he might be more selfish than he thought humans were. Hun wonders if he even deserves Yunho when Juho interrupts his thoughts by starting to tell him about Yunho's quality. Juho tells him how Yunho's personality attracts everyone around him and that he is like a born star. He talks about how Yunho was even more amazing before the accident with his family happened, which saddens Hun. Juho continues to reveal details about Yunho, how he likes to eat chocolate, listen to the rain at home, and also listen to music. We all need a selfless and attentive ex like Juho. According to him, Yunho sleeps wearing masks at times because as a singer he needs to protect his throat from colds, so he tells Hun not to make a fuss about it. Yunho is a hard worker but is someone who gets lonely easily and is most afraid of losing people. Just then thunder can be heard from outside, which turns the direction of Juho's explanation. He says that on the days when there is thunder and storm, Ki Young-hoon would rush over to Yunho, which is something that happened even when they were dating in the past. The loud thunder actually triggers Yunho's memories of the crash to resurface, so Ki Young-hoon is always ready to help him in that situation. The accident has left Yunho extremely traumatized, and Ki Young-hoon has helped him deal with this for a long time. Even though he was dating Yunho, Juho always felt like there was no place for him, so after figuring out how much Yunho needed Ki Young-hoon, he began to let go. He always doubted if Ki Young-hoon considered Yunho more than a friend, considering how much he cared for him. In the past, Ki Young-hoon didn't even know that Yunho was dating Juho and always thought they were good friends and roommates. Juho hopes that things are different now that Ki Young-hoon knows about Hun and Yunho's relationship. Hun quickly gathers himself after listening to all the revelations and quickly stands up to get to Yunho right away. However, Juho stops him before he can leave and says that Yunho is someone who cries a lot and it is simply his way of seeking comfort. So when he is all alone and doesn't cry when he should, Hun must stay by his side. Juho's eyes are filled with tears as he requests Hun to never leave Yunho alone and to always hold on to him, something that he was not able to do. Hun promises to take care of Yunho and leaves the cafe. When Hun reaches Yunho's place, he finds Ki Young-hoon holding a trembling Yunho in his arms. The scene in front of him made him realize that things are the same as they were in the past. He reaches out to Yunho softly, asking him if he is all right. Yunho had always remembered how his family looked because he had their pictures, but with time he became unable to recall their voices. The sounds he always wanted to remember were slowly fading away, but the ones that he wanted to forget kept replaying in his ears. Any sound close enough to those always brings back the terrible memories connected with them. That day when it started raining, he tried to deal with it alone, muffling the sound by closing the windows, putting on earplugs, and hiding under covers. However, it can only do so much, so he desperately wished for Hun to get back quickly, but it wasn't him who was there to help him. When Hun sees the situation in front of him, he understands what Juho means when he says that he feels like there is no room for him. For a moment, he stands there helplessly thinking about what he should do. Just then he remembers how Yunho promised to be his mate. The memory gives him new hope as he tells himself that he is not Juho who will give up so easily. Yunho is his partner, and he is determined to hold him in whatever situation is there. Yunho is still thinking about how the other sounds become muffled when he covers his ears, but he can still clearly hear the sound of thunder. He relates the sound akin to a car crash, making him lose his mind. Yunho comes out of his depressing thoughts when Ki Young-hoon tells him that Hun is here. Hun asks him if he is okay, but instead of replying, Yunho just opens his arms, asking Hun to hurry and hold him. Without wasting another moment, Hun rushes forward and pulls Yunho into his lap as they both sit on the sofa. Ki Young-hoon soon leaves after telling Hun to take care of Yunho. When they are left alone, Yunho looks at Hun with a tear-stained face and asks why he came so late. Hun presses a soft kiss on his temple, apologizing for coming late. Yunho just stared at him astonished, as he couldn't understand how Hun's voice made all the other sounds fade away. He leans his head on Hun's shoulder, assuring him that he did nothing wrong, and then requests that he keep talking. Hun tightens his arms around Yunho as he softly pats his back while whispering words of comfort to him. Yunho repeats the words in his mind as Hun promises to always stay by his side. Hun keeps talking, and listening to his soothing voice, Yunho slowly falls asleep. When he notices that Yunho has fallen asleep, Hun is shocked for a bit, but then realizes that Yunho must have been very scared. He presses a gentle kiss on Yunho's forehead once again, assuring him that he is okay now. The next morning when Yunho wakes up, he comes face to face with a sleeping Hun in his bed. He looks at their joined hands and realizes that he slept well because Hun was by his side, making his heart go soft. He is startled out of his thoughts when Hun suddenly asks him if he slept okay. Yunho quickly apologizes for waking Hun, who leans toward him, slowly rubbing his head on Yunho's neck. Hun replies to his apology that it is fine as he was going to wake up anyway, and says sorry for being late last night. The soft attitude of Hun makes Yunho think of him as a huge cat as they continue to lie there sharing kisses. At their studio, his band member Jong-ho exclaimed how Yunho was happy up until a few days ago, but now he looks very sad to their other members. They look at a gloomy Yunho walking around as Yoon-do tells others that Yunho is looking forward to living with Hun, but it has been 3 days since he last heard from him. Later that day, Yunho goes to meet Naru, who apologizes to him, saying that Hun is busy because of him. He explains that various types of evil spirits come out in the winter season, so they get busy. Since Naru is not well, Hun also has to cover his work. Yunho gently tells him to not be sorry for this, saying that he is just worried about Hun since they now live together. He wants to know if Hun is alright but can't contact him because Hun doesn't have a mobile phone. Naru assures him that Hun will be free today and will soon come back home. That night, Yunho was peacefully sleeping in his bed when Hun came. Quickly changing out of his work outfit, Hun sits on the bed beside Yunho and softly caresses his cheek. Yunho wakes up and is surprised to see that Hun is back. Hun leans down teasingly, saying that Naru has told him that Yunho is impatiently awaiting his return. Yunho is embarrassed to hear that and tries to deny the accusation, but is startled when Hun says that he will leave in that case. He quickly holds Hun's hand and pulls him back, asking him not to leave. Hun swooned at Yunho's cute actions and quickly laid in bed, tightly hugging Yunho. He promises Yunho that he won't leave again, confessing that he is even more impatient to see Yunho. Once they are settled, Yunho asks him if he was hurt, to which he quickly replies no, while thinking about how much he loved seeing Yunho worry and thinking of only him. Yunho then complained that he was struggling to go anywhere due to the winter and suddenly started coughing. Hun is worried that Yunho has caught a cold and quickly wraps the blanket around him. Yunho is not happy about being sick, as he irritatedly says that it is probably just dryness, but he should be able to take care of his throat as he is a singer. Hun quickly tells him not to be hard on himself and brings him a cup of hot milk. Yunho thanks Hun for the drink as he worries about performing the year-end performance in this state. He then tells Hun that his friend is from a very famous boy band and is doing a collaboration with him, so Hun has to attend his concert. Hun agrees to watch his performance and then asks him if he knows the way to quickly get rid of the cold. Yunho is confused by what he is saying, so Hun explains that it is receiving tiger energy. Only if we also had a tiger to warm us up in the freezing weather, but I think for now we will have to rely on the blankets. When Yunho asks him how he can do that, Hun starts to touch him intimately, saying this is the way he is talking about. To his surprise, Yunho pushes him away and turns away from him, pulling the cover to his body. Hun presses a kiss, saying that this way he can get rid of the cold overnight, but Yunho shyly refuses to receive help this way. Hun still doesn't back away as he throws the covers away and pulls Yunho toward him. He lies on top of Yunho, who wraps his arms around Hun's neck as they share a passionate kiss. Hun is thinking about how the sounds Yunho makes when they are intimate make him want to tease him more. Gasping through his breaths, Yunho says that he is worried that Hun will also get sick, but the tiger assures him that it will not be the case, as mythical creatures can't get sick. Hun continues to touch him intimately, rubbing his stomach through his shirt. A blushing Yunho tells him not to take off his clothes due to his cold. Hun continues exploring his body while saying that he won't take off his clothes, but Yunho should feel the warmth of his hands. Amidst their passionate embraces, Hun suddenly feels an evil energy that startles him. Guess their happiness is not going to last for long, let's see what happens. Yunho is oblivious to his thoughts and drags Hun out of his thoughts when he starts complimenting Hun's body, his finger poking his stomach. Hun lunges forward again, pressing kisses to Yunho's cheek, who again warns him about his cold. He softly holds Yunho's hand, using it to trace his abs as he tells Yunho that he can touch him freely as he is all his. Yunho chuckles to hear that and mentions how Hun shouldn't say that as he is not some object. This also confuses Hun, who asks what he should say instead. This time Yunho held his hand to touch his body and advised Hun to say that he would only give permission to Yunho as they were mates. In return, he also agrees to only give permission to Hun. The mention of mates reminded me of all the werewolf stories. Hun and Yunho are perfect to be an alpha and omega. They both mutually agree on the statement, and Yunho wraps his hands around Hun, hugging him. He softly pats Hun's back, saying that he should take care of his body in any case. Yunho also confesses that when Hun said he belonged to him, it made his heart skip a beat. Listening to all this, Hun is thinking about how Yunho is so sweet when Yunho suddenly coughs again. This worries him a little as he buries his head in Yunho's chest, pleading with him not to get sick. They switch positions, and now Yunho lays his head on Hun's chest, ready to fall asleep. Hun wishes him a good night's sleep, pressing a soft kiss to his hair. Yunho slowly falls asleep while thinking about how handsome and warm his mate is. Somewhere else in the city, a big black and red evil snake is flying around mysteriously talking about finding someone. The next morning, Hun ends up catching Yunho's cold, which amuses Yunho, but he gives Hun a kiss to make it all better. As a mythical creature, Hun was always able to hear the ticking of the clock on silent nights. He realizes that the sound might be coming from within himself, and it has gotten so much louder recently. He feels like the sound is an indication that he has lived for too long and that his time on Earth is coming to an end. In the past, he didn't mind the idea of death because he had no reason to live and nothing that would make him want to stay. Now things have changed and he is scared of dying. Instead, he wants to live and grow old like a normal human being. Outside of these thoughts, Hun has been sleeping on Yunho's bed and is woken up by the rustling sound of clothes. He is surprised to find that Yunho is already leaving even though it is still very early in the morning. Yunho sits beside him, softly caressing his cheek, and says that today is his year-end performance. He asks Hun to join Ki Young-hoon and Naru, who are later coming to watch his performance. Hun suddenly pulls him down, making Yunho wish that he could have pre-recorded the performance and watched it together with Hun. Hun agrees with his statement while silently thinking about how Yunho makes his empty heart feel full and beat excitedly. Yunho softly traces his lips while Hun is amazed by how looking into Yunho's eyes makes him forget everything. Yunho leans forward to press a kiss on his cheek, saying that he will do his best in the event, so he'll save Hun's lips for later as a reward. He then gets up to leave as Hun finally concludes that he never felt this kind of emotion before, where every fiber of his being resonates to another. He now understands what it means to be truly happy and love someone. It makes him wish to never lose his newfound emotions. Later that day, Ki Young-hoon, Naru, and Hun reach Yunho's performance venue with all the stuff. Laying the food they bought on the table, Ki Young-hoon announces that they just need cups and utensils. Naru quickly says that he and Hun will bring them. Hun suddenly whispers to Naru that a few days ago he felt its energy. Shocked, Naru asks if Hun is talking about the evil spirit he mentioned a while ago. Hun confirms that it is and that he wants to catch it as soon as possible as he has a bad feeling about it. Naru also suggests that they should also get an officer's help for that, which they both agree on. Meanwhile, Yunho is performing hard during their dress rehearsal. His friend from the famous boy band asks him to take it easy as it is not the final performance. Yunho blushes a little as he says that today he needs to perform well. His friend teases him about wanting to impress someone, and he gladly confesses, saying he wants to do it for his mate. At the time of the show, the host announced that the next performance was a collaboration between band Re-Evoke and Junhyun from another band called Clover 9. Hun is sitting with Naru and Ki Young-hoon, who had forced him to wear Re-Evoke's merchandise as they get ready to cheer for Yunho. Hun is a perfect fanboy. Before the performance starts, the host says that the fans of both groups already know about the friendship between Yunho and Junhyun. The co-host adds to the conversation, saying that they heard that Yunho was originally the main vocalist of Clover 9 and trained together with Junhyun. The host replies that it is good that they will get to see Yunho as an idol singer today. They then announce the vacancies in the band Clover 9 due to a few members of the band fulfilling their military service. Finally, they welcome the singers on stage to perform their songs together. Hun is completely focused on the stage and is amazed when Yunho shows up in a white outfit that is almost identical to what Hun usually wears, with his mint green hair styled perfectly. Everyone is amazed by the performance, and Hun also stares at Yunho adoringly while thinking about how Yunho was worried for nothing. He remembers how a few hours ago, when Yunho ended his rehearsal, he rushed to hug Hun. Yunho jumped on Hun as he cried about how he still couldn't get their routine right and was worried he would mess up on stage. Yunho continued to blow everyone's minds with his amazing looks and captivating stage presence, and made Hun, along with Naru and Ki Young-hoon, completely immersed in the performance. Yunho ends the performance with a wink toward the audience, and Hun blushes bright red, assuming that it was specially meant for him. After the first performance with Junhyun, they came back as Re-Evoke to perform another song. This time, Yunho has let his shirt slip from his shoulder, perfectly showing his arm tattoo, which gives him more of a bad boy vibe. Naru and Ki Young-hoon kept cheering loudly for Yunho, chanting his name loudly, while Hun just stared at him astonished. He thinks about how Yunho is a completely different person while performing and shines brightly on stage. That night after the show, Yunho is walking back home alone with the goblin flame Hei-ro following him. He talks about how he wants to get home quickly and how he should have taken a ride from the guys. He remembers that others are waiting and asks Hei-ro if they should buy food. Unbeknownst to him, an evil spirit is silently watching him walk back home and recognizes him as the human whom Hun cherishes, since the tiger's scent emanates from Yunho. Yunho is still happily talking to Hei-ro, saying he wants to know what Hun felt about his performance. Hei-ro softly rubs himself on Yunho's cheek as they continue their walk back home. Suddenly, Yunho hears the evil spirit, who tells him to blame this on the tiger, and suddenly attacks them. Meanwhile, Hun is at home waiting for Yunho to come back home quickly. Like a repeat of the distant past, an evil being aimed to swallow the butterfly. Hun is at home waiting with Ki Young-hoon and Naru for Yunho to come back home. Instead of Yunho, Hei-ro comes back there, first worrying Hun as he quickly asks him where Yunho is. Naru holds Hei-ro in his hand, shocked when the goblin flame tells them that Yunho was abducted. They didn't waste any time and immediately rushed to the place where Yunho was attacked by the evil spirit. There they find Yunho's bag and the white coat he was wearing that morning. Hun stands up quickly, saying that the evil spirit left Yunho's things and its own tracks to lure him in. Even though he is panicking, Hun is determined to not lose Yunho like he lost the butterfly Yun. Naru gives Yunho's stuff to Ki Young-hoon and is ready to join Hun on his mission to rescue Yunho. Ki Young-hoon tries to protest, but Naru just says that they will bring Yunho back home. Meanwhile, Yunho wakes up in an unknown place, not recognizing where he is. He is startled when a red bony snake hovering in the air talks, asking him if he is fully awake. Yunho is shocked by the situation and asks the being, which is clearly an evil spirit, to identify itself and explain why he is doing this to him. Suddenly he feels the sharp pain in his arm and looks to find a huge cut on it. He turns his attention back to the evil spirit, who is surprised by the fact that even though Yunho can see him, he is still not afraid. The evil spirit then says that he has nothing against Yunho, but it is because of Hun that he is in danger. Yunho sharply replies that if he is planning to harm Hun in any way, he can't do it. The evil spirit just replies that by now Hun should be on his way after finding the hints he has left for him. He then says that before Hun gets here, Yunho should know the despicable things Hun did in the past, piquing his interest. The evil spirit then starts telling the story that a long time ago a butterfly and mythical fox whom Hun adored were killed and hurt by humans. Yunho figures that he is talking about Naru and Yun. The evil spirits continue his story, saying that at the time the only thing Hun wanted was to take revenge for his friends. He then comments on how Yunho would never be with Hun if he had seen that look of revenge in the tiger's eyes. When those humans who had hurt Naru and Yun died, Hun fed their souls to the evil spirit. After the evil spirit had eaten those souls, they didn't disappear. Instead, they became a part of him and coexisted within him. He explained that beings like him and those souls can only be killed by mythical creatures. He loved eating those souls because in return he got the 49 days given to those souls as an extension. Due to that, he was able to prolong his time on Earth, becoming even more powerful. Yunho is shocked to hear all this, but the surprise doesn't stop as the evil spirit further reveals that once he ate the last soul, Hun wanted to take revenge on Hun, tried to kill him, so he had to run to save himself. Yunho is confused and asks him why he has shown up now, to which the evil spirit replies that it is because he is now strong enough to eliminate the tiger. Yunho shouts no, hearing that, but the evil spirit just laughs and asks how he feels about Hun now. Yunho replies that he will only believe all this when Hun is the one telling him that. The evil spirit doesn't stop as he says that Hun, whom Yunho loves so much, was the one who made him this evil. He reveals how he was also a human and was very scared when his soul left his body. At that time he met Hun, who told him that if he wanted to avoid perishing, he would have to eat other souls. Yunho is devastated to hear all this as he presses his hands on his ears, begging the evil spirit to stop talking. Ignoring Yunho's request, the evil spirit continues his rant, saying that Hun hates humans with all his heart. Since Yunho is a human, he is just a plaything for Hun. Yunho yells back, saying that Hun has never treated him as such. The evil spirit just chuckles, saying he wants to know what Yunho thinks about how he might know one or more souls that he ate in order to continue living in this world. He tells Yunho to consider the possibility that someone he knows is living inside the evil spirit, suffering from excruciating pain even after their death. Yunho is stunned to hear this as the evil spirit asks him if he will be able to forgive Hun in this situation. Yunho starts sobbing, saying that it is all lies, as Hun would never do something this evil. The evil spirit is still adamant about what he said, telling Yunho that he needs to accept that Hun is not what he thought him to be. Just then comes Hun's voice shouting at the evil spirit to get away from Yunho. The evil spirit is happy that Hun is finally here, while Yunho slides back toward the wall. Hun and Naru both rush inside. Hun focuses on the evil spirit while Naru quickly asks Yunho if he is fine. Yunho assures them that he is okay, and Hun turns toward the evil spirit, telling Yunho to hold on. Before Hun could do something, the evil spirit said that if they tried stepping any closer to him, Yunho would get hurt. Hun notices Yunho holding his injured arm and looking at the scene unfolding in front of him. Hun shouts at the evil spirit, asking for his reason for doing all this. His statement makes the evil spirit angry as he asks if Hun really doesn't know or is just trying to act dumb. He then says that the first souls he ate because of Hun had their wish for revenge merged with him, and that is why he is doing all this. If Hun hadn't fed him the souls, they would not have been trapped inside him, and hearing them telling him to destroy Hun. He has two options: either tear Hun into pieces or end Yunho instead, whom Hun cares about the most. As he says that, the evil spirit wraps his arm around Yunho's neck, ready to squeeze him. A panicked Hun shouts at him to stop, which only amuses the evil spirit, who says that he has a better idea and pulls Yunho up from the ground. He then announces that he will kill Yunho and eat his soul, trapping it inside his body forever. The evil spirit then says to Yunho that he is the first living human that he is going to personally kill. This is not an honor, you dumb evil monster. With one limb still wrapped around Yunho's neck, the evil spirit spread his other arms all around the room. Pretending to be downcast, he then says that he was enjoying their chat and it is all Hun's fault that they have to stop. Not wasting any time, he is ready to attack him, but just then Hun sends a bolt of his power toward the limb wrapped around Yunho's neck. Due to this, the evil spirit loses its hold on Yunho, causing him to fall from where he was hanging in the air. Before Yunho could fall to the ground, Hun rushed toward him and caught him in his arms. He quickly wraps both arms around Yunho and settles him on the ground, asking if he is alright as Naru and the goblin flames surround them. Yunho just brokenly says Hun's name, who looks at his injured arms. Hei-ro quickly starts to heal Yunho while Hun apologizes for putting him in danger. Yunho looks at him, saying that it must be a lie that he created this evil spirit. To his shock, Hun confesses that it is true that he was the one behind the birth of this evil creature. The evil spirit is happy to get his claims validated, but they ignore him, still focused on their conversation. Yunho again repeats the whole scenario, talking about how this evil spirit was just a mere human soul that turned into this monster because Hun fed him souls to get revenge. Hearing these facts from his mate, Hun was unable to reply and could only look down guiltily. Before he could say anything in return, he noticed the evil spirit ready to attack them. Hun quickly wraps his arms around both Yunho and Naru, hiding them from the danger. In exchange, Hun gets hit on his back, getting big slashes behind. Seeing his mate in danger, Yunho starts to cry while Naru rushes to fight against the evil spirit. The goblin flames are fast enough to start healing Hun, who doesn't care about his injuries. Hun then softly wraps his arm around Yunho, telling him not to cry and again apologizing for exposing him to such danger. Using a little speck of his magic, Hun puts Yunho to sleep and then tells Naru to take him home with Hei-ro, as he will take care of the situation here with the help of goblin flames. Naru leaves after being told to be careful and announcing that he will inform the officer about this. The evil spirit laughs to see this, mocking the drama in front of him, and asks if Hun will be able to fight him after suffering those injuries. Hun shouts that he is sorry for what he did to him and the other souls in the past, but still it was a mistake that they touched Yunho. He lets his fangs slide down and growls as he jumps toward the evil spirit. They both face each other and Hun announces that he will make him pay for what he did to Yunho. However, the evil spirit is unfazed by all the threats and instead tries to provoke Hun by asking if Yunho will stay with him even after knowing everything. He says that Yunho must now think that Hun is a monster and will be scared by the possibility of becoming evil if he stays with Hun. The notion of Yunho becoming scared of him starts to get to Hun. While Hun is lost in his thoughts, the evil spirit is happily thinking about becoming very powerful after eating the soul of a mythical creature and aims to attack Hun. Hun is just standing there kind of dazed when someone drags him out of his thoughts, asking him what he is doing here with that evil spirit. Hun is surprised when he looks around and finds a higher official standing there. The writer casually drops another character who looks like he is specially curated. By the way, is it just me or does this officer look strangely like Jimin from BTS? The officer seems angry with Hun as he says that thankfully Naru called him to handle the situation and asks Hun if he is planning to fight revenge with revenge. He then says that he will deal with Hun's sins later, but first they need to send this evil spirit to the afterlife. Hun obediently agrees and gets ready to fight alongside the officer. At Yunho's place, he is sitting in his bed with Naru and Ki Young-hoon staying close by. Just then Hun comes back and Naru quickly asks him if he has taken care of the evil spirit with the help of the officer. Noticing Hun's expression, Naru promptly leaves from there with Ki Young-hoon. Hun stands a few feet away from the bed as Yunho asks him about the wound he got earlier while fighting against the spirit and if he is alright. Hun quickly replies that he has healed his wound and instead asks Yunho how he is feeling. Yunho replies that their friends took good care of him, so he is doing well now. Hun takes a step forward but halts in his step when Yunho flinches away, wondering if the latter is scared of him now. He just stands there shocked when Yunho calls his name. Hun braces himself, dreading what Yunho will say. Trembling, Yunho tells him that they should take a short break. Hun is startled to hear this and tries to explain himself, but Yunho just covers his ears, saying he doesn't want to hear anything. He tries to protest, but Yunho stops him, reminding him that he confessed to doing all those evil things. Yunho says that since he learned that information, he keeps thinking about how he would feel if that monster had also eaten his family's souls. He says that Hun might not understand his anger about something that didn't even happen, as Hun doesn't have any family that turned into souls. Hun just stands there silently listening to Yunho lashing out. Yunho continues how he feels heartbroken for the souls that were trapped in that evil spirit, which was also manipulated by Hun. He starts to cry uncontrollably, saying he doesn't know what he is supposed to do with the realization that Hun could be the one he should really be scared of. Hun just says sorry repeatedly with a broken heart, but Yunho just keeps crying and begs Hun to just leave. Covering his face with one hand as if stopping himself from crying, Hun disappears after saying sorry one last time. Yunho is devastated by all this, but he still regrets being so harsh on Hun. Hun is sitting at his usual spot under his favorite tree, badly missing Yunho. Suddenly Naru comes there and sits beside his friend, asking the latter if he is fine. Hun just replies that he is, but Naru is not satisfied as he says that Hun has been like this for a week now. Hun just hums again in response, which irritates Naru, who doubts if Hun is even paying attention to what he said. Seeing as Hun still won't speak to him, Naru just sighs and leaves from there. The bright glow of the afternoon changes to the night's dark melancholy. Hun still just sat there reminiscing about how Yunho had flinched away from his touch. The fear that Yunho might think of him as a monster is crushing Hun's heart, but he is unable to do anything about it. He buries his head in his knees while thinking that it is all his fault, as he was the one who wanted to take revenge but instead ended up in this situation. Hun thinks that he saved Yunho so he wouldn't die like the butterfly, and that should be a positive thing. He dismisses his own thoughts and again returns to thinking about how he longs for Yunho. Hun is wondering if Yunho is okay with not seeing him and wishes that he should have said he was hurting when Yunho asked him about his injury. He wished that he had cried at the time so Yunho would hold him and his pain would disappear. Meanwhile, Yunho is sitting in a restaurant with his bandmates but is completely immersed in his thoughts. He also misses Hun a lot and can't stop thinking about how Hun must be suffering. He remembers how Hun was always sweet to him all this time and accepted all his tantrums, but in return he hurt him. He comes out of his thoughts when his friend taps him on the shoulder asking what's wrong. Yunho shares his worries with them, revealing how he found some new things about Hun that upset him a lot. He was very angry at the time and pushed Hun away, which must have been very hurtful. After listening to him, Jong-ho says that he can understand the situation, as Yunho always wants the other person to be honest and to communicate well. He reminds Yunho it is fine to be like that, but some people like to keep things bottled up and suffer alone, not wanting to put the burden on the other person. Yoon-do comments that it is just like someone he knows. Okay, I see another couple here. Shippers have eyes sharper than a hawk. Ignoring his comments, Jong-ho just leans his head on Yoon-do's shoulder while saying to Yunho that Hun must hide things from him because he cares about him so much. He says that it would be good if someone else who knows Hun's pain helps him, but if that is not the case, Yunho should go if he also cares about Hun. Later that day, Naru goes to Yunho's place and says that he wants to tell him something. Our angel again came to save the day. Yunho invites him in and serves him tea as they both sit on the sofa. Naru starts the conversation saying that it must be strange for him to drop by unexpectedly and say these things as he starts to recount everything from the beginning. He tells Yunho that when he first came to this world he was very anxious and doubted everyone around him. Since he doesn't have a specific gender, he always thought he was just created to protect and accompany Hun. Due to his own insecurities, he hated Hun even though he was never mean to Naru. One day when Hun was taking care of him, he bit him hard on his hand. To his shock, Hun just softly patted his head and calmed him down. And with the help of Goblin Flame, Hun taught Naru how to heal, even though the bite must have been painful for Hun. Not to be that annoying person, but Hun and Naru would also be a great ship, but guess we have to admire them as a ghost ship. At that time, Naru finally let go of his hatred and started liking Hun. To him, Hun is both a friend and a parent, the latter being the reason he is so overprotective of Naru. He says that he still remembers the expression on Hun's face when they first met. Even though he is a mythical tiger who lived for a very long time, he warmly welcomed the fox who just came into this world. Yunho hums softly as Naru continues that Hun is not a bad tiger and all of this happened because of him. All three of his friends, he and the butterfly and Hun, faced the consequences of him being too weak. Yunho quickly hugs Naru, who has tears streaming down his face at this point. He asks Naru not to blame himself as it was his friend's choice to help him. Naru softly agrees with him and then says that Hun really needs him. Yunho pushes him back a little and cleans his tear-stained face with his sleeve while asking if Hun needs him because he is the butterfly Yun. Naru quickly denies that and says that it is because Yunho can do something that Yun failed to do. Yunho is confused to hear this, so Naru wraps his arms around Yunho and says it is because he can hug Hun and be there for him. Naru then says that Hun might make the things that happened to him look like nothing, but that is not true. This reminds Yunho of what his bandmate said about Hun hiding his true feelings to protect Yunho, so he asks Naru to tell him everything. Naru starts his story by first confirming if Yunho knows about them seeing a soul's memories when it passes through them. He says that among those memories, the most clear ones are the moment the person has died, as they are the most recent ones. With those memories, they can also feel the fear the person felt when they died, so whenever they faced a soul who died a gruesome death, Hun transported them through himself. He always fulfilled the tasks that were hard for Naru and endured all the pain alone. At first I thought Hun was suspicious, but he is the greenest flag. When Naru's body grew weaker, Hun handled more of his work, which must have been very hard for him. He says that he knows it is not good for him to pressure Yunho into anything, but he requests him to not hate Hun. Yunho stays silent in return, thinking about what Naru said, as it makes him worried for Hun's well-being. Naru continues by saying that Hun hated humans because of what happened to Yun and Naru. However, the memories Hun saw while sending souls to the afterlife, which are not always kind, drove him to make that decision. Naru says that he is aware that many souls were unjustly imprisoned in the evil spirit and endured needless suffering for a long time. But he also saw Hun regret his actions as he kept on searching for the evil spirit all this time to set things straight. He learned from the officer that Hun had not only freed the souls from the evil spirit and sent them to the afterlife, but that he had led every single one of them through himself. This meant that Hun received all of those souls' memories and bitterness. Naru says that Hun must be suffering right now as Yunho shockingly yells that this is so cruel. Naru says that even though it was cruel, it was Hun's punishment, and he insisted on taking it even when the officer offered to help him. Naru then looks at Yunho saying that it is surprising that Hun, who hated humans with all his might, gave his heart to a human. Naru starts to regret his decision to tell Yunho as he knows how kind Yunho is, but he desperately wants him to forgive Hun. He went as far as to say that Yunho could hate him if that's what it would take for him to forgive Hun. Clenching his fist, Naru says to Yunho that he is the only one Hun can lean on. Yunho just hugs him and thanks him for sharing everything with him. That night, Yunho is lying in his bed unable to sleep as he keeps thinking about how hard everything must have been for Hun. He wished that Hun had told him everything instead of just suffering alone, as they are mates and he deserves a chance to comfort Hun. He keeps talking to himself, pretending to have a conversation with Hun as he complains about how he will know if Hun will not share anything with him. He wanted Hun to lean on him just like he did when he was suffering. With tears in his eyes, he slowly drifts to sleep while thinking about how Hun is making him look like a bad guy. After falling asleep, he dreams about the tiger cub. He keeps mewing and calling for him. The tiger cub represents Hun in his dreams. Yunho shouts at him, asking the tiger cub to stop calling him because he hates him. Listening to his harsh words, the tiger cub starts crying and sits dejectedly on the ground. He is a tiger but looks like a sad, kicked puppy. Yunho's heart breaks to see this, and he rushes forward to hug the tiger cub, quickly apologizing for his cruel words. He tells the tiger that he doesn't really hate him and didn't mean the words he spoke earlier. Yunho then comforts the tiger cub, saying that he likes him the most no matter what he does. Yunho wakes up from his dream with tears in his eyes and looks around to find Hei-ro floating around him. He tells Hei-ro to call Hun over, and not even a minute later Hun appears in front of him. Hun stands a few feet away from the bed and repeatedly calls Yunho's name while crying uncontrollably. Yunho shouts at him to stop calling his name, saying that he hates him. He berates himself in his mind for being so harsh on Hun, as he should understand, because he also wanted to get revenge on the driver who murdered his family. Hun suddenly plops down on the ground and again apologizes to Yunho for his mistake. Yunho finally breaks and rushes forward to hug Hun. He apologizes, saying that he doesn't really hate him and has only said those things out of spite. Yunho asks Hun to stop crying, who then looks at him with tears in his eyes and rubs his face into his Hun, apologizing again. He leans forward and sits down on Hun's lap, hugging him tightly. He confesses to Hun how much he misses him, which relieves the tiger, who replies that he also misses Yunho very much. Hun is sitting on the sofa, burying his face in Yunho's neck, who is sitting on his lap. With a fake irritation, Yunho asks Hun how long he is going to stay like this while secretly admiring his devilishly handsome looks. Hun replies that he just wants to stay like this a little longer, as they haven't seen each other for a week. Yunho says that he should treat Naru to a nice dinner, because if it weren't for him telling Yunho the truth, they still wouldn't be together. Hun pulls Yunho into his chest while telling him how he even wanted to complain about his injuries just so he could see Yunho. He tells Yunho how he kept blaming himself every day, as none of these would have occurred if he hadn't gotten lost in his revenge. Yunho leans into him and asks him why he didn't share how much he was suffering. Hun replies that he didn't want to burden him, proving that Yunho's bandmates were right about him. Yunho asks him if it burdened him when Yunho shared about his past struggles and needed Hun's help. Hun says that it was not the case, and instead he was happy that Yunho leaned on him, as it made him feel more important. Yunho says that he feels the same way and turns around, now straddling Hun. He then says that he has no idea what he wants to know first, but he wants to ask Hun about his life. He hugs Hun, saying that he can't know anything if Hun will not share, and he doesn't want them to grow apart, so he wants Hun to share his story. Hun squeezes him, agreeing to tell Yunho everything, as he also doesn't want them to be away from each other. Yunho asks him why he and Naru need to go through the soul's memory when it is that painful for them. Hun replies that it is because they have to sort through those memories. They went through all the memories of the soul to decide the person's end based on whether it was a bad or good person. After they sort through those memories, an officer double-checks them to make sure they are accurate. Yunho looks at Hun sadly after hearing that and cups his cheeks, requesting that he ask for his help whenever things get hard. Hun looks at him with admiration, agreeing to lean on him. Yunho jokingly talks about how reliable he is, but when Hun agrees with him, he gets offended, saying it looks like Hun is mocking him. Hun quickly defends himself, saying he is not making fun of Yunho, but rather can't stop smiling because he is just so happy. Yunho happily hugs his mate, amazed by how cute he is. Hun hugs him more tightly, content with smelling Yunho's warm scent. Later, they are both lying on the bed with Yunho lying on top of Hun. He asks Hun his opinion on his performance, saying that he deliberately chose an outfit matching Hun's that day. Hun replies that Yunho looked mesmerizing, so much so that he can't take his eyes off him. We all couldn't take our eyes off our precious Yunho. Yunho lies his head on Hun's chest, happy with the compliments, as that is what he wants to hear. Hun softly strokes his hair, saying that Yunho looked like a completely different person on the stage. He then says that since Yunho is back now, he wants to get kissed on the lips. The statement momentarily confuses Yunho, but then he remembers what he said to Hun on the day of his year-end performance. He fulfills his promise and leans forward, pressing his lips against Hun. They kiss passionately, not wanting to pull away from each other. After separating, Yunho lies back down on Hun's chest and suddenly remembers the tiger cub he always saw in his dreams. He says that now he can understand why Hun always appears in his dreams as a tiger cub. Hun is surprised to hear that, but he doesn't have time to focus on that information as Yunho starts to press kisses on his chest. He is startled by the sudden attention he is getting from Yunho and tries to ask the latter what he is doing. Yunho says that since Hun has already marked his neck, he is going to do the same and mark Hun's whole body. He then continues to kiss Hun's chest, nibbling on his skin, leaving hickeys everywhere. Hun just strokes his head with complete adoration and lovingly gazes on Yunho's eyes when he looks up. Feeling content and happy, he nuzzles against Yunho's face. Hun then suddenly switches their positions and pushes Yunho down while he hovers over him as they continue to admire each other's bodies. The next morning, when they go to meet their friends, Naru asks if Hun got hurt. Apparently, Hun proudly showed off his hickeys and told their friends how Yunho had marked him. Yunho rushes forward to stop him from saying anything further, while Naru quickly covers his eyes, not wanting to see anything unholy. Hun continues talking, explaining that since he and Yunho are mates, they can only surrender their bodies to each other. Yunho is utterly embarrassed and presses his palm on Hun's lips, trying to keep him from saying anything else. Naru turns toward Ki Young-hoon, saying that they should go home and do the same together. Ki Young-hoon agrees with him and they instantly disappear from there. Yunho is still struggling to stop his tiger, who keeps kissing him. Hun finds himself regretting saying those things in front of Naru and Ki Young-hoon. At that time, he was really excited about seeing Yunho for a long time, but his actions embarrassed Yunho, who banned him from any physical contact. He is finding it really hard to stay away from Yunho and keeps counting the days. Meanwhile, Yunho is lounging on the sofa in his apartment, talking to himself about how his schedule would be hectic due to upcoming festivals and their solo concert preparations. As he is saddened by not having many lazy days from then on, Hei-ro rubs against his cheek and amuses Yunho when he figures that the goblin flame is trying to cheer him up. His thoughts are directed toward Hei-ro as he realizes that they have known each other for some time now and thanks the little guy for always being there for him. As Hei-ro nuzzles his cheek, Yunho asks him what he actually looks like. Quickly following his words, the goblin flame then takes the form of a human. From where these devilishly handsome men are coming from, a man who is built like a Greek god with long shiny blonde hair appeared in front of Yunho. Instead of being happy, Yunho is traumatized when he sees that the man who is Hei-ro in human form stands naked in front of him. He quickly looks away as Hei-ro tries to hug him and shouts at him to stay away. Just then Hun comes there and sees a naked Hei-ro trying to hug Yunho, who is yelling at him to put something on first before coming near him. Confused by the situation, he asks what is happening and is surprised when Yunho jumps into his arms. Hun is happy when Yunho hugs him, considering himself lucky to get a hug from his mate despite being under the physical ban. Hei-ro is sad to see this and says that he also wants to join the hug, but instead gets scolded by Hun, who tells him to put on some clothes before approaching Yunho. Hei-ro finally realizes his mistake and quickly apologizes, saying that he was unaware of being naked as it had been a long time since he took human form. He quickly puts on his clothes, worried that Yunho would hate him for his mistake. Yunho quickly assured him that he would never hate Hei-ro and that he was just startled. Hei-ro is happy to hear this and tries to hug Yunho, but has to stop when Hun picks up Yunho and tells Hei-ro to keep his hands away from his mate. Hei-ro is irritated to hear from Hun while the other two are immersed in each other. Yunho asks Hun to put him down, but Hun refuses, saying he doesn't weigh that much. Later, Yunho sits with Hei-ro listening to how he was a pretty boy but decides to bulk up after what happened to the butterfly Yun. Yunho is more confused by Hei-ro's current state as he sits on the sofa looking depressed with his head between his knees. Hei-ro explained his insecurity, saying that if he were also cute like Naru, Yunho would not have reacted that way earlier. Yunho quickly stands up and hugs Hei-ro, stroking his blonde hair, saying it is not the case. He says that he was just shocked because Hei-ro ran toward him without any clothes, not because of his looks. Hun began to tap his finger from the side as Hei-ro said that the hug was very comfortable and warm. Yunho says that Hei-ro talks a lot like Naru, but is interrupted when Hun wraps his arms around Yunho's waist, pulling him back while still hugging Hei-ro. Hei-ro irritatedly shouts at Hun to let go, which amuses Yunho as he comments that Hei-ro looks tough but is actually very adorable. Later, Yunho and Hun are sitting in his room when Yunho asks Hun why he spoke to other guys formally, but he always spoke to Yunho casually ever since the beginning. Hun just says that he doesn't know, but Yunho sits on the sofa beside him, insisting that he must have a reason for that. He tickles Hun's neck, wanting to know the truth. Hun pulls him into his lap saying that he did it because he thought Yunho would hate him if he spoke casually to his friends. This surprised Yunho, so he asked Hun when he first started liking him. Hun truthfully replies that he might have realized it later, but deep inside he knew he liked Yunho from the start. Yunho comments that Hun is adorable even though Hun wouldn't talk to him formally. Hun asks him if he wants him to do that, to which Yunho replies that he just wants to see how it would be if Hun talked to him in that way with his handsome face. He then asks Hun to try this for 10 minutes, to which Hun happily agrees. Yunho then sits on the bed and casually asks Hun to join him. For a moment he is worried that Hun doesn't like it, but he quickly changes his mind when Hun comes forward and hugs him. Hun confesses that he was thinking about how he would have liked Yunho even if he were the older one. Yunho says that for the rest of the day he will be the older guy, to which Hun agrees to play the act without any hesitation. Yunho has lost hope in pursuing his longtime crush and friend, thinking he is straight, but the slight hope he still has is shattered when his friend announces that he is gay but likes someone else. While trying to win back his friend, he unexpectedly bumps into a mythical creature that changes his belief in love and everything else he thought he wanted. Yunho tells Hun to call him Hyung and is completely swooned by the cuteness when Hun obliges his request. Our human is kinky. He then asks Hun to say different things to him, to which Hun agrees without hesitation. Hun addresses Yunho as Hyung, saying he likes being touched and wants Yunho to hold him. Yunho hugs him tightly, blushing while repeatedly saying how cute Hun is. He is flustered by how Hun does whatever he says, and it is really driving him insane. As he leans forward, Hun whispers how he likes him, and Yunho quickly hides his face in Hun's shoulder, blushing heavily. Yunho is not the only one enjoying the situation, as Hun also thinks this is nice and that they should do it frequently. Hun slowly pushes Yunho onto the bed while still tightly wrapping his arms around the latter. He confesses about how adorable his Hyung is, but Yunho won't take it without a fight and says that Hun is way more adorable. Their little banter ended with Hun saying how much he liked Yunho. As they both lie on the bed, Yunho's heart is beating heavily, with Hun's confession making him feel like someone is hammering on his chest. I can understand Yunho's situation because the confession also gave me butterflies in my stomach. Hun leans back a little, looks at Yunho's blushing face, and starts pressing soft kisses on his cheeks, eyes, and nose. Yunho's arms are wrapped around Hun as he enjoys the affection he is getting from the mythical tiger. Suddenly he shoves Hun's back, reminding him that physical touch is banned, but seeing Hun's sad face he quickly pulls him back down. He laughs at Hun's reaction and says that he is fine with everything as long as Hun is happy. He can't help thinking to himself how he wants Hun to be very happy. He is aware that the time they will spend together will only be a small fraction of Hun's life, but he still wants the tiger to be happiest during this time. Hun hugs him tightly, nuzzling his face, saying that the only thing he needs is Yunho, to which Yunho giggly replies that he feels the same. Hun thinks to himself how good it is to hear Yunho laugh and how he wants to hear it for a very long time. A month has passed after all the events, and Hun is having a hard time. These days Yunho is extremely busy with upcoming international performances and more domestic festivals happening in the spring. Due to Yunho's hectic schedule, they hardly see each other, as Yunho only comes back home once every 3 to 4 days, but when he does he is extremely exhausted. During those times Hun could only watch Yunho and play with his hand while he was asleep. He misses his lover as they barely talk face to face anymore. Currently Yunho is sitting in the dressing room with his band members when Do-hae, the lead vocalist from a famous group, and Jong-ho's friend comes there saying that he had been waiting for them. Yunho, moving towards Do-hae, replies that they wouldn't let such an event slip, so of course they will come. Do-hae tackles Yunho while rubbing his head, confirming that different bands do get together in this event. He also says to Yunho that they should soon start rehearsing for their performance too. Yunho smiles happily to hear this and tells Do-hae how much he appreciates him composing their song and also performing it with them. Do-hae replies that it is no big deal because his band members want to attend Re-Evoke's concert and enjoy it. He then turns his attention toward Jong-ho, but Yoon-do doesn't appreciate his actions much. Smiling at the situation, Yunho excuses himself to go to the bathroom and bumps into another idol, a vocalist from another band called Misty Orbiter. The handsome idol praises Yunho's song that he made with the other band called Standing Still. Yunho is surprised by the gesture, as their bands are called rivals for being in the same industry despite their different genres. I am glad this gives us a little insight into how things and propaganda work in the Korean music industry. This is the reason they are awkward when interacting with each other. He remembers how this idol abruptly left an interview after being asked a question about the rivalry with Re-Evoke. The memory makes Yunho think about how the other looks scary, so he is surprised when the idol gives him his best wishes for his performance and turns to leave. Yunho quickly stops him, saying how he liked their latest album. The idol turned around with a smile and offered to collaborate with Yunho whenever he had time. The interaction changed Yunho's opinion about the other, and he found him to be opposite to what he had thought. He is further surprised when the idol says that Yunho is not as rude as he had initially thought and announces that he will stay to watch their performance. Yunho is very happy with the pleasant exchange and realizes how they both have misconceptions about each other. That night, Yunho is lying in the bed of his accommodations thinking about how much he misses Hun. It has been a while since they last saw each other, but Yunho still has to rehearse for their upcoming solo concert. He is a little relieved by the fact that he will be able to commute from home starting next week, so Hun just has to wait a little longer. At home, Hun is lying on the sofa sniffing Yunho's shirt as he wants Yunho to return home quickly. Meanwhile, Naru is worried about the summer solstice being near and wants to inform Yunho about it before it arrives. Naru doesn't waste much time as he invites Yunho to hang out, saying he has to tell him something urgent. He tells Yunho that during the summer solstice, when the sun is at its peak, Hun, who draws strength from the sun, grows significantly stronger. Should the energy drawn from the sun surpass his limits, he transforms into a mythical creature incapable of distinguishing between a friend and an enemy. True to his words, when Yunho returns home after he meets with Naru, he finds Hun surrounded by energy with his fangs out and his eyes glowing yellow. I know Hun is supposed to look dangerous, but he just looks more handsome here. He remembers how Naru said that whenever this happens, he and the officer lock Hun up, but Hun thinks that when power overtakes him, he just goes to sleep after transforming into a mythical creature. Naru had asked Yunho to be careful, telling him how even he couldn't handle Hun alone in this condition and always needed an officer's help. Yunho stares at Hun's condition as Naru's words play in his mind, asking him to send him a message through Heiro if the situation gets out of hand. Currently standing in front of a stronger Hun, Yunho is trembling with fear and is wondering if he should call Heiro for help. He decides against that as he doesn't want Hun to be locked up even if the situation is scaring him a little. Yunho slowly walks backward as Hun approaches him, but soon comes to a stop after bumping into a wall behind him. To his surprise, Hun suddenly hugs him, sniffing and calling his name after realizing that he is his mate. Yunho then notices how hot the tiger's body is. He gasps when Hun hugs him tightly, pushing their bodies together, and starts to touch him intimately. Hun pushes back a little and licks Yunho's lips, who is blushing furiously at this point. Hun doesn't stop there as he starts to kiss Yunho's neck while touching his body. Yunho tries to stop him, but Hun doesn't listen to him and instead throws Yunho on his shoulder. He takes him to bed, where he lies both of them on the bed with him lying on Yunho's body. At this point, Yunho is panicking as he desperately tries to bring Hun out of his trance. Hun pushes back a little finally and looks at Yunho with lust-filled eyes. He tells Yunho how much he misses him and holds his hands that were cupping Hun's cheek. He makes Yunho touch his chest, then his abdomen, which are on display due to his open shirt. Yunho gasps with shock when he notices tiger strips on Hun's body. Seeing his reaction, Hun is worried that Yunho is scared, but is ecstatic when Yunho says that he is not scared and instead finds it alluring. Yunho continues to touch Hun's body on his own and asks him if he is okay, saying how he heard about the summer solstice. Hun pushes their foreheads together, apparently satisfied with the fact that Naru has told him. He further explains that the sun's overflowing energy manifested because Yunho touched him. Hun shows his fangs to Yunho, displaying how the energy works, but almost loses all control when Yunho touches one of his fangs. He quickly dives in again, kissing and licking Yunho's neck seductively. When he pulls back, Yunho tells him how he is worried that Hun will bite him, but Hun quickly assures him that he will never hurt Yunho. Yunho leans into Hun's hand, which is holding his cheek, and complains about how they can't kiss because of Hun's fangs. He presses a soft kiss on Hun's thumb, saying that he will have to stick with giving Hun butterfly kisses until the fangs are gone. Also disappointed by the situation, Hun quickly announces that the fangs will go away once this energy is gone, while Yunho keeps kissing his fingers. Yunho then pulls him down, saying that he is not going to let that happen. Hun complains that he will turn into a mythical creature if Yunho touches him more. Yunho retaliates that Hun was the one who touched him first, and he says that he will just do a little more. He then leans closer to Hun's lips and seductively asks if his tiger has missed him. Yunho is getting bolder with every passing day, and I love it here. The statement has a great effect on Hun, who is hit by the sudden energy. Meanwhile, Naru is worried for his two friends and says to Ki Young-hoon that he wants to check on them. Ki Young-hoon agrees with that and says that he will also go with Naru. When they reach Yunho's place, Naru suddenly stumbles into Ki Young-hoon's arms, affected by the energy surrounding them. Naru tells Ki Young-hoon that the sun's energy is very strong today and he will have to restrain Hun until the officer comes. Just then they both notice Hun in his tiger form standing there with his eyes glowing. Naru immediately thinks of Yunho and finds him lying on the bed under Hun. They both start to panic when they notice the tiger inching closer to a sleeping Yunho with its mouth open. Yunho is sleeping peacefully on the bed, oblivious to the things happening around him. Naru and Ki Young-hoon are shocked when, instead of hurting Yunho in any way, the tiger starts to lick his face. Naru is shocked at how this can happen during the summer solstice. Ki Young-hoon grabs his attention, saying that they should go back home. Naru agrees, saying that he can finally relax while thinking to himself that Yunho really is Hun's soulmate. After leaving, the tiger continues to rub his head against Yunho and licks his face. Yunho wakes up chuckling softly and starts stroking Hun's fur in his tiger form. He asks the tiger if the latter is wondering how he can sleep in this situation and complains about how the tiger is so heavy. Yunho then turns around, declaring that he will continue to sleep as he has been deprived of it for so long due to his busy schedule. His mission of falling back to sleep fails when the tiger starts to lick his neck. Yunho sharply tells Hun to stop, but his words aren't heard as the tiger continues to lick his chest and stomach. Like always, Hun just acts like a puppy in his tiger's form. The tiger's touch feels weird and prickly to Yunho, who couldn't stop himself from squirming. Hun slowly moves upward, licking Yunho's chest in the process. But Yunho pulls away quickly, fixing his shirt. He sits on the edge of the bed and announces that he will let Hun touch him when he is back to his old self. He couldn't stand the touch as it made him feel like he was being ravished by a tiger, and it was also overly stimulating. The tiger takes this as a rejection and starts to whimper, putting his head in his paws. Yunho rubs his head, telling him how adorable he is, and leans on the tiger's big body. He is confused by how Hun can still recognize him in this form and understand what he says. Hun suddenly lays on his back, showing his belly, seemingly asking Yunho for a hug, to which Yunho complies. The tiger rubbed against him and continued purring. The cute behavior of the tiger makes Yunho wonder if he is really the big bad animal. The next morning, Yunho gently caresses Hun's face, who is back to normal and is sleeping beside him. He softly asks him if he is okay. Hun replies that he is fine and tells him how this is the first time he remembers what happened during the summer solstice. Yunho asks if this happened because of him, to which Hun hugs him tightly in response, saying he is right. He then says to Yunho that he should take his clothes off as it seems like they are hefty. Yunho pokes fun at the sudden statement, asking Hun if he is not fully back to his regular self yet. Instead of saying anything, Hun stares at Yunho's collarbone, traces his fingers over the tattoo of 4 inverted triangles on it, and asks what it means. Yunho replies that each triangle represents him and his family, and the tattoo of the sun on his elbow is also for his family. He says that if all of his tattoos are put together, they fit like a puzzle and form another image. Still cuddling Yunho, Hun listens to his mate with sad eyes. Yunho chuckles sadly, saying that the picture is just a prayer, wishing to have the same family in his next life. He continues that his piercings represent his family too, wherein the cuff is his family while he is the stud who is alone on the other side. This is also the reason he changes the right earring sometimes but never the other one. Hun squeezes him a little after his explanation and then asks about the star tattoo on his upper arm. Yunho replies cutely that the star signifies his dream of becoming famous and his desire to sparkle on stage. Hun inquires if the logo on his lower back represents his band. Yunho confirms his question, saying that they all made this design together. He tells Hun that it's a combination of the treble clef to represent music and a butterfly to represent aspirations. He properly shows his tattoo to Hun while saying that the band is at the center of his life, so he wants the tattoo at the center of his body. Hun softly rubs his tattoo while saying that he has always wanted to know what these tattoos mean. Yunho starts giggling, feeling ticklish due to Hun's touch. Hun pulls him back into his arms, saying that since the star represents Yunho, the sun on his elbow can represent Hun. He says it resembles him because he responds to the sun's energy every summer solstice as the mythical creature of the sun. Yunho happily accepted the suggestion, while Hun was happy with the thought that whenever Yunho looked at the tattoo, it would remind him of Hun. Yunho replies that in that case Hun also needs a tattoo, but is surprised when Hun actually asks him what he should get. He quickly says that he is joking as Hun suddenly turns them around, putting Yunho on the bed while he hovers over him. He brushes some hair back from Yunho's forehead and asks him about his practice. Yunho replies that even though it is making them busy, the training is going great. He then wraps his arms around Hun's neck and says that he has to come to their concert. Hun gives him a soft kiss and promises that he will attend the concert. He struggles, thinking to himself how binding Yunho to him is wrong, but it feels so good. As they lie on the bed together, Yunho says that Ki Young-hoon told him about Hun asking him to buy the concert tickets for him. With a slight blush on his face, Hun replies that it was because he wanted to see Yunho's performance on stage. Hun is a big bad tiger but blushes easily whenever Yunho says something sweet to him. The things love makes you do. Yunho turns around a little facing Hun and says that there is a song he wants Hun to hear. When Hun asks him about the song, he refuses to disclose anything, saying it is a secret and Hun will know when he plays the song at the concert. Hun couldn't help but agree as he buried his head on Yunho's shoulder. A few hours later, Hun is sitting on the sofa while Yunho lies his head on Hun's lap. Yunho says that they should order some food as he is hungry, but Hun instead offers to cook for him. This information surprises Yunho, but Hun assures him that he is a good cook. Yunho chuckles, saying Hun is a little too confident, but later he is left speechless when Hun actually cooks him a few amazing dishes. He tries not to focus on the presentation and declares that the most important thing is the taste. Yunho takes his first bite and is blown away by the mouth-watering taste. He quickly says that they have to live together for the rest of their lives, to which Hun happily agrees. I would also happily leave with the person who would cook me delicious food every day. Yunho continues to praise Hun's cooking skills and asks him to make kimchi stew next time. However, instead of cooking, he is more excited about buying Hun an apron and seeing him wear it. Hun feeds him the food and tells him how he is more good at making Korean food. After they finish eating, Yunho stands up to do the dishes, saying that since Hun cooked, he should clean. His plan isn't successful though, as Hun picks him up in bridal style and takes him to bed. He softly puts Yunho on the bed and says that he needs to rest since he has been too busy with his concerts. Yunho complains that he will get fat if he lies down straight after eating. He then suddenly wraps his arms around Hun's neck, pulling him down, and whispers in his ear asking if he will help him exercise. Hun blushes a little at the question but happily agrees to it, thinking how he could refuse when he desires it as well. He quickly wraps his hands around Yunho's body, touching him intimately as they lose themselves in each other. Later, Yunho shares his music journey with Hun as they are lying in bed together. He tells him how neither they nor their agency had any money when they first made their debut. They started by renting an old recording studio and released their first album. After seeing their performances, many fans said that their live shows sounded better, which felt good to hear but was painful at the same time. Hun asks him why that is, so he explains that for any band it is natural that live sound is better, but if they had resources, their album also could have been better. At that time, they all decided that if they became famous and were still in the music industry 10 years later, they would re-record the album. He smiles while remembering how it has almost been 10 years since they started and asks Hun what they should do on their 20th band anniversary. Hun softly rubs his cheek, saying that it is mesmerizing to see Yunho completely enjoy his work. Yunho swiftly responds, saying that he is able to do that as performing on stage has always been his dream. But when his dream turned into his job, it didn't make much money, so he had to do other jobs to earn more. There were a lot of instances when he had to work hard to resist the temptation of more money before they became famous. When he stood on the stage, he then realized that he was happy singing and dancing around. Seeing the audience move along with him, it appears as though tens of thousands of fireflies are dancing and singing when the audience turns on their flashlights and waves them around the stage. Since he loved these feelings so much, he was motivated to keep going whenever he was preparing for his concerts. Hun looks at him with a slight smile and says that he looks happy. Yunho quickly hugs him, saying that he is indeed happy because he has both love and his dream career. Still a little insecure, Hun asks Yunho if he is talking about him and not Ki Young-hoon. Irritated by the question, Yunho quickly turns around and pouts, saying that if it weren't Hun, why would he be here like this? Hun quickly presses a kiss on his neck and says that he knows but just wants to hear it from Yunho. This catches Yunho off guard a little as he thinks about how Hun can be mature at times but can also act like a baby, but he dismisses the thought when he realizes that he does the same. He turns around again and softly caresses Hun's face while thinking about how long it has been since he relied on someone so freely. Hun intertwines their hands together and says that he never wanted to allow such impulsive emotions to control him. He always thought he was boring and dry, but that changes whenever he is with Yunho. He suddenly hovers over Yunho and talks about how he finds himself playful around Yunho, how he keeps thinking about how bothersome Yunho's clothes are and that he should take them off. Yunho laughs at the statement and says that he should do it too. He was so content at that moment that he had forgotten about what Ki Young-hoon's grandmother said to him. Yunho had never guessed that those words would turn into reality, as if the universe was asking for him to pay for the short time of happiness he basked in. They lie together on the bed as Yunho's phone rings with a call from Jong-ho. The morning of the 20th day before Re-Evoke's concert, Yunho sits up on the bed while Hun continues to sleep on his lap. Happy that he stopped having nightmares since Hun started living with him, Yunho softly strokes Hun's head and gets off the bed, telling the latter to get some more sleep. He makes them some French toast and orange juice for breakfast and asks Hun to join him after putting the food on the table. Hun sleepily drags himself toward the food while Yunho sits on the sofa looking at his phone. Yunho is confused about why he got so many messages overnight, in which Jong-ho called him the most. Before he could look at the texts, Hun joined him, instantly wrapping his arms around Yunho's waist. He tells Hun to put some clothes on before eating, and Hun instantly obliges with his order. Yunho calls Jong-ho in the meantime, wanting to know why they were trying to reach him. After picking up, Jong-ho says that he was about to call Yunho and even wanted to visit his place since he was worried. He decided against visiting Yunho when Ki Young-hoon informed him that Yunho was currently with Hun, which guaranteed that he was okay. Yunho is confused by the strange behavior of his band member and asks him what is going on. Jong-ho realizes that Yunho doesn't know anything and asks him to listen carefully and not be too shocked. Jong-ho tells him that an article outing Yunho was published last night. Even though the article didn't put his name out directly, it was pertaining to a vocalist from a band group, and from the picture they posted it was obvious it was Yunho. As if trying to lessen his worries, Jong-ho tells him that their agency's president had promptly released a formal statement stating that charges would be brought against the original reporter and anyone who makes offensive remarks on social media. No matter how modernized our world is, some people still can't understand the fact that others have different opinions from them. The difference of opinion doesn't make the other party wrong. It just makes them different. Yunho is devastated to hear all this as Jong-ho advised him not to watch TV, go out, or check any social media pages. He tells Yunho, who is now trembling, that things are messed up right now and that even if he sees the comments as anything, he shouldn't pay them any attention. After Jong-ho hangs up the phone, Yunho looks through his social media. But Hun snatches the phone away from him, not wanting him to read all this. Sometimes all the peace you need is to stay away from social media. Hun apologizes to Yunho, saying that it is all his fault, but Yunho is just confused about how it can be Hun's fault. Hun says that he should have been more careful since Yunho is a celebrity and shouldn't have hugged him in public. Yunho shouts that Hun did nothing wrong and none of them did anything wrong. Hun still believes that it is his fault and again apologizes to Yunho. Yunho is overwhelmed by the sudden situation and starts to cry. He instantly reminds himself that Hun will feel worse if he cries, so he quickly controls and wipes his tears. Yet he couldn't stop his hands from trembling. Hun sees this and thinks that he can't hurt Yunho too. He wants him to rely on him. He holds Yunho's hand and squeezes as he assures him that everything will be alright soon. This perks Yunho up and he turns to face Hun, who is still trying to relieve his worries. Seeing that, Yunho quickly smiles, assuring Hun that he is fine. Suddenly he notices something and puts his hand on Hun's cheek, asking Hun if he is okay because his body is burning up. This startles Hun as he remembers how his body also felt hot to the butterfly, and now the same thing is happening again. Yunho touches him all over, telling him that his forehead, arms, and whole body feel way too hot. Hun desperately hugs Yunho while mumbling how this can't be happening, shocking the latter. He denies the changes in his body and wraps himself tightly around Yunho, but this time Yunho pulls away, worried by the situation. He asks Hun again if he is okay, but Hun just lowers his head, devastated by what's happening, as he keeps asking why. Yunho's phone rings, but they both ignore it, too focused on the current situation. Hun stares at Yunho with hurtful eyes while thinking about why all the misfortunes happen at the same time, trying to snatch away his most precious belongings. 10 days have passed since Yunho was outed by the article. During this time, he received a lot of private messages on social media. Some people supported him and showed concern for him, but there are also those who cursed him out full of scorn. The most extreme ones even brought up his family's accident, saying that he should have died with them. People in this world are so cruel to idols. Reading those, he couldn't do anything but tremble and clench his fist in pain. Even though 10 days have passed since then, every time he turns on the TV there is news about people burning their band's merchandise. There are also several articles about him on an online portal that he blocked just so he could avoid reading them. However, he would remember everything that was happening to him many times throughout the day. When he does, he would stare out the balcony thinking about doing something extreme. Fortunately, he decided that he shouldn't do something so drastic like those haters had wanted him to. However, it was very hard as he had to continuously convince himself not to. Yunho can't understand why people think badly of those who are different from their expectations. He spent most of his time in his house silently suffering from all the negative things around him, but his friends never left him alone. Naruki, Yoonhoon, Juho, and his band members always brought him food and were there for him in these hard times. Whenever he sees the people who support him and are concerned about him, it prevents him from acting on that bad impulse. This made him realize that he was in deep pain and that if he were alone at this time, he wouldn't be able to survive. His friends continuously visit and assure him that they are there for him. Still, he couldn't get rid of his anxiety whenever he went outside, even if he covered his face from the public. Looking at the people busy on their phones, he always wondered if they were reading articles about him or if they were one of those who cheered on his death. Currently walking outside on the road, Yunho keeps thinking about how all he did was love someone. All the overwhelming thoughts and emotions get to him as his eyes blur and he stumbles back due to exhaustion. Before he could hit the ground, Hun quickly caught Yunho in his arms. The situation diverts his thoughts as he remembers how the heat that he felt when Hun touched him got slightly more intense lately. It is bearable if they don't make skin-to-skin contact. Still, it does not take away the questions in his mind as to why this is happening. Oblivious to what Yunho is thinking, Hun gives him support, saying they should go back home. Meanwhile, Hun is miserable with the fact that he has burned the wings which enabled Yunho to fly all over the world, recalling the news where the band's merchandise was ablaze. He thinks that he is ruining the things Yunho cherishes the most and tearing down the world in which he deserves to fly. He couldn't stop himself from feeling the devastation when he remembered how much Yunho loved his work. At Yunho's place, they both sat downcasted on the sofa with a lot of space empty between them. Hun asks Yunho if he will still be able to do the concert, to which Yunho replies that everything will be fine. Hun clutches the sofa tightly and gathers the courage to move a little closer to Yunho. Seeing this, Yunho asks if the situation is probably better by now. Hun replies that he is still not sure as his skin keeps getting hotter. Yunho asks Hun to give him his hand. At Yunho's request, Hun raises his hand, both wishing that it was better by now. Their hands merely touch when Yunho quickly pulls back his hand after feeling the burning sensation. Hun panicked, asking Yunho if he was okay, to which the latter said that he was. Hun then notices a burn mark on Yunho's hand along with several nail marks. He quickly apologizes and asks Hei-ro to heal Yunho. The situation makes Yunho feel bad, as he doesn't want Hun to feel sorry for anything. Despite Yunho's reassurance, Hun is utterly devastated by the situation. They really don't seem to catch a break as things keep going wrong for them. Yunho tries his best to make Hun feel better, saying he is fine and the marks will heal soon. Hun knows that Yunho is not okay and wishes that it was him who got burned. Suddenly getting an idea, he turned around and with his magic manifested gloves on his hands. He quickly holds Yunho's hands, happy that they haven't burned him anymore. Yunho softly smiles at his temporary solution as Hun holds his cheek, saying that he will not give up no matter what and is sure they can fix this. Yunho holds Hun's hand that was caressing his cheek, promising not to give up either. It has been 3 days since Hun held Yunho with his gloved hands and 7 days before the concert. This time Yunho received a call from Junhyan and started noticing things that he hadn't before. Junhyan believes that they were originally chasing him and only tailed Yunho given their tight relationship. The reporter who did it used to threaten Junhyan and his agency for money, but when things didn't go as he had planned, he started pursuing Junhyan and Yunho. The reporter took Yunho's picture with Hun and published it online. Since the article about Yunho would be more controversial, the reporter published it first. As public opinion became more grave for Yunho, they used that to smear Junhyan's name. Both of their agencies came together and made a public announcement that they would take legal action against the reporter. Like always, when a large company gets involved, a lot of this changes and even public opinion starts to get positive. The situation eventually started getting better, as hardly anyone requested a refund for their tickets for the Re-Evoke concert, which is in 1 week. Even after all this, Yunho still couldn't make himself feel better, and he was overwhelmed by many different emotions. At times he would get angry and then start crying out of nowhere. He feels hollow inside and as if everything is pointless, so he just sits there feeling trapped. He tries to calm himself by taking deep breaths over and over again to push down emotions that are choking him so badly that he can't make a sound. Yunho tries his best to assure himself that everything will get better and in the meantime focus on rehearsals and lean on Hun in difficult times. Meanwhile, Hun is meeting with an officer who casually offers him an ice cream, which he refuses. He sits there looking miserable when the officer asks him if he really doesn't want to be promoted. Hun refuses, which the officer finds very shameful. He says that Hun has the strength and will to be an officer, so it is sad that he doesn't want to become one. With furrowed brows, Hun says that he is not qualified and that all he currently wants is to locate the humans who are bothering Yunho and slaughter them all. He comments on how he can now understand why so many souls turn into evil spirits. The officer is taken aback by his aggression but firmly says that Hun is just thinking about it and not actually going through it. Hun angrily replies that he hates being a mythical creature and just wants to become a human. The officer is amazed to hear this and comments on how Yunho is amazing because he makes Hun want to become the thing he despises the most. Hun shares how he can't even help Yunho in this situation because they can't touch each other. This makes him feel like life would have been better had he been a regular person. Looking at Hun pensively, the officer stands on the edge of the building as he advises Hun not to try to solve everything by himself. He also tells Hun to take one step at a time and that human affairs appear complicated on the surface, but they are actually quite simple. The officer then says that Hun should bring the people Yunho loves close to him. When Hun points at himself, the officer angrily shouts that he is not talking about him and that Hun should think about for whom Yunho is preparing the concert. We already know that Hun is a little dumb when it comes to taking hints. The officer then tells Hun to leave if he has already gotten the hint, further commenting that he is unsuitable to be an officer and should turn into an ordinary human. Understanding what the officer is talking about, Hun quickly leaves after thanking the officer for his help, who just smirks in return. After a quick meeting with all of Yunho's friends, Hun goes back to their home and finds Yunho crying in his sleep. He softly pulls the cover on Yunho and caresses him with his gloved hand, hoping that there are more things that he can do for his lovely human. It is finally the day of Re-Evoke's concert. Before the actual performance, they had to do a dress rehearsal first, which began after the host's announcement. From rehearsing with his band members to preparing backstage, all Yunho thinks about is the fact that he had been to many concerts, but this was the only time that he was going to perform with a heavy heart, and he feared going on stage so much. As they got ready to go on stage, Yunho couldn't help but doubt the audience, thinking they would scorn him during the performance. He tried to get rid of the thought, but it didn't leave his mind. He was too aware that he could lose everything in an instant. The thought that terrified him the most was that he might never have had those things to begin with. While thinking about all this, Yunho goes on stage with his band. Seeing his sad face in the audience, Hun Na-ru and Ki Young-hoon are worried about his condition. When he holds the mic in his hand, Yunho remembers that Hun is probably watching him from somewhere, and that gives him some motivation to do well. Today on stage he feels the same as when he made his debut, in which he couldn't muster the courage to look at people's faces. He barely goes through the performances, not even aware that it is already their fourth song. He comes out of his trance when his band suddenly stops playing the instruments. He is confused by the situation and turns his head, but suddenly the audience starts singing, asking Yunho to lean on them through the song. Yunho's eyes fill with tears as he sees the thousands of people holding banners telling him that they love him. His band surrounds him as they wrap him in a hug and ask him to turn around. Okay, I teared up a little. The bond between the fans and the idols is always precious. Anyway, does this scene remind anyone of when the ARMY surprised BTS by singing Young Forever? As he did, Yunho sees the supportive messages from their fans displayed on the big screen. Their fans have shared how the band Re-evoke helped them in their lives, and they love Yunho no matter what. Seeing all those lovely messages, Yunho broke down in tears and was quickly wrapped in a hug from his band members. He finally goes to the mic again and expresses his gratitude to his fans for their support. He shares how he was unable to focus the entire time and didn't even realize he was still singing until a minute ago. He admits that for the past few days he has felt as though everyone despises him and that he frequently has negative thoughts. Yunho sincerely thanks his fans for preventing him from turning those foolish thoughts into reality and for keeping them that way. He then said that the next song they were going to perform was a new song that he wrote. He confesses that at first he didn't know how to explain this song, but he will say it openly now. He wrote this song for the people dear to him and for that one person whom he loves. His sweet announcement made all of his friends cry. His lover also couldn't hold back his tears. Yunho chuckles when he notices everyone crying and asks them to stop crying and instead think of someone who is precious to them as they hear his song. Yunho looks at the crowd with teary eyes as he starts singing his new song, Be With You. After the show, Hun patiently waits at home when he hears the sound of the door opening and hurrying footsteps. Yunho then rushes into Hun's waiting arms with tears in his eyes. He pulses back a little and says that he heard it was Hun's idea to surprise him on stage. When Hun confirms what he said, Yunho quickly holds Hun's face in his hands and thanks him with teary eyes. Hun is worried that Yunho will get burned again and tries to pull back, but Yunho tells him that he is fine. Hun is relieved to hear this and hugs Yunho tightly. Yunho returns the hug, sincerely saying that even if he gets hurt, Haero will heal him, so he is not worried. They stand there wrapped in each other's arms as Hun tells Yunho how much he loves him. The next morning, Hun is the first one to wake up and lovingly stares at a sleeping Yunho. He softly touches Yunho's nose with his fingers, thinking that he should have appreciated them touching each other so freely. Hun smirked as Yunho's nose twitched because of his touch, and he kept thinking about why his touch had burned Yunho before, but now it had changed. Yunho slept late in the evening that day, exhausted from his hectic schedule in the last few days. When Hun notices him waking up, he softly touches him, but Yunho runs away, desperate to reach the bathroom. He comes back after a while and lies on top of Hun, swooning over the tiger's cuteness. Hun asks Yunho if he slept well, to which Yunho happily replies that he hasn't slept that well in a long time. Hun presses a kiss on Yunho's cheek and tells him how he was amazing last night on the stage. He remembers how if Yunho just signaled a little, all those people in the crowd would cheer for him. They cheered and sang along with Yunho as if they had rehearsed it, which amazed Hun the most. Glancing down at Hun, Yunho admits that if Hun hadn't prepared that surprise for him, he couldn't have performed as well. He was very nervous on the stage at first and almost passed out, but thanks to Hun's surprise, he snapped out of his trance. Yunho hugs him tightly as Hun says that the only thing he did was relay the message to his fans. Yunho replied that it was what he needed the most, because in the past few days he avoided being on social media because he didn't want to see negative comments, but by doing that he also missed the supportive ones. It irritates me so much. Why do haters always overshadow the support of real fans? He gets a little sad thinking about how he started to doubt himself. Hun tells him that his fans were already preparing for that surprise, which made him jealous because a lot of people loved Yunho. The smile returns to Yunho's face as he hugs Hun again, saying that his fans are amazing, but their love is different from Hun's. He is a little displeased when Hun asks him the difference, prompting him to give Hun a kiss to show what he means. Satisfied with the situation, Hun caresses Yunho's thighs and back, asking if his love is different from that of fans because he is the only one who can touch Yunho like this. Yunho confirms that, giggling as Hun's mind travels back to his meeting with the officer the previous night. Hun thanked the officer for nudging and pointing him in the right direction to make Yunho happy. He was about to leave when the officer stopped him. The officer told him that they had received an order from their superiors about Hun's mate. The order was for Hun to guide his mate to the afterlife himself. This information shocks Hun, and he angrily asks the officer why he is saying that when Yunho is still alive. The officer replies that since Yunho is a human, he will be sent to the afterlife upon his death anyway. Both of them know that such an end is unfortunate, but Hun just needs to tell himself that Yunho's time ended earlier than expected. Tears start to run down Hun's face as he asks the officer if they want him to guide the man he loves to the afterlife. The officer stays calm in the midst of Hun's outburst and says that it is also difficult for him to relay the message. He then reveals to Hun that when Yunho's family died in the accident, Yunho was also supposed to die as well but survived for some reason. One reason that the officer can think of is that Yunho and Hun's souls are intertwined since Hun was the one overseeing him and his family. It is also because of that they want him to do it himself now. Hun is crying desperately at this point and shouts that he clearly remembers that day, saying that there were only 3 souls torn from their bodies and Yunho's was firmly still in his body. The officer says that he can't do anything about it, even if he also finds it absurd that they want Yunho's life now. He feels even more frustrated since it is the person Hun loves, but he doesn't have enough power or authority to stop an order from above. Hun just stands there silently for a moment as the officer apologizes for relaying such a heartbreaking message. Hun suddenly says that the whole point of the order is that a soul is missing. Once the officer confirms this, Hun asks with lifeless eyes if a mythical creature's life weighs more than that of a human. The officer replies out of habit that it is right, but immediately realizes what Hun means, angrily shouting at him. Dismissing his outburst, Hun just kneels in front of him, saying that he will go to the afterlife instead of Yunho. He requests that the officer give him a few months as he wants to spend some time with Yunho. Back in the apartment, he sees Yunho, who is happily eating his food and wishes to have some time until Yunho's wounds are healed. Yunho praises his good cooking skills and Hun wraps his arm around Yunho's shoulder, saying he is happy that Yunho likes his cooking. Yunho looks at him softly, saying that Hun is always there to solve all of his problems. He starts recounting all of the instances when he had panic attacks and nightmares, when he was trembling from his phobia of thunder, and now in this situation. Hun was always there for him. Yunho confesses that if he had gone through all this alone, he wouldn't be able to handle it. He then hopefully asks Hun if he will always stay by his side. The question left Hun speechless, but he just hugged Yunho softly without saying anything and pressed a kiss on his head, assuring him that everything would be fine. A few months after the concert, many things have changed. The news reported that the video of a fan burning Re-Evoke's shirt that went viral before was revealed to be done by a religious group who bought the shirt from a fan. It also mentioned that the song Yunho had written and played at their concert has been topping the charts, including the fact that he wrote that song for the other person involved in the scandal. People loved the song because they were inspired by how Yunho faced the controversy directly. The honest, relatable lyrics and catchy tune also drew listeners to the song. As Hun and Yunho watch the new report together, the former is happy to think about how the turns of events make Yunho happy. Yunho has finally gathered the courage to look through social media and is grateful to read all the supportive comments left by his fans. Hun again asks him if he wrote that song for him, wanting to hear it again from Yunho. The question makes Yunho blush and he scolds Hun for asking the same question when he knows the answer to it. I am totally whipped by Hun's playful side. Actually, I am whipped by his every side. Hun just nuzzles against his head, telling him how he is thankful. Yunho leans his head back, telling him he feels the same. Their precious moment makes Hun wish he had more time left in this world. After some time, Hun meets the officer again, who complains about how Hun only cares about Yunho and is not worried about how devastated he and Naru will be. Hun replies that he is sorry for his decision, but Yunho is innocent in all this. His statement annoys the officer, who asks him if it is all worth it even if Yunho is not the reincarnation of that butterfly. He asks Hun if what happened is that his soul got entangled with Yunho on the day of the accident, connecting his mind to Yunho's, making it possible for the latter to appear as the reincarnation of Yun. He sharply asks Hun if he really wants to give his life for a human who is not even fated to be with him. Hun stays calm listening to all this and replies that it doesn't matter even if that is the truth, because all he needs is Yunho. Hun goes back to spending most of his time with Yunho, but always thinks about how he will be able to leave Yunho without hurting him much. I have already prepared myself for the heartbreak. He considered the different possibilities, thinking maybe Yunho would hurt less if he started hating Hun for some reason. He sometimes thinks of telling Yunho that he no longer wants him because he is not the butterfly, but gives up on it as he knows he won't be able to bear Yunho's hatred. He was self-centered and wanted to show his love to Yunho down to the very last second, so he decided to leave without saying anything. One night, Hun silently sneaks out of bed, thinking that only this way will Yunho hate him the most. He presses a soft kiss on a sleeping Yunho's head and whispers that he is thankful for having Yunho's heart. Tears start to fall from his eyes as he softly says that he expresses his regrets about being unable to fulfill his promise to share his worries with Yunho. As he traces Yunho's hand with his own, Hun says that it is alright if Yunho meets someone else and forgets him, but begs him to be happy. He then takes away his hand and leaves from there after telling Yunho he loves him one last time. In his sleep, Yunho dreams about the tiger cub who keeps crying. He is devastated to see this and quickly comforts the tiger, asking him what is wrong. The tiger just whimpers in return and starts to move away from him. Yunho asks him where he is going, but the tiger cub just turns around with tears streaming down his face and then moves toward a familiar gate. Yunho shouts at him to come back, desperately crying and trying to reach him, but he can't move his body. He keeps shouting at the tiger to come back, but his body is wrapped in some kind of red string. Yunho wakes up with a jolt and is relieved to find that it was just a dream. This makes me cry so hard. Why did this happen to our poor little Yunho? He turns to the side and is shocked to see that Hun isn't there. Instead, his necklace was on his side of the bed, which Yunho picks up. Knowing what it means, he desperately wishes that the reality he woke up to was also a dream. He yelled loudly asking for Hun to come back, but there was no response. Yunho just cries with his head buried in his knees as he remembers how Hun has promised to stay by his side. Yunho couldn't even remember how many days it had been since Hun left. He took a break from his music activities, which sparked rumors that he was staying away due to the recent criticism. His team members keep checking on him to make sure he is alright, and Yunho always assures them that he is fine. Due to the popularity of his song, many TV shows invited him for an interview, but he didn't attend a single one of them. Yunho just lies on his bed, tears streaming down his face as he can't stop missing Hun. He brokenly talks to himself about how Hun has promised to stay by his side and to lean on him instead of facing his problems alone. He just sobs uncontrollably, not understanding why all of this happened. Later, Ki Young-hoon and Na-ru visit him, wanting to make sure that Yunho is taking care of himself. They try to make him eat, but he refuses, saying he doesn't have any appetite and keeps staring at the necklace that Hun has left behind. He suddenly turns toward Na-ru, asking him if he knew about all this. When Na-ru confirms that he does, Yunho angrily asks him why he didn't inform him beforehand. Na-ru sadly replies that he also wanted to tell him that but couldn't do so. Na-ru remembers how he tried to tell Hun that Yunho would never forgive him if he left like this. Hun replies that this is the only way, but Na-ru suggests they find another way. Sensing that Hun is determined to follow what he planned, Na-ru shouts at him angrily. He asks Hun what he will do without him, as he has been with Hun all this time like a family. He starts crying, asking how he is supposed to let go of Hun that easily. Hun quickly hugs his friend, apologizing for his decision and thanking Na-ru for staying with him for a long time. He pats Na-ru's back and requests that he take care of Yunho for him. Remembering all this, Na-ru tells Yunho how Hun begged him not to reveal anything until he left. Yunho asks Na-ru if he will be able to see Hun if he dies, but Na-ru quickly hugs him, crying and asking him not to think about such things. They all sit there on the sofa hugging each other and crying their hearts out. All these days, Yunho kept telling himself every night that Hun would be back once morning came. He plans to tell himself this every single day that comes, considering this a way to keep holding on. One morning, as he brushes his teeth seemingly calm, he catches a glance at the sun tattoo on his elbow. This reminds him of what Hun had said about the tattoo, and he breaks down in tears again. Yunho couldn't control himself as he kept crying most of the time, desperately wanting Hun to come back. When night comes, he lies on the bed with tears streaming down from his closed eyes as he feels someone stroking his head. He quickly gets up thinking it is Hun, but to his disappointment, Juho is there instead. Juho is heartbroken to hear Yunho calling for Hun and apologizes for the misunderstanding. He tells Yunho how Hun has asked him for a favor and recalls his last meeting with him. They met in a cafe where Hun told Juho that he was not human and explained the whole situation to him. He tells Juho why he has to leave and asks him to take care of Yunho for him. Juho replied that instead of thinking that this is the best solution for them, Hun should keep finding a way to be with Yunho again and ask for forgiveness from him. He told Hun to return and take responsibility for all the pain he had caused Yunho. Hun agrees, feeling gratitude for yet another friend of Yunho's. It is sweet how Hun met all of Yunho's friends, but he should have gathered the courage to tell Yunho about it and not leave him to suffer all alone. In the present, Juho wipes tears from Yunho's face and tells him with full confidence that Hun will be back. Yunho wordlessly cries as Juho hugs his friend and asks him to be strong and wait for Hun to come back. Later, Yunho is sitting alone in his bed as it continues to rain outside. He complains to the god or the higher being above, saying that they must hate him for being happy. Hei-ro flies around him as he keeps telling God that he will get revenge in one way or another and will curse them for life for taking away Hun. He stares at the necklace Hun has left behind and resents God for always taking away his precious people. Yunho slowly lies in bed crying and brokenly calling for Hun. He is determined not to give up and addresses Hun, saying that he will keep waiting for him to come back. Na-ru brought Yunho out of his house and took him to a park for a walk. After a while, Yunho complains that he wants to go back home, but Na-ru convinces him to walk just a little more. Na-ru says that he has something important to tell him, so Yunho agrees to stay for a while. Na-ru reveals that the officer and Hun have been pleading every day for them to reconsider what happened in the past. According to the officer, the higher-ups seem amenable, so things might go well. Squeezing the necklace in his hands, Yunho is hopeful to hear this and quickly asks Na-ru if this means Hun will be able to return soon. Nauru explains that if he does, Hun will return as a human since he has been disposed of from his position as a mythical creature. Nauru continues that if it happens it will be a problem because the human body can't handle the weight of thousands of years worth of memories. There are also certain things that Hun must not know, and it is standard procedure that if a god or mythical creature becomes human they must be rid of all of their previous memories. That night Yunho is sitting in his bed remembering his earlier meeting with Nauru. He falls asleep slowly holding the necklace in his hand. That night in his dreams he hears the sound of the tiger cub and is happy with that, tearing up and thinking that it must be a good sign. The next day he is walking on the street and thinks about the dream he had last night. He can't understand if he had that dream because he missed Hun or if it was some kind of sign. Suddenly he notices someone walking on the street with a build similar to Hun's and runs to hug the man. He looks up with tears in his eyes and is happy to see that he was not mistaken and that the person is actually Hun. His momentary happiness is crushed when the person looks at him with strange eyes and asks him if they know each other. Yunho is heartbroken to find that Hun has actually lost all of his memories and runs away from there crying badly. He stops after going a little far and just stands there crying. Yunho is sure that the person is Hun, but he doesn't know what to do as Hun doesn't remember him at all. Suddenly arms wrapped around his waist as Hun hugged him from behind calling his name. Hun almost gave me a heart attack. Why did he need to do this when Yunho was already so heartbroken? Hun asks him if Yunho is going to leave him. Yunho is shocked by the sudden embrace and starts crying badly, mumbling about how he thought Hun had lost all his memories. Hun quickly apologizes saying he was just pranking Yunho, but Yunho is not happy with him and tries to push him away. Hun quickly cups his cheeks apologizing again for his mistake and asks Yunho why he gave up so easily. Hun says that even though he has lost his memories, his body and voice are still Yunho's preference, so he shouldn't give up. Yunho just keeps crying as he says that he doesn't want some random handsome guy. Just then Hun notices the necklace in his hand and is surprised that Yunho didn't throw it. Yunho is irritated by his question and sharply says that it was all Hun left when he left him alone. Seeing how heartbroken Yunho is, Hun hugs him and promises that he will never leave him again. The rain starts pouring down as Hun pulls back a little holding Yunho's face in his hand. He asks Yunho, who is sobbing, to look at him, saying that all he could think about all this time was to come back to Yunho. Hun then kisses Yunho on the lips, telling him how much he loves him. They both stand in the pouring rain with Hun tightly wrapping Yunho in his embrace and deepening their kiss. Yunho remembers how snowfall turned into rain when he first met Hun. He was crying then, desperately wanting to avoid all the people. Now it is raining again and he is also crying, but everything is different. Hun pulls his coat on both of their heads as they look at each other lovingly, and Yunho responds to his love confession, telling Hun that he loves him too. Hearing that, Hun presses a soft kiss on his temple as Yunho thought that his mate, his tiger, had finally returned to him. When Yunho wakes up the next day, he is momentarily startled not to see Hun's face in front of him. He soon notices that Hun is hugging his waist and is relieved to find that he wasn't dreaming about what happened last night. The previous night they had met with the officer who read the decision to them. It says that Hun's status as a grand mythical creature is revoked due to aiding and ignoring an evil spirit, increasing its power. Hun has also broken the rules for a specific human, so they have decided that he is unfit to carry out his responsibilities. Furthermore, Hun had previously failed to collect a soul and was careless in the processes that followed. However, the supervising officer recommended that his punishment be adjusted. The officer Hun Lee, who is Hun's supervising officer, demotes Hun to a human as a punishment. Since Hun has worked with them for so long, they have permitted him to keep his memories, but they will be under supervision. Hun Lee then puts his hand on Hun's head as his energy surrounds both of them. He officially declares Hun to be a human, saying that it will be his only punishment, to which Hun complies. Once the ritual is done, Hun Lee takes a deep breath, happy that he can finally relax now. He then asks Yunho and Hun if they planned all this, because during all this time Yunho keeps threatening to kill the gods every day once he arrives in the afterlife, while Hun begs every day to be punished because it had been his desire since the beginning. They both rush to hug each other with kissy faces as Hun Lee continues to say that higher-ups passed this case on to him because they were tired of it. He then tells Hun that he will be paid for all his work in human wages as a punishment. Hun Lee is not happy with this decision by higher-ups, but the good thing is that Hun will not lack money his entire life as a human. He stops saying his piece and berates the two for not being able to keep their hands off each other even though he is still there. Hun leans his head on Yunho's as he thanks the official for always looking after him, while Yunho does the same. Hun Lee replies that they need to be happy together and he will continue to look after them. He warns them that if they are not happy after making all this fuss, he will smack them both. Listening to this, Hun quickly turns around, shielding Yunho and offering his behind, which greatly annoyed Hun Lee. Hun Lee leaves there, not wanting to see the couple being lovey-dovey anymore after telling Hun he can do what he wants with his mate. Singles are most annoyed when some couple acts show PDA in front of them. Later, Yunho hugs Hun tightly as they lie in his bed together. He asks Hun why it felt hot to touch him after he had heard about the butterfly. Hun quickly flips them around and hovers over Yunho, saying that it is all because of him, but he will explain it later. He starts to touch Yunho intimately, saying that they should focus on something else right now. Acting innocent, Yunho asks what that is, but his cuteness almost makes Hun lose his control. He quickly strips Yunho's shirt, but to his disappointment, Yunho shoves him back and pulls away from him. Yunho quickly straightens his shirt again, embarrassed to be intimate with Hun after so long. Finally, remembering the perfect excuse, he runs away and comes back with the necklace Hun has left behind. Yunho says that he should give the necklace back to its real owner. Hun gives the necklace back to Yunho, saying that it is his now. The latter is confused by this and asks him why he is doing that. Hun softly kisses Yunho's hand holding the necklace and says that he is giving it to his lover and mate. He repeats that Yunho is the rightful owner of the necklace and he can do whatever he wants with it. Deeply touched by the action, Yunho quickly hugs Hun and says that he will always hold onto his necklace and never let it go. Hun quickly pulls Yunho into his lap and buries his face in his chest, thinking he knew Yunho would say something like this. Yunho softly rubs Hun's head, who shares how he had always obeyed the god's orders but disobeyed them this time, claiming they were wrong. He was prepared to face any consequence as long as he could do that. He shares how he has tried so many new things because of Yunho. Listening to this, Yunho asks him if he regrets his decision, but Hun quickly denies it, saying it was the best decision of his life. Yunho looks at Hun with loving eyes and says that from now on they should do the things that Hun has never tried before. Hun hugs him tightly, happily agreeing to Yunho's request. In the future, Hun will keep holding Yunho tightly, thinking that even if they aren't destined to be together, he will always stay by Yunho's side and bring him happiness. With that, this beautiful story comes to an end. These beautiful characters make us cry and laugh with them. To be honest, Hun makes us a little angry too. I am sure these characters, with their dashing personalities and amazing story, will stay in our minds for a long time.